The world didn't end with a bang. It ended with dead things learning how to run. Buildings crumbled, hallways caved in, and somewhere inside the wreckage, a group of survivors was sprinting for their lives because the dead weren't staying dead. One of them screamed to close the gate. Another screamed back that it was already too late. The zombies were right behind them, and panic was spreading faster than the horde itself. Then Ichijo moved. He grabbed a hollow pipe nearby, massive thing, jammed it straight into a zombie's mouth, and used the body as a battering ram to shove the whole wave back through the gate. It slammed shut. The group caught their breath. Ichijo wasn't done. He pulled a grenade pin and fired it clean through the pipe, straight into the clustered horde on the other side. Heads gone, bodies torn. The explosion sealed the deal. The door held. Someone pointed back and yelled. A safety house had appeared. 2 minutes on the clock before the zone closed. Ichijo looked at it and felt something rare, relief edging toward victory. He'd been surviving for 5 years. 5 years since the great catastrophe flipped the world upside down, when spatial zones started materializing across the globe without warning, cutting off entire areas from the outside. Inside each zone, zombies, missions, and a ticking clock. Find the safety house. Complete the mission, escape alive, miss the window, become one of them. Half of humanity didn't make it past the first 6 months, but the ones who did, they grew. Zone by zone, fight by fight, survivors got stronger, the system rewarded the ruthless, and at the top of the ladder sat one prize that everyone chased, the Grand Slam, clearing every zone from level 1 all the way to level 100. Today, for the first time ever, a level 100 zone had appeared, and Ichijo was standing inside it. He'd clawed his way here alongside 5 other skilled fighters. One more step, and he'd be the first Grand Slam achiever in history. One more step. Then the window shattered. A zombie girl, fast, massive, wrong in every way, burst through the glass and dropped into the corridor. A perfect zombified baddie. Ichijo called the retreat immediately. She raised her hand and brought it down like a hammer. The survivors scattered. One of them barely made it out and confirmed what everyone already feared. She was the gatekeeper, the boss blocking the safety house. Ichijo ran a quick inventory check. His teammate answered, 5 haste potions and 1 power potion. That was it. Ichijo stared. That's all? He called it fast. Everyone burns the haste potions to keep the boss occupied. He takes the power potion and delivers the finishing blow. 1 shot, 1 chance. Everyone agreed. The boss lunged. Ichijo moved. He grabbed one of the potions and drank it without hesitation. Something was immediately wrong. His legs went heavy. His arms wouldn't respond. The world slowed, but not in the good way. Every stat he had just dropped by 50%. Duration 20 seconds. He'd been handed a weakness potion. Before he could even process it, his yellow-haired teammate stepped into frame. Calm, smiling, holding the real haste potion, the superior one. 100 points of agility flooding his system in real time. He looked at Ichijo and said it was their turn now. Then he ran. The rest of them ran with him. Ichijo stood there, half strength, fighting a gatekeeper boss alone, watching the people he'd survived beside for years sprint toward the safety house without him. His teammate called back over his shoulder that it wasn't a mistake. They'd planned it from the start. Without items, there was no way to fight. But the clear was already in reach. All Ichijo had to do was hold the boss long enough for the rest of them to escape. His share of the rewards, it would just get split between the others now. Thanks for being the stepping stone. Another one added almost cheerfully that he was looking forward to seeing Ichijo after the zone ended, when he came back as a zombie so he could finish the job himself. 10 seconds left. Ichijo was still fighting, still screaming at them. 6 seconds. The gatekeeper drove her nails through his chest. Deep, clean through. 3 seconds. Am I really going to die like this? The zone dissolved. Dissolution in progress. Ichijo looked down at his hands. The zombification had already begun, the infection crawling through him, cell by cell. 5 years of surviving. Every near-death moment, every impossible fight, every sacrifice, and it ended here, in the dark, betrayed by the people standing next to him. He made one promise before the darkness took him. I will kill every last one of them. Even as his body converted, his mind held onto that. Even if he came back as a zombie, he would find a way. His consciousness sank deeper, darker, until even that resolve started to blur. What a pathetic life. I'm a loser. Then a voice cut through the void, calling his name. Ichijo opened his eyes. Rooftop, afternoon light, a face he recognized instantly, a guy who used to bully him back in high school, standing over him with the same entitled sneer, demanding 5,000 yen for bodyguard fees. Between them, a heavy-set kid, frozen, clearly the actual target. Ichijo looked around slowly. He knew this rooftop. He'd stood here before, on the receiving end, back when he was nobody. His mind raced through the logic. The pain felt real. The surroundings felt real. I've come back, before the great catastrophe, before all of it. The bully turned his attention to the fat kid, told him to steal the money if he had to. Then one of the bully's friends pointed at Ichijo, said he always hid his part-time cash in his bag. Easy pickings. The bully grinned and told Ichijo to hand it over. Ichijo said nothing. The bully repeated himself, louder this time, and Ichijo punched him square in the nose. The bully went down hard, blood pouring. His friends stood frozen, staring. Nobody moved. Nobody had ever hit Mineta before. Nobody even thought about it. Ichijo looked at all of them and told them not to make him ask the same question twice. What was today's date? Silence. He flexed his hands slowly. His strength had carried over. Everything he'd built across 5 years of surviving the apocalypse, still there, living in his body in this past version of himself. Looks like I won't end up as a loser after all. The bully's routine ran like clockwork. Mineta moved through the school with the confidence of someone who'd never faced consequences. Third-year student Yakuza connections in his back pocket, teachers looking anywhere but at him. His daily operation was simple. Collect bodyguard fees from whoever was easiest to squeeze dry, then move on to the next target. Ichijo had been the easiest target for 3 years running. No parents. Part-time job just to keep the lights on. No one to back him up. He was perfect. The other students figured that as long as Mineta had Ichijo to focus on, they were safe. So they watched, said nothing, and kept their distance like spectators at a match they didn't want to enter. In the old timeline, Ichijo had played his role perfectly. Not today. When Mineta pushed him, demanding fees he'd already paid 2 days ago, Ichijo didn't flinch. Mineta grabbed his collar. Ichijo grabbed back. The roles flipped so fast that the crowd barely had time to register what was happening. Mineta hit the ground. His friends rushed in. Ichijo put the first one down with a single punch to the face. Clean knockout. The three behind him froze for half a second, shouting in disbelief. Then one of them launched himself forward with the swing ready. Ichijo caught the punch with his left hand and snapped a strike across the boy's chin in the same motion. He moved through the rest of them without urgency. A karate chop to one neck, a kick to another. Every movement calculated. Not because he was showing off, but because somewhere in 5 years of surviving a zombie apocalypse, this had become his baseline. Mineta watched his entire crew collapse and felt something he'd never felt on this rooftop before. Fear. He told himself it was a fluke, something Ichijo had picked up online, a lucky technique. He rushed in anyway, screaming. Ichijo caught his fist mid-air, by the wrist, stopped it cold. Mineta looked into his eyes and found nothing there. No panic, no hesitation, no trace of the kid who used to hand over cash without making eye contact. Just something flat and patient and completely unmoved. Then Ichijo grabbed him by the bag and drove a kick straight into his face. Mineta went down bleeding again. The crowd that had gathered stared in silence. That's the guy who got bullied for 3 years? The heavy-set kid from before was shuffling toward the door, moving fast for someone trying to look casual. Ichijo called out to him. The kid froze, smiled nervously, said something about class. Ichijo told him he had one more debt to settle and needed a date. The answer came quickly after that, April 20th, 2024. Ichijo processed it. The Great Catastrophe, the first spatial zones appearing worldwide, that happened on May 25th, 35 days from now. He ran through his situation methodically. First, combat ability, roughly 30% of his peak. Still more than enough against ordinary people at this stage, but nowhere near what he'd need when the zones started appearing. Second, supplies, critical. Then a thought hit him, and he almost laughed at himself for not checking sooner. Inventory. Open. The interface materialized in his mind exactly as he remembered it. His inventory had carried over. Level 1. Reset from the level 50 he'd grinded up to in his previous life, but it was there. That alone changed everything. In the early apocalypse, spatial zones had shredded society overnight. No warning, no infrastructure left standing, no safe place to stockpile anything. The solution humanity collectively stumbled onto was the personal inventory, a system every survivor eventually unlocked, letting them carry supplies in a private pocket of stop time. Food, medicine, tools, anything non-living. The bigger the inventory, the better the odds of making it through the next zone. In his previous life, Ichijo had expanded his to the size of a basketball court. It had taken years of desperate effort. Now he was starting from level 1 again, but he was starting with the knowledge of someone who'd already done it once. He mapped it out. Inventory expansion needed money, a lot of it, but he also had something no one else in the world currently had. 35 days of advance warning, combat experience beyond anything a normal person could build in a lifetime, and a system interface he could access before the apocalypse even began. The growth rate he could hit this time wouldn't be comparable to his first run. He'd be untouchable before the zones even opened. And then the comrades who left him to die in that final zone, smiling as they walked away, they'd get exactly what they'd been promised. I'm not the old me anymore. Somewhere in a back alley, one of Hatano's men was finishing a job bat in hand, target already unconscious on the ground. When he reported it, Hatano told him to pour water on the guy and keep going. Then the news arrived. Mineta had come back empty-handed. Hatano looked at him, then slapped him hard enough to send him into the guy standing next to him. He grabbed the bat from his underling and made his feelings clear, every single one of them. Useless at the moment it counted. He told one of his men to stake out the school gate and drag the kid in before he could disappear. The underling acknowledged it quietly and added under his breath that Big Brother was genuinely furious. Whoever this kid was, he was getting pulverized. Ichijo already knew who Hatano was. Hatano Tsuyoshi, former professional baseball player, known for a slugger's power and a tyrant's temper, the kind of athlete who could carry a team on his back and destroy its morale in the same week. He'd beaten a teammate with a bat over an error and gotten released for it. With his playing career finished, he'd walked straight into the underworld and built something there instead. He was the one backing Mineta, and Ichijo had known that from the moment he threw the first punch on the rooftop. After school, the fatty came sprinting after him. Breathless, warning him that Mineta's crew was definitely waiting at the gate. Ichijo told him classes were over and he was going home. The fatty kept pushing. These weren't soft targets like Mineta, he said. Ichijo kept walking. Students had already noticed something was wrong. Mineta was there, visibly beaten up, scanning faces in the crowd. The moment he spotted Ichijo, he signaled. One of the fashionable gang members stepped forward and told Ichijo to come with them quietly, unless he wanted to be embarrassed in front of everyone. Ichijo looked at him, glanced at the situation and made a calculation. He got in the car. The students watching couldn't believe it. Someone muttered that picking a fight with Mineta's people meant he'd be gone by tomorrow. The fatty just stood there watching the car pull away. When they brought him in, the fashion guy reported that he'd come without resistance. Ichijo walked toward Hatano directly, closing the distance without hesitation. Hatano studied him and asked why he was so calm. Mineta answered for him, said Ichijo was just pretending, that he was definitely scared underneath. He laughed and told Ichijo to get on his knees and apologize. Maybe they'd let him go home. Maybe. The fashion guy told Ichijo to think carefully about who he'd made an enemy of. Ichijo spat in his face. The tension broke instantly. One of them rushed in, swinging the baseball bat, screaming. Ichijo sidestepped and sent him flying with a single kick. The bat clattered to the floor. A bodybuilder came from behind, locked Ichijo in a grip, and told the others to finish it. A third one came in to break his leg. Ichijo dragged his foot across the floor, flipped the bat up, and cracked it across the bodybuilder's skull. The grip released, he snatched the bat mid-air as another one charged in swinging, deflected it cleanly and punched the guy in the face in the same motion. The fashion guy attacked. Mineta cheered him on. Hatano said quietly that it hadn't landed. Ichijo had blocked it with his school bag at that distance. The next second, Ichijo kicked the fashion guy straight into Hatano's path. Hatano didn't move, just watched his people go down one after another. Then he stepped forward himself. He attacked. Ichijo slipped it and hit him clean across the face. Hatano managed to create distance, reassessing fast. The kid had no wasted movements. Clean defense, clean offense, nothing like any high school student he'd ever seen. He barely had time to process it before Ichijo was already closing in again. Hatano thought he saw an opening. He didn't. Ichijo had left it on purpose. The next strike pinned Hatano to the ground. Mineta stood there with his jaw open, asking if Big Brother was okay. Hatano coughed on the floor and thought it through. That wasn't street-level power. That wasn't even close. And those eyes, the kid had never seen them as a threat from the beginning. Not for a single second. He looked up at Ichijo and told him he was withdrawing. Whatever he wanted with Mineta was his business. He'd hand over the territory too. Mineta screamed his name. Ichijo said he didn't care about Mineta. He said he was more interested in Hatano. That night, Hatano sat across from a man he'd called in for a specific job. The man found it genuinely hard to believe that Hatano had been put on the ground by a high school kid. Hatano skipped past it and asked if he was in or not. The man said there was no reason to refuse an easy job. His price was a third of the territory's earnings. Mineta exploded. A third for one hit? The man reminded him that Hatano was the one asking. And with the tournament coming up, everyone needed money. If word of today's loss got around, the territory was already in trouble. Hatano thought about what Ichijo had said, "I will move you up," and what it meant that a high school student had walked into this meeting knowing exactly what he was walking into. Someone had sent him, or he'd figured it out himself. Either way, Hatano couldn't leave it alone. He told the man to move tonight. Then a guard's voice cut through the building. Someone had walked into a private venue without invitation. Everyone turned. Ichijo stood at the entrance in a hoodie and cap, completely unbothered. He said he was looking for someone. Hatano stared at him. This location wasn't public. There was no way a random student should know it existed. Ichijo looked straight at him and asked why he looked so pale. Then he said he was there on Big Brother's orders. Hatano's men outside were already down. Every single one of them laid out across the surveillance footage like they'd been switched off. The area leader's secretary brought the tablet over and the whole room went quiet, staring at it. No blood, no chaos, just bodies, neat and unconscious, like Ichijo had worked through them methodically before walking in. One of the men turned to Ichijo and asked if he'd slipped them something. Drugs, maybe. Mineta stood in the corner thinking that what Ichijo had said at noon, "I will move you up," might have actually been real. He was quietly realizing he'd stumbled into something far above his weight class. The area leader's eyes moved from the footage to Ichijo and back. He asked himself where his composure had gone because a high school student had just walked into his private venue after dismantling his outside security, and the room felt different because of it. One of his men stepped closer to Ichijo and noted quietly that his reaction speed wasn't normal. Not for a student, not for anyone. The leader didn't wait for further analysis. He told his men to grab him. Then he looked at Hatano and laid it out plainly. He understood now. Hatano had brought the kid here, clearly expecting him to do the heavy lifting. The organization's rules protected family from being harmed first, but if Hatano had broken that rule by walking in with a weapon, the leader was within his rights to act. Hatano tried to cut in, told him it was a misunderstanding. One of the men pinned his arms before he could finish. The leader wasn't interested in explanations. The kid could be handled quietly. One less student wasn't worth much, but Hatano Killing Hatano meant everything Hatano had became his. He thanked him for breaking the rules first. Hatano said he wasn't dying here. He threw the man holding him straight onto the floor and broke free. The leader stared. Hatano's mind was already running the math. Things had spiraled past the point where words fixed anything. If he ran today, the organization would find him anyway. His only exit was standing in the middle of the room taking on 2 attackers at once. 2 of the leader's men came at Ichijo simultaneously. Ichijo grabbed the first one by the collar and drove him into the second. The second tried to dodge. Ichijo lifted the first off the ground and punched through both of them in a straight line. They landed at the feet of Hatano and the leader like they'd been thrown there on purpose. The leader thought, 2 people, 1 motion, nothing wasted. What is this kid? He told his men to stop staring and finish it. They came at Ichijo all at once. Ichijo moved through the first one, slipped the punch, chopped the neck, finished with an uppercut, stepped into the second, and kicked him across the throat. 3 more came from behind. 1 grabbed his arm, 1 locked his waist. The third lined up for the finishing blow. Ichijo kicked the already unconscious body near his feet directly into the incoming attacker. The attacker went down. The one who'd grabbed his waist swung a beer bottle, lost his balance mid-swing, and cracked it into his own teammate's skull instead. Ichijo's arm came free. He turned to the one still holding on and put a hit straight into his face. Then he just started working through the rest of the room. The leader watched his crew come apart and made the decision. The kid had to die here, no matter what it took. He reached for his gun. Hatano moved faster. He grabbed the leader's wrist and forced the gun out of his hand. The leader turned on him, furious, asking what he thought he was doing. His wrist was screaming. Hatano said he couldn't stand by and watch a gun get pointed at a child. The leader told him the kid had already gotten to him too, called him compromised, and said interfering meant he was finished either way. He charged at Hatano directly. Hatano took the punch and hit back harder. The leader dropped, but even on the floor, he spotted the gun nearby. He grabbed it, pointed it straight up at Hatano, and told him that both of them picking fights with him ended here. His territory, his terms. Hatano looked at the barrel and thought, damn. Then Ichigo's foot connected with the side of the leader's face. The gun skipped across the floor. The leader didn't get back up. The room was quiet except for Hatano's breathing. He sat there, looking around at the unconscious bodies scattered across the floor, and thought about the fact that a high school student had done all of this in a single afternoon. Ichigo asked him simply, so, how about it? Hatano asked why him specifically. Out of everyone available, why pick someone he'd just met today? Ichigo said he'd just happened to meet him first. Hatano laughed despite himself, said he supposed he should be grateful for that, otherwise he'd be the one on the floor. He looked around at the mess and asked what Ichigo planned to do about the space they were sitting in. Ichigo told him to make it his territory. He'd said he would move him up. He meant it. Hatano accepted that, then got practical. This incident would spread through the organization fast. Both of them were already targets. He asked what the actual plan was from here. Ichijo laid it out. He couldn't afford to be visible publicly, so Hatano would be the face, the big brother. Ichijo would work from behind, expanding Hatano's influence and pushing him up the ladder. In exchange, he needed access to the organization's money. A lot of it. Hatano stared at him for a long moment, then picked up a wine glass from the floor and said he'd toast to the craziest plan he'd ever heard. Ichijo pulled his cap back on and reminded him he was still a high school student. Then he asked if Hatano had any cash on him. Hatano checked his pocket, genuinely surprised to find himself being asked for money after everything, and handed over what he had. Ichijo looked at it and said it was just enough for taxi fare. Hatano thought, I've allied myself with someone who doesn't even have cab money. Something is deeply wrong with me. Ichijo asked for a full accounting. How many people? How much funding? Who controlled what? Hatano broke it down. The leader they'd just put on the floor, Hiraguri, had around 50 men, cleanup specialists, higher quality than Hatano's own 30, supplied with weapons including firearms through the organization. Combined, they'd have more than double the current fighting force. Funding was another story. Low-ranking members like Hatano and Hiraguri didn't control much. The real money sat higher up, a man named Kawase who ran casinos, bars, and nightclubs, and above him, the boss who managed everything, Tatsuya. There was an event next week, Tatsuya's birthday celebration where everyone brought presents, tribute money in practice. Whoever gave the most moved up. Hatano and Hiraguri had both been grinding to put together a respectable amount. Ichijo told him not to worry about that anymore. He'd get him to that position soon enough. Hatano said yeah, and privately admitted to himself he'd half expected Ichijo to flinch at some point today. He hadn't. Not once. He asked to exchange contact information. Ichijo said he didn't have a phone. Hatano sat with that for a second. No phone. No cab money. Beat up an entire criminal organization in one evening. He was genuinely running out of capacity to be surprised. Ichijo asked if he could leave the cleanup to Hatano, or if he should stay. Hatano told him to go. He'd already called people. Hatano's crew arrived moments later, took one look at the floor, and lost their composure entirely. The fashion guy spotted Mineta standing in the corner and demanded an explanation for all of it. Ichijo was already heading for the door. Hatano called Mineta over and told him to hand over his new phone. Mineta handed it over without thinking. Hatano passed it straight to Ichijo. Ichijo said he didn't really need it. Hatano told him to just take it. He stepped closer and said it plainly. They were comrades now, and more importantly, Hatano couldn't afford for anything to happen to him. He offered subordinates as backup. Ichijo glanced at Mineta's hand on his shoulder, moved it off, and told him not to overthink it. Just follow instructions. Then he walked out. The crowd parted. Hatano watched him go, then turned to Mineta and asked if that was really his classmate. Mineta confirmed it, then added that until today, Ichijo had just been a pushover. Hatano thought about the killing intent he'd felt earlier. Brief, controlled, but completely real. He filed it away. Trust would come later. A message arrived on Mineta's old number. Casino tomorrow night. Get proper rest during the day. Hatano looked at it and concluded, without any real surprise, that the kid was absolutely insane. Ichijo walked alone. A girl somewhere behind him called out that she'd spotted him, voice bright with excitement. He kept walking. Comrades, he thought. He didn't need them. One goal, one direction. Revenge. He pulled out the phone and looked at a name on screen. Ejuan Nozomi with a social media presence, talking to followers, polished and effortless. Ichijo knew exactly who he was. Nozomi's father ran one of the top 10 companies in the world. In the previous timeline, right after the Great Catastrophe hit, that family had moved faster than anyone, using subordinates as scouts, analyzing the zone system early, stockpiling supplies at a scale no one else could match. They'd upgraded their inventories while everyone else was still panicking. And as the world's order collapsed, their methods had gotten worse. Nozomi had been the yellow-haired teammate, the one who handed Ichijo the weakness potion, smiled, and walked out of the final zone while Ichijo bled. Ichijo needed money for preparation, for countermeasures, and for revenge. He couldn't touch Nozomi yet, but he could start building the force that would eventually reach him. I'll return the pain tenfold. At the bus stop, a bus pulled up. A girl stepped in ahead of him and told him to either get on or move out of the way. She was in a hurry. Ichijo looked at her face. Zombie. He jolted backward hard. The girl stared at him. Everyone around stared at him. The face was normal, human, no decay, no dead eyes. He stood there catching his breath. The Great Catastrophe hadn't happened yet. There were no zombies. It had to be a hallucination. Then a voice, the same one he'd heard when he first came back, cut through the noise again. Ready, set. He looked around. Nobody else reacted. The voice wasn't coming from anywhere he could point to. He'd heard it at the moment of rebirth too, and dismissed it. Then his eyes flared red. Directly ahead of him, a spatial zone had materialized, hovering there, visible only to him, completely solid and real. A zone. Before the Great Catastrophe, a full month early. Ichijo's mind ran through it fast. The voice was guiding him toward it. Nobody else seemed to see it. Pedestrians moved through the area without pausing, without looking. Whatever this was, it had appeared for him specifically. He stepped off the curb toward it without checking the road. Drivers honked. People shouted that he was going to get himself killed. He barely heard them. He stood at the threshold and breathed. If this zone was real, and it felt real, the same pull he'd recognized hundreds of times before, then he was looking at an opportunity that didn't exist in his previous timeline. Items from inside zones couldn't be found anywhere in the real world. He could expand his inventory a full month before anyone else even knew zones existed. The risk was obvious. He'd be going in alone, underprepared, with 30% of his original strength. He put his hand forward. If that's the case, I have no choice. Ichijo entered the special zone. Level 1. Ichijo stepped through the gate and felt the familiar weight of a zone settle around him. He hadn't expected to be here a month early. He looked around. Zombies, not a small number of them, scattered through the environment ahead. Then something materialized in front of him, glowing. A special mission prompt. Defeat 15 normal zombies and 1 mutant zombie within 1 hour. Find the safety house. Reward multiplier 5 times. Ichijo read it twice. A 5 times reward bonus was something he'd never seen in his previous life, not once across 50 levels of zones. This had to be connected to his rebirth, or to that voice that kept pulling him forward. Either way, he wasn't complaining. He just needed to clear it. He took stock of the starting area. Zone entry points always drop survivors somewhere relatively safe with basic supplies nearby. He found a first aid box and an axe, pocketed both into his inventory without hesitation. Fundamentals only. Everything beyond this had to be earned inside. What actually mattered were the rewards at the safety house. Magic cores used to expand inventory, ranked in 4 tiers of quality, with higher-level zones producing better ones, and crystal stones, whose special elements served as materials for crafting potions that kept people alive inside zones. Both were irreplaceable in the world that was coming. He gripped the axe and moved toward the zone's interior. One rule he remembered clearly. Once you passed the starting point, there was no going back to the entry area. The mission had 3 requirements, and the most punishing factor among them was time. He was running at roughly 30% of his previous strength. 16 targets total, 15 normal zombies plus 1 mutant. Even for a beginner zone, that wasn't nothing. He'd need to pace himself, conserve energy, and save whatever he had left for the mutant at the end. He took 1 step forward. A hand burst through a glass panel directly beside him. He threw himself back on instinct, the zombie's strike missing his face by inches. It stepped out and faced him. Ichijo steadied his breathing. beginner-level zombie, but even these things moved faster and hit harder than any human. The moment one locked onto a target, it didn't stop, and a single bite meant a countdown to transformation unless he reached a safety house for treatment. It lunged again. Ichijo sidestepped. The weakness was always the same. He swung the axe and took the head clean off. Mission counter updated. 1 normal zombie defeated. 56 minutes remaining. He moved forward, keeping the logic simple. Safety houses in beginner zones sat roughly opposite the entry point. He'd head that direction, pick off zombies along the route, and avoid clustering them together. Save the real energy for the mutant. The plan lasted about 30 seconds. The mutant zombie appeared directly in his path, way too early. Ichijo's instincts kicked in before his thoughts caught up. He recognized the type immediately. Gashin, a rank mutation, arms enhanced beyond normal zombie physiology. Brute force attacks, no complex patterns but devastating raw power. In his previous life, Gashin-type mutants had killed a significant number of survivors during the early apocalypse. People who'd survived normal zones for months had walked into a Gashin and not walked back out. It spotted Ichijo and came straight at him. He crossed his arms to block the impact, threw him backward anyway. The force of a single elbow hit rattled through his whole body. That power is several levels above mine. A direct fight was off the table. The terrain around him was cramped and irregular. Bad ground for trying to outmaneuver something built like a battering ram. He needed space and a different angle. He ducked under the Gashin's next reach, rolled past it, and ran. The Gashin's attack patterns in his previous life had been completely straightforward, violent, relentless, but predictable. No adaptation, no strategy, pure aggression following a locked-on target. If he could use that against it, redirect that momentum rather than absorb it, he had a chance. 2 zombies stepped out of a side passage directly in front of him. He checked behind him. The Gashin was closing, surrounded. He didn't stop moving. The training in his previous life, every brutal night he'd spent pushing his body past the point of collapse, every near-death scenario that had forced him to improvise, it all lived in his muscles now. Even if the raw power had dropped, he cut left at the last second, forcing the Gashin to adjust its trajectory. The momentum shift made it stumble. He turned on one of the 2 flanking zombies and cut it down before it could react. 1 down. The Gashin recovered and came from above. A downward strike meant to end it. Ichijo jumped. The blow cratered into the floor beneath him. The Gashin searched, momentarily disoriented by the empty air where its target had been. Ichijo landed above it, found his grip, and launched himself down at full force. Everything he had left, aimed at the back of the Gashin's skull. The Gashin spun. It had heard him coming. The Gashin had caught his strike on its enhanced arm. Ichijo landed, and felt the reality of his situation settle in. With his current power, hitting those arms was pointless. The damage simply didn't register. He was breathing hard, axe in hand, running lower on energy than he'd budgeted for. Then he caught something in his peripheral vision. The safety house. First floor, not far from his current position. He looked down at the drop between him and it, calculated the distance, and started moving closer to get a better angle. The Gashin tracked him and swung. Ichijo shifted his position at the last second, letting the momentum carry the Gashin forward. It crashed through a glass railing and went over the edge. Ichijo moved to look. Gone? The Gashin was hanging off the ledge by one hand. It did a pull-up and hauled itself back up. Ichijo kept moving. More zombies appeared on the path below, a cluster of them, moving together, cutting off the route to the safety house. Ichijo grabbed the first one's arm mid-swing, twisted, and used its own body as a projectile into the 2 behind it. All 3 slammed into the fence at the far end, with the force behind the throw. He stepped in and stomped the first one down. The impact shockwave carried through the lineup. 3 heads, lined up straight. 1 axe swing finished all of them. He turned. The Gashin was already behind him, closing fast. It hurled something sharp. Ichijo was gone before it landed, slipping out of the space entirely and disappearing from the Gashin's line of sight. He found a hiding spot and used the moment to breathe. He wrapped his hands in the bandages from the first aid kit and looked at what he had. Bandages, an axe, nothing else in the inventory that changed the equation. He'd come in underprepared for a mutant this early, and he knew it. But this moment, this zone, this run, it was the foundation of everything, the starting point of his revenge. He couldn't afford to lose it here. He marked the safety house direction in his mind and started moving. Get distance from the Gashin. Reach the house. Complete the mission. The bus he'd been using as cover began to shake. The Gashin had found him. It was outside, pushing the vehicle, and it wasn't stopping. The bus lurched toward a support pillar with Ichijo still inside. He spotted the window, took 2 steps and launched himself through it, shattering the glass, landing right beside the Gashin in the same motion. His axe came down on the same spot he'd wounded earlier. The same arm, same location, opening the cut deeper. He flipped and touched down clean. 1 arm now nearly useless. If he could take the other one, the Gashin was finished. He knew what was coming next. Mutant zombies at the edge of death entered a rampage state, aggression doubling, movements becoming less predictable. The Gashin was already there. It charged. Ichijo buried the axe into the remaining arm deep, a serious wound this time. Then the Gashin kicked him, one-armed, half dead, and it still kicked hard enough to send him sliding. His grip broke. The axe stayed in the Gashin's arm. The Gashin stepped on his wrist and pinned him to the ground, fingers forced open, weapon gone. Ichijo looked up at it and couldn't move. It was just a little more. The wound was deep enough. One more hit would have finished it, but his body wasn't responding. The Gashin loomed over him, and the thought crawling through his mind wasn't tactical anymore. If I become a zombie here, it's no different from how I died the first time. He'd fought through an entire apocalypse. He'd clawed back from death more times than he could count. He'd come back, actually come back, with everything he knew, and it was going to end on the floor of a level 1 zone, pinned under a mutant zombie before the world had even collapsed yet. Where did I go wrong? Why is this happening again? The Gashin raised what was left of its arm to finish it. Then the voice came back, clearer than before. Not background noise. Direct, deliberate, cutting straight through the panic. Get your revenge. The voice hit different this time. Not background noise. Something from inside his own body, rising up through the panic like it had been waiting for exactly this moment. Ichijo noticed his wounds were closing. The infection should have been spreading. He'd taken a bite, made contact with the virus, and instead of turning, his body was actively healing. He looked at his bandaged hand and felt the pieces click together. The mysterious voice, the early zone appearance, the immunity, the healing. It all traced back to one source. His previous life's final moments rushed back. A level 10 zombie he'd encountered right before the last zone collapsed. His mind had been consumed by rage at the time. Tunnel-visioned on the safety house. The zone had dissolved around both of them. By all logic, they should have both converted and reappeared in the real world as zombies, but somehow, they'd come back here together. The zombie was inside him, not controlling him, but present, sharing the body. That thing had crossed back through time with him, and every impossible ability Ichigo had shown since waking up in that high school corridor traced directly to it. Zone visibility before the catastrophe, virus immunity, accelerated healing. The Gashin kept attacking. Ichigo kept countering, almost on autopilot, while his mind processed the full weight of what he'd just figured out. Am I still human? The Gashin kicked him back. He found his footing, looked at the thing in front of him, and felt something shift. Not fear, not doubt, just a cold, clear decision. His longtime nemesis, the zombie virus, had saved his life. The irony wasn't lost on him, but revenge didn't care about irony. He raised the axe and moved. The power behind the swing was different. The zombie's strength bleeding through into his muscles, amplifying every bit of force he had left. The Gashin's arm split on impact. He followed through and cleaved the entire body in two. The mutant dropped. Ichijo stood over it and thought about Nozomi, about the 4 others who'd walked out of that final zone smiling. With this power, revenge just got a whole lot closer. The safety house materialized ahead of him. Ichijo looked at it and let out a long breath. He'd made it. Inside, a single box waited. He opened it. Magic cores, and not just a few. The 5 times reward multiplier had delivered. He picked one up, confirmed it was beginner grade, and got to work immediately. Inventory open. First core placed. Level 2. 3 more. Level 3. 5 cores total. 5 new inventory slots unlocked. He stepped out of the zone as it dissolved around him and ran the numbers on the way out. Magic cores worked the same as his previous life. Zone stats were scaling at 5 times the normal rate. Both confirmed. The next few months just became the most valuable stretch of time he'd ever had access to. He also palmed a crystal stone from the rewards, one that contained traces of the zombie virus. The right formula could turn it into potions. The wrong handling could turn people into zombies. He filed it under handle carefully and kept moving. A woman's voice cut through the street noise ahead. She was struggling with a drunk man who had her by the wrist, telling her to relax and have some fun. She kept pulling away, telling him not to touch her. Ichijo looked down at the crystal stone in his hand. He smiled. He walked straight between them, bumping the drunk hard enough to break the grip. The drunk spun around, slurring about watching where he was going, but by then the woman was already gone, moving fast in the opposite direction. The drunk stood there, irritated, then shrugged it off and went back to his bottle. The alcohol tasted strange somehow, he thought. He drank it anyway and wandered off. The next morning, that alley was sealed off with police tape. Officers asked bystanders to stay back and preserve the scene. People in the crowd exchanged confused looks. Someone said a body had been found in the back alley, and the condition of it was apparently not normal. A second vehicle arrived. 2 researchers stepped out. A policeman greeted them by name, Kuraji, and said this was their first time dealing with a scene like this one. The researcher asked to see the body. They followed the officer through the tape. What they found stopped them cold. The drunk man's body was bloated and heavy, covered in large, bulging purple welts across the skin. Grotesque. Wrong in a way that didn't match anything in a standard forensic report. The researchers stared at it in silence. The researcher told the policeman to process it as alcohol poisoning. Accidental death. Clean and simple. The policeman thanked him warmly. Case closed before it even opened. His assistant wasn't satisfied. She'd checked the body carefully, gloves on, and she knew what she'd seen. She pushed back. Blood samples. Proper testing. This wasn't a straightforward case. The researcher shut her down without turning around. She was still in training, he reminded her. Studying abroad didn't make her experienced. Follow instructions, stay out of the way, and don't jeopardize her graduation evaluation over unnecessary curiosity. She watched him walk to the car and said quietly that those were completely separate matters. Ichijo stood in the crowd, watching her. He'd gotten his answer from last night's experiment. The drunk man had been exposed to the zombie virus, and instead of reanimating, the body had simply died with severe physical deterioration. Zombification didn't trigger before the apocalypse arrived. The world needed to break first before the dead started walking. That was one confirmed variable. Now for the next one. He already knew who she was. Etsuka, in his previous life, she'd become the most important pharmacist in the Survivor network. Her work with crystal stones had produced potions that minimized zombie virus side effects to a degree no one else could replicate. Even the top-tier fighters had depended on her supply. Her relentless, almost reckless curiosity had driven all of it, and ultimately, that same curiosity had pushed her to use herself as a test subject, which had cost her everything. This time, Ichijo intended to reach her before that happened. She was arguing with the researcher inside his car now, telling him to let her out. He drove away without answering. Ichijo walked over and said hello. She turned and asked who he was. He told her he was the high school student from the witness testimony she was looking for. Then he asked if they could talk somewhere else. The scene shifted across town. Hatano had arrived at a location Ichijo had pointed him toward, an unused facility he'd been told to clean and prepare. Mineta trailed behind, asking why they were renting and scrubbing down an abandoned building on short notice. Hatano said he had no idea, just that Ichijo had called. Ichijo arrived shortly after with Etsuka and asked how the work was progressing. Hatano confirmed the arrangements were made, then admitted he hadn't known a laboratory this size existed in the area. Ichigo said he'd heard about it through word of mouth. Mineta wasn't listening. He was staring at Etsuka, who was already moving through the space, checking equipment, muttering about the machines needing testing. Ichigo told Hatano to wait, then approached her. He said they should cover the main topic before anything else. She agreed. He got straight to it, pulled out the crystal stone and told her that the man from the alley had died because of what he was holding. She immediately reached for it. He raised it out of reach. She told him not to handle something like that without proper protection, that the internal structure needed immediate analysis. Then she stopped herself and asked the real question. Why come to her specifically, and why bring her to a private laboratory? What was the actual motive? Ichigo was quiet for a moment. Then he told her she was exactly as sharp as he'd expected. She waited. He asked if she was willing to become a comrade. If yes, the laboratory was hers to use freely. He'd supply as many crystal stones as she needed, and research costs would be covered. She'd see things that didn't fit anywhere in her current understanding of the world. If no, the conversation ended here. She was already holding the stone up toward the light, angling it. Ichijo asked if he should take that as a yes. She said that if he was going to give her the crystal stone, she'd accept any conditions. He told her she could rest assured, and thought to himself exactly as expected. She told him to continue. Keep talking, he laid it out plainly. The crystal stone contained a virus that killed living beings and accelerated physical decay. Unlike ordinary death, the body retained movement without consciousness, no longer human in any meaningful sense. The body from the alley hadn't reanimated, but she'd noticed the unusual physical robustness despite death. If it had started moving, it would have exhibited several times the strength of a living person. The term for what it becomes is zombie. The living dead. Crystal stones contained two distinct components, one that triggered zombification, and one that enhanced bodily functions. He needed her to separate them completely, isolate the enhancement component at near-perfect purity, and formulate it into a potion that worked on living humans. The purity determined the potion's effectiveness. It was extremely difficult work, which was exactly why he was bringing it to her. She sat with that for a moment. Then she said, "So the body from this morning could have started moving." Eventually, Ichijo confirmed it. He told her she probably had 100 more questions, but he needed her focused on the crystal stone research for now. He'd tell her everything when the time was right. There was a residential room on the floor below for her to use. He was leaving. She called after him and asked at least for his name. He told her, Ichijo. Then he turned to Hatano and said they were going. Mineta was assigned to stay and support her. He agreed without complaint. On the way out, Hatano asked where they were heading. Ichijo asked about Hiraguri's situation. Hatano said everyone from that side was now calling him Big Brother. Ichijo told him not to let that slip. Hatano was the boss, publicly. That image had to hold. He ran through the updated picture in his head. Zones were confirmed real, accessible ahead of schedule. The potion development was now in motion. Everything was moving faster than his previous life had allowed, which meant money was the next bottleneck. Everything he was building required scale, and scale required funding far beyond what Hatano's current operation produced. He told Hatano to prepare himself. They were going to see Hogane. Ogane Kawase was 20 years old when his hands first got dirty. He hadn't stopped since. Every move he'd made from that point was calculated, ruthless and effective, and it had bought him the entertainment empire he now sat at the top of. Casinos, nightclubs, a river of money flowing in from people who believed, genuinely believed, that tonight was the night their luck turned. Inside the casino floor, the noise never stopped. Chips flying, dealers calling, gamblers convinced they were one hand away from changing their lives. The ones who lost borrowed. The ones who borrowed couldn't repay, and Ogane's people were always there to help with exorbitant interest rates written into promissory notes that nobody read carefully enough. The ones who couldn't pay found out what came next. Right now, a man was on the floor of Ogane's private room, while Ogane worked through a bucket of golf balls, using the man's body as a target range. The man owed 100 million yen on an original loan of 2 million. He kept saying he couldn't pay it back, which Ogane already knew. That was the point. Ogane crouched down and mentioned the man's daughter. Just started kindergarten, hadn't she? The man exploded, threatened him, said he wouldn't forgive him if his family was touched. Ogane hit the next ball straight between the man's legs. Then he handed the club to his secretary and gave the order. Cut the pinky finger, send it to the family, inform them of the 16 million in current debt, and arrange a hostage exchange. The secretary agreed immediately. This was how Ogane operated. The organization's funding pipeline ran almost entirely through him. Tens of billions accumulated through methods exactly like this one. He was the financial backbone of the entire structure, and he knew it. One of his men entered and announced that Hatano and his group were requesting a meeting. Ogane told them to bring him in. Hatano walked in with just 3 people. One of Ogane's subordinates started to object. Ogane waved him back without looking up. Hatano noted that Ogane was as ruthless as ever. Ogane said Hatano wasn't far behind. Word had already reached him that Hatano had absorbed Hiraguri's territory. He asked what Hatano actually wanted. Hatano said the boss's birthday was coming up, and he was thinking about making a move. Ogane cut straight through it. He didn't make deals that weren't worth his time. If Hatano wanted to stand out at the celebration, Ogane could facilitate that, but the price was both Hatano's and Hiraguri's territories handed over completely. Hatano called him a fool to his face. Ogane smiled and told him he'd had his eye on those territories for a long time. He hadn't expected Hatano to walk them directly into his hands. His men closed in from every side. 3 people against the casino's full security complement. It should have been over before it started. Hatano had asked Ichijo about exactly this beforehand. Just 3 people against 100 security personnel was suicide. Ichijo had told him they weren't winning through numbers. The others would buy time at the entrance. Inside, Hatano needed to hold a strong front and treat Ichijo as subordinate, order him around, play the role of boss completely. Hatano had understood. Now surrounded, he decided to commit. He grabbed a pencil off the nearest surface, told his people to finish the old man, and charged at Ogane. Ogane's top bodyguard intercepted him instantly. Before Hatano could process it, Ichijo appeared beside him, redirected the pencil mid-motion, and sent it flying straight at Ogane's head. The bodyguard caught it on his bicep without flinching. Ogane ordered his men to kill them all. One of them moved toward Ichijo and got sent flying face first before he completed the step. Another charged and screaming. Hiraguri stepped into the path and told him this one was his. He'd been waiting for an excuse. Ichijo pulled Hatano back and told him to stay sharp. Then he identified the bodyguard, the strongest man in Ogane's operation, the main reason Ogane had always felt untouchable. He told Hatano to fall back and let him handle it. The bodyguard shed his coat and came forward. He swung a golf club at Ichijo's head. Ichijo slipped it, spotted the bag of clubs nearby and pulled one out. They faced each other, and the bodyguard swung again, connecting with Ichijo's face. The mask came off. The bodyguard stared. No injury. The hit had landed clean and done nothing. Hatano called out asking if he was okay. Ichijo said yes, then noted almost to himself that this guy was considerably slower than the mutant zombie from the day before. From across the room, Ogane told his bodyguard not to cause too much disruption. The customers downstairs could hear it. Then he told him to kill them all. The 2 of them clashed golf clubs back and forth, trading strikes and dodges across the room. Ichijo read the openings and waited, then drove a kick into the bodyguard's side. The man caught his leg mid-air and promised to rip it clean off. Ichijo's other leg found his neck before he could finish the sentence. The bodyguard hit the ground. Ichijo followed with a straight shot to the gut that sent him sliding across the floor. Ogane stared. This wasn't possible. He grabbed the phone and demanded backup immediately. Backup arrived, but far fewer men than expected. The roads leading to the casino were completely gridlocked. Mysterious traffic jams on every approach. No reinforcements were getting through anytime soon. Ogane turned to Ichijo and asked if that was his doing too. Ichijo confirmed it. Too bad. Ogane recovered fast, pivoting to the men he had. 200,000 yen to whoever killed them, right now. Every head in the room turned toward Ichijo and Hatano, and they all moved at once. On the casino floor below, customers kept playing, kept laughing, kept losing their money. Then Ogane came through the door, not walking. He landed in the middle of the floor, and the entire casino went quiet. Customers looked at each other. Someone recognized him. Wasn't that the owner? What was happening? Ichijo stepped out after him and told the room it was an internal dispute. Nothing to worry about. Hatano moved forward and took the floor. He introduced himself as the new owner, effective immediately, and announced 10,000 chips for every person in the building as a commemorative gift. The casino erupted. Then a voice cut through the noise. Someone called it stylish. Hatano turned and froze. Ichihyun, here, now. Someone asked why he was in the building. Hatano stumbled through a greeting, said he hadn't expected to run into him here. Ichihyun said he'd heard the commotion from the VIP room and came to check, and that Ogane was a friend of his. Hatano glanced at Ichijo. Ichihyun's attention had already shifted. He told Ichijo his attitude needed work, then moved toward him directly. Ichijo stepped forward to meet him. Ichihyun looked him over and asked if he needed something. Noting he looked like a student, Ichijo kept his expression flat. Inside, the gears were turning fast. He hadn't expected Ijuin to already be operating at this level. Him, Shuhiro, Lala, Rick, Ilman, all heirs to companies that ran the financial industry. After the apocalypse arrived in his previous life, they'd systematically eliminated every obstacle standing between them and total control. The plan to frame Ichijo had been years in the making, not an improvised betrayal. He was looking at the beginning of that plan right now. Ogane grabbed Ichihyun's leg from the floor, begging for help, promising any amount of money. He said Ichihyun had taken care of him for years. This much was owed. Ichijo hit Ogane across the face with the golf club before he could finish. Blood. Ichihyun stopped his own bodyguard with a gesture. Then he closed the distance to Ichijo himself, grabbed his collar and spoke directly into his ear. Eliminating someone like Ichijo would be trivial. The only reason he was still breathing was the crowd around them. He'd gotten lucky. He released him, turned away, and called it boring. Ichijo called after him, told him they'd be meeting face to face again. All 5 of Ichihyun's group turned to look at him. Ichihyun's jaw was tight. He told his subordinate to find out everything about Ichijo and walked out. Hatano told the room to keep enjoying themselves, and that the chips would be distributed shortly. Ichijo stood quietly and thought about how close he'd just come to losing control. He couldn't kill Ichihyun yet. Not like this. He wanted him alive and aware, pushed to the absolute edge of despair before the end came. A quick death was too easy. Hatano pulled him aside and said making an enemy of Ichihyun at this stage was dangerous. His resources alone. Ichijo cut him off. He already knew. He asked how much the casino had made today. Hatano said he'd need to check the numbers, then asked what Ichijo needed it for. Ichijo told him to use all of it to buy gold. Physical transactions only. No paper trail. Deliver it to the laboratory. Hatano stared. Gold. What for? Ichijo told him it wasn't his concern. Buy it regardless of price and get it delivered. Then he said he had other business and headed for the exit. The logic was straightforward. Beginner-grade magic cores could expand the inventory up to level 10. Beyond that, the material requirement changed. Gold, starting at 3 kilograms for level 11, scaling up exponentially from there. In his previous life, the apocalyptic world burned through gold reserves faster than anyone had anticipated. Supplies ran dry quickly. He needed to front-load that acquisition now, before the catastrophe hit and every gram became a competition. Hatano would handle procurement. Ichijo would keep clearing zones and pushing his inventory higher. Gold was finite. Every kilogram he secured was one less in Ijuin's reach. He was still running the math when something stopped him mid-step. That familiar pull, the sensation he'd learned to recognize. A special zone. Close. Very close. He scanned the area and spotted it, moved toward it. When he arrived and looked at what was in front of him, he went still. The next morning at school, everything looked exactly the way it had before the world started changing. Fatty arrived at his seat and quietly wondered if Ichijo was even alive. A boy from class had already claimed Ichijo's desk for himself, stacking his books there without a second thought. He told Fatty that Ichijo wasn't coming back, taken away by Mineta's people, probably in a hospital somewhere. The seat was going to waste. Ichijo climbed through the window. Mid-sentence, the boy's textbooks were sailing back at him. He sputtered. Ichijo told him to get lost before he did something about it. The boy puffed up, then his friend grabbed his arm and reminded him quietly that this was the guy who'd put Mineta on the ground. The class started buzzing. He'd been taken away and came back completely fine. Nobody could explain it. Fatty looked at Ichijo like he'd seen a ghost and asked if he was actually happy to be back in school. Ichijo told him he was, in the flattest tone possible. Ichijo was already thinking ahead. He'd checked the area last night. The zone he'd spotted near the casino hadn't fully materialized yet. The generation cycle wasn't complete, but he could feel it now, a low, constant signal in the back of his awareness. It would descend tomorrow. He filed it away. Then a girl's voice pulled him back to the classroom. Miki, the class idol, said she'd been so worried when she saw him get taken away, asked if he was okay, said she hadn't been able to eat the breakfast he usually bought her. Her eyes were already moving toward the door, gesturing for him to go get it now so they could eat together. Ichijo looked at her and told her she was an eyesore. The classroom detonated. 2 boys immediately stepped up to defend her honor, voices raised, telling Ichijo he should be grateful she was even talking to him. Miki played the peacemaker with a small smile, telling them it was fine, they were just classmates. She was enjoying every second of it. Ichijo thought about how many times this exact dynamic had played out in his previous life, him included in the rotation of boys she ran like a personal errand service. He felt something close to pity for who he used to be. The yellow-haired boy from class told him to take it outside, said beating Mineta didn't make him special. A hand slammed onto the desk between them. Mineta, Miki's expression lit up. She assumed revenge had arrived and leaned in. Mineta shook her off his arm without looking at her, and told her to get lost. She blinked. He'd called Ichijo Big Brother. The room went completely silent. Mineta turned to the 2 boys who'd been defending Miki, and told them to disappear. They left immediately. He told Fatty to go eat breakfast. Fatty said he'd already eaten. Mineta told him to go buy his then. Fatty agreed and went. The class had been cleared in under a minute. Mineta turned to Ichijo and asked why his phone had been off all night. Etsuka had been calling repeatedly, couldn't get through, so Mineta had come to school himself to deliver the message. Ichijo said he'd forgotten to charge it, asked what she needed. Mineta leaned in and said quietly that she'd made an amazing discovery and wanted to talk. Ichijo's focus sharpened immediately. Potion development already? He told Mineta to head back first. He'd come after. The teacher arrived and called the class to order. Page 50. Textbooks open. Ichijo looked out the window and thought about how temporary this all was. The quiet classroom, the morning routines, the ordinary noise of school life, none of it was going to last much longer. Then the zone appeared directly beside him and pulled him in without warning. No gradual materialization, no approach signal, just gone. Level 5 special zone, 20 minutes to reach the safety house, 5 times reward multiplier. Uchijo pushed up from the chair and steadied himself. It had been a while since a zone had grabbed him mid-scene like this. In his previous life, it used to throw him completely. Now he just needed a second to orient. He scanned the starting area. A scale, a set square. That was it. No recovery items. Nothing to work with beyond 2 measuring tools. Significantly harder baseline than the first zone. He picked up the set square, moved to the exit and started thinking. His biggest advantage was his mapping ability. After 50 levels of zone experience, he could reconstruct spatial layouts fast and cut exploration time dramatically. He needed the safety house location first. He stepped outside. He found it immediately. The playground directly visible and completely surrounded. A massive wave of zombies packed around the safety gate in every direction, numbers that made forcing through within 20 minutes mathematically impossible. He stood there running options. Then a door opened behind him. 2 red eyes in the dark. Ichijo sidestepped. The zombie's momentum carried it straight through the window. It dropped, hit the ground below with a heavy thud, and every zombie in the courtyard snapped their heads toward the sound. They swarmed the fallen body, all of them drawn purely by the impact noise. Ichijo watched it and felt the solution click into place. Sound. They followed sound. If he could generate something loud enough, far enough from the safety gate, he could pull the entire horde away at once and clear the path in one move. He already knew the spot. He turned and ran for the stairs. If he could reach it in time, the mission was already won. Ichijo had one destination in mind, the broadcast room. He ran the layout from memory. Central building where he was now. Broadcast room on the top floor of building 4. Cut through the central building, hit the connecting corridor, cross to building 4, take the far staircase up, straightforward on paper. Then the zombies started moving. He looked down at the courtyard. The horde was drifting back toward the safety gate, resettling into their original positions around it. Ichijo watched them and asked himself whether this was deliberate guarding behavior or just coincidence. A zombie wandered close to his position. He decided to test it. He grabbed it and threw it out the window into the courtyard below. The thud hit the ground and the entire horde snapped toward the sound, swarming the impact point instantly. Confirmed. Sound sensitivity, immediate response, total redirection. And the fastest ones to react were the elite zombies, former athletes and physically exceptional humans who'd retained their conditioning through the conversion. PE class had been running on the playground when the zone activated. The courtyard was full of them. He watched them verify the sound source and filter back to the gate. One shot. That was all he had. The broadcast system had to draw every single one of them away simultaneously, and it had to hold long enough for him to reach the safety house. Any mistake before that moment, and the whole plan collapsed. 17 minutes left. He moved. A zombie stepped into the hallway ahead. Ichijo came through a side door from behind, landed on it, and drove the set square through its skull before it could register the noise. Clean. No sound worth worrying about. 17 minutes sounded like enough. It wasn't. 5 minutes minimum from the broadcast room to the playground, and that assumed nothing went wrong between here and there. He reached the connecting corridor and pushed the gate open. 3 zombies. Nowhere to hide in a straight corridor, and a detour would cost him time he didn't have. He had the shovel from the zombie he'd just put down. He decided to go straight through. He needed quiet. One loud sound here, and the zombies inside the main building would pile on from every direction. He moved fast, shovel across the first zombie's face, second across the head, third finished before it could react. 3 down. No noise that carried. He kept moving. Building 4 ahead. The hardest section. He eased the door open just enough and looked through. The staircase to the broadcast room sat at the far end of the hallway. Building 4's layout was more complex than the others. More turns, more blind spots, more places for something to be waiting that he couldn't see from the entrance. No zombies in the visible range. That didn't mean empty. He stepped inside and moved forward. A zombie came from directly behind the door. He caught the shadow in his peripheral vision and threw himself sideways. The zombie's swing grazed him as he dropped. He hit the floor and rolled, looking up at the thing looming over him. Elite zombie. It had been standing completely still behind the door, invisible until he'd already passed it. Glass scattered across the floor around him caught movement in its reflection. More zombies, drawn by the noise of his fall, emerging from the side corridors and doorways ahead. Ichijo looked at the hallway filling up in front of him and didn't waste time on frustration. He pushed off the floor and started moving, using the walls and furniture to redirect himself, buying angles where he could. One of them caught him across the stomach as he squeezed past. Not a bite, a glancing hit, but it slowed him for a step. Another one cut off the path forward. He shoved the shovel into its mouth sideways to block the bite, and it started thrashing the handle wildly, trying to work its jaws free. Then the elite zombie from behind, the one with the boxing gloves, came up directly at his back, arm already cocked back about to swing. The elite zombie's fist came down straight at Ichijo's skull. Ichijo felt it coming and dropped. The punch sailed over him and connected with the zombie directly in front instead, caving its head in on impact. The elite turned, looking for him. Ichijo was already gone. He'd left a trail without meaning to. The blood from his earlier hit carried a scent, and the elite zombie followed it through the corridor, nose locked onto the source. It tracked the smell to a nearby room and pushed inside. The laboratory. Etsuko was at her workstation, completely absorbed, talking herself through the problem out loud. Separating the two components of the crystal stone was proving far harder than anything she'd read about. The zombie virus proportion was too high, purity capped at 60% no matter what she tried. None of her existing reference materials described anything close to this substance, and the one person who actually knew where the crystal stones came from had vanished without a word. The zombie moved through the room following the scent and found it, a broken test tube on the table. Ichijo had left it there deliberately. He came in from behind while the zombie was still orienting. The zombie sensed him and reacted faster than expected. It jumped, dodging the first attack, and came back from above. Ichijo drove the shovel up into its skull with everything he had and cut through the neck in the same motion. It dropped. He caught his breath and looked at the broken test tube. The blood he'd extracted had lured the zombie away from Itsuka and given him a clean angle. The wound on his stomach from earlier had already closed. 10 minutes left. He moved. Then his legs went unsteady. He grabbed the nearest table and held on. A headache hit hard, sharp, disorienting, the kind that came from somewhere inside rather than any external hit. His consciousness started blurring at the edges. The entity inside him, the zombie he'd merged with, it was reacting, pushing back, destabilizing something, and the timing couldn't have been worse. He gritted through it. Using the healing ability had triggered this. He'd have to manage it carefully going forward. It wasn't a free resource, but right now he needed to move. He opened the door and stepped into the corridor. 5 zombies. The earlier commotion had drawn them in from the floor below, and now they were spread across the hallway between him and the staircase. No time for a fight. He grabbed a test tube from inside the lab and hurled it into the side alley. The glass shattered. The zombies' heads snapped toward the sound, and they moved. Ichijo was already through the door and running in the opposite direction. He pushed toward the staircase, keeping low and fast, checking the next corridor from the edge before committing. Clear. He moved through the gate. Clear again. The broadcast room was just ahead. He stepped inside and took a quick scan. No zombies. He picked up the shovel and set it aside, found the equipment panel, and started working. He'd helped the broadcasting club enough times in his previous life to remember the basics. The system powered on. He exhaled. It worked. Then something behind him moved. A door. Something on the other side was trying to get it open. Ichijo kept his hands on the equipment and tracked it in his peripheral vision, shovel within reach. He turned. Ready. The door opened. The zombie on the other side was enormous, and it spoke. Don't. Ichijo froze. Ichijo looked at the bloated zombie in the doorway and ran the biology fast. Putrefaction gas filling the body cavity, soft tissue expanding from the inside out, a corpse swelling phenomenon that made the thing in front of him look twice its natural size and twice as dangerous to be near when it went. The attack power was low, but the burst radius scattered explosive force and zombie virus simultaneously, enough to kill a person outright and draw every zombie within earshot to the location. He could not let it detonate in the broadcast room. He backed out into the corridor. The gas zombie followed, lumbering after him on instinct. Ichijo waited until it was close, dropped low and drove his attack into its legs. It lost balance and tipped forward, straight toward him. He grabbed a wire from the wall and looped it around the zombie's leg as it fell, pulling it taut. The zombie swung out over the edge of the corridor railing and hung there, suspended, slowly straining against the restraint. 4 minutes left. He looked down the hall. The noise had already drawn zombies from this floor. He ran back into the broadcast room, grabbed a test tube and hurled it in the opposite direction to buy himself seconds. Then he found the microphone. If an elite zombie showed up now on top of everything else, he was finished. He pushed that thought aside and focused on the equipment. 2 zombies were already moving toward the broadcast room. The wire outside wouldn't hold much longer. One of them reached the door. Ichijo hit the broadcast switch. His voice went out across every speaker in the school, announcing the start of National Health Exercise Number 7, Part 1, loud and clear and completely absurd. Every zombie on the ground snapped toward the sound. He'd barely made it. He stepped out of the broadcast room with the broadcast still running, speakers blaring across the building, and watched the courtyard zombies begin drifting toward the noise sources. The path to the playground was clearing, but the zombies from the 3rd floor were already coming up the stairwell. He needed to move while their attention held. He jumped. Then the door from Building 1 opened and another wave came through, cutting off the direct route. Too many to fight through in the time he had left. He pulled back and waited, watching the wire outside. It snapped. The gas zombie dropped and detonated on impact. The explosion shook the floor and scattered in every direction, and every zombie nearby lurched toward the blast sound, completely abandoning their positions. Ichijo went out the window while the noise covered his movement. Shortest route connecting corridor to gymnasium roof, straight drop to the playground. He ran the line without slowing down, jumping the gap, landing clean, sprinting toward the safety gate. The playground was empty, just as he'd planned. He could see the gate. He was going to make it even if they found the speakers. It would take time to destroy them, and by then he'd be through. Then the speakers went silent. He looked up. The zombies had reached the top of the building and destroyed the sound source faster than he'd calculated. The horde was already reorienting, turning back toward the playground. They started coming. Ichijo ran. A fast zombie hit him from the side. He went down hard. They started closing in from every angle, nearly surrounding him before he got the shovel up and cleared enough space to move. He pushed to his feet and faced a wall of zombies between him and the gate. He started cutting through them, shovel swinging, forcing a path one body at a time. The gate was right there. He reached out. The scene cut to the laboratory. Itsuka was alone, surrounded by notes and equipment, muttering about everything she still needed answers on. The man who'd brought her here had just disappeared. She went back to the basics. He told her that living beings exposed to the virus became zombies. The body from the alley had confirmed it. She looked at the crystal stone, then at a prepared sample in front of her. If someone exposed themselves to it voluntarily, she wondered what would happen. What could she learn? She reached for it. The laboratory door opened. A girl stepped inside. Itsuka looked up and asked who she was. The girl didn't answer the question, because the girl standing in the doorway, the one who had killed Ichijo in that final zone, had used Ichijo's body as a vessel to escape and had followed the trail here. The female zombie emerged from Ichijo's body. What followed wasn't a fight, it was a massacre. She moved through the remaining zombies surrounding Ichijo with surgical efficiency, cutting down the elite types and clearing the rest before they could react. When it was over, she stood in the middle of the wreckage and waited. Ichijo asked why she'd saved him. She gave him a sideways look and said nothing. He asked what she wanted. Still nothing. She just moved toward him. He told her to stay back. Then his leg caught on a wire and he stumbled. She closed the distance before he could recover, reached out and lifted his face with her hand. He asked what she was planning. She smiled. The kind of smile that didn't have good intentions behind it. Ichijo slammed back into consciousness and grabbed the throat of whoever was in front of him. He demanded to know what they were doing to him. Then he registered the face. Itsuka. He was holding Itsuka by the throat. She told him he'd finally come around. He let go immediately. As he did, a test tube she'd been holding nearly slipped from her hand. She caught it, pulled it close and exhaled in relief. The research was safe. Ichijo apologized and asked if she was okay, then asked her to explain what had happened. She walked him through it. He'd appeared in the laboratory the previous night, but she hadn't recognized him at first because he looked like a woman. Then he'd collapsed. When she rushed over and got close enough to identify him, she found his body covered in wounds and severely weakened. She examined him, treated what she could, and kept watch. Ichijo processed that quietly. It hadn't been a dream. The zombie had taken control of his body and brought him here, deliberately. He still didn't know why. Itsuka pulled out a document and told him to look at his test results. Zombie virus detected in his system, but instead of his body fighting it, the results showed something closer to dependency. His body had adapted to the virus, almost integrated with it. She'd extracted a sample and tried combining it with the virus from the crystal stone. They fused perfectly. On a hypothesis, she'd injected the crystal stone virus back into him, and his wounds had healed. The zombie virus in his body had been consumed in the process. Ichijo sat back and let the pieces settle. Every time his recovery ability activated in the zone, he'd gone dizzy and eventually blacked out. The healing drew directly from the zombie virus reserves in his body. When those ran dry, the entity took over. Itsuka said it was her turn for questions now. Was he human or a zombie? And where were the crystal stones coming from? Because they shouldn't exist in this world at all. Ichijo was quiet for a moment. Then he asked if she believed in time leaps. She told him she was being serious. He told her to hear him out completely. He'd leapt from 5 years in the future, a world that had reached full apocalypse, zombies attacking globally, social order gone. The world she was living in right now had 1 month left before it started. The things she'd witnessed yesterday would be appearing everywhere. She asked about the special zones. Ichijo confirmed it. Worldwide, full of zombies, unavoidable. He said there was something he wanted to show her, and asked where his clothes were. She pointed across the room. He decided not to mention the inventory yet. She seemed genuine, but his previous life had taught him exactly what happened when trust was given too early. He used his shirt as cover and pulled crystal stones from his inventory. A significant number of them, far more than she'd expected. Her eyes went wide. He told her he'd collected them in a special zone, that he could already access zones ahead of the catastrophe. He shifted the conversation. She'd said she had something to show him. She pulled out her results. Highest purity achieved so far, 60%. She'd pushed it to 65 yesterday, but that was the ceiling with what she had. The sample in front of him was red, a power potion, 70% purity in a single day. Ichijo looked at it and thought that she really was exactly what the rumors in his previous life had described, a genuine genius. She pointed out that some of the crystal stones he'd brought were different from the first batch, structurally distinct. She started to ask what she'd be doing 5 years from now, then caught herself and asked directly, since he'd come to find her specifically, had they been comrades in his previous life. Ichijo told her that the future version of her was already dead. They'd had no connection at all. She asked how he knew about her then, whether zombies had killed her. He said he'd heard about her through reputation, a genius pharmacist known across the survivor network, and it hadn't been zombies. She'd used herself as a test subject in her research. She went quiet for a moment, then she said she understood that future her had been working hard even in that situation, and that using herself as a test subject was exactly something she would do. She said she believed him. From that point forward, she told him she would support him with everything she had. Then she asked if they should get back to the remaining work. The door opened. Hatano came in, hauling boxes of gold, visibly struggling, muttering that he hadn't known money could be this heavy. Someone behind him bumped into the doorframe. They both froze, looked up, and apologized simultaneously. Ichijo told them it was fine, and asked where the rest of the money was. Hatano said he'd bought everything available through normal channels. The market was completely cleared out. More cargo was still coming. Ichijo told him to bring what he had, then held out a vial. Hatano asked what it was. Ichijo told him to drink it and trust him. Hatano drank it without hesitating. The effect was immediate and not subtle. His body locked up, power surging through him in waves, expressions cycling through what looked like significant discomfort. Itsuka took a sharp step forward. Ichijo told her he was fine. Hatano was a former professional athlete. His physical baseline was high enough to absorb a 70% purity potion, even if the first exposure wasn't comfortable. It would take time for his body to fully adapt, but he'd make it through. When it passed, Hatsuzo straightened up and took stock of himself, power moving through him. The gold boxes he'd been straining under a minute ago. He picked up 2 at once without effort. He also had news. Most of the money they'd collected through Ogani's operation had traced back to Ejuan's group. Pushing further would draw direct attention. Ichijo told him to stop collecting money for now. The current priority was consolidating control, with the boss's birthday celebration as the takeover point. He ran the full picture in his head. The money situation had gone roughly as expected. What actually surprised him was the potion. The enhancement effect had presented before any zombie virus influence, which meant Itsuka had achieved something more refined than a simple extraction. At this rate, she'd push purity high enough for ordinary people to use it safely, and once that happened, the entire organization could be equipped. That freed Ichijo to focus entirely on zone clearing. He looked toward the window and thought about Nozumi. 1 month left. Before the apocalypse arrived and reset everyone's starting position, Ichijo intended to drain every resource Nozumi had accumulated and make him watch it happen. The pool game was supposed to be chill, but Nozomi couldn't help himself. He asked Rick if he'd heard about someone dumping all the gold on the market and if anyone knew who did it. Rick shrugged it off, but admitted the efficiency was terrifying. He figured it had to be a group, because buying up every ounce of gold in a single day wasn't exactly a solo mission. Nozomi pressed him on international affairs, but Rick had already checked. Nothing. No wars, no coups, no chaos. Just a ghost buyer cleaning out the market and sending prices through the roof with zero product left to show for it. Then Rick dropped the real weird part. Every single transaction was in physical gold. Nozomi froze for half a beat. Physical gold. Rick confirmed it, adding that they were basically the only ones left holding any, so why not sell high while the situation was stable? There wasn't going to be another spike like this. That's when the girl cut in. She said they'd spent years collecting that gold. Throwing it away now would be stupid. Rick fired back, called her a worry rat like always. She didn't flinch, just sat right on the pool table and said being careful wasn't a crime, until they knew who the mystery buyer was. That gold stayed locked down. Nozomi hit a trick shot that made everyone blink. Rick went quiet for a second, then muttered that they collected gold to make money, not to hoard it like dragons. Sell when the price is good. That's just common sense. But he threw his hands up and said the final call belonged to the boss, meaning Nozomi. Nozomi didn't even look up from the table. He asked about the old district acquisition plan instead. Rick reported that negotiations were mostly done, contracts were moving in, only a few stubborn residents left. Nozomi lined up another shot and asked Rick why he thought they'd all gathered here today. Rick gave the safe answer, to produce results, no matter what. Wrong answer. Nozomi snapped that it wasn't anything so lukewarm. He laid it out raw. They were all born into conglomerates, and because of that, no matter how hard they worked, the old geezers sitting at the top took everything. Their own parents and families were blocking their path. Labels like rich kids would follow them to the grave. He said he wasn't waiting anymore. Rick straightened up fast and promised to handle the old district by tomorrow. Nozomi nodded and put the gold sale on hold. The real play now was the reconstruction plan. He wanted those old geezers to wake up and realize this was the era of young people. Then he pivoted, asked about the kid from the casino yesterday. The girl already had the file. She said the name was Ichijo. Ordinary high school student. Parents died early in a traffic accident. Working multiple part-time jobs just to afford rent and tuition. The reason he was at the casino? According to classmates, he joined the Hatano organization. Nozomi stared. That's all? She confirmed. He said nothing for a long second, then eliminate him. He'd be tough, but leave no traces. She didn't even blink, said she'd already made arrangements, and the trap was already moving. While Ichijo walked through an alley, a tail locked onto him. First-class assassin, the kind who hadn't seen real work in months because things had gotten too peaceful. The boy following him actually felt relieved. Easy money, a high school kid. He even muttered that Ichijo had made the mistake of choosing the wrong enemy. Then he attacked. Ichijo didn't turn around. He just moved. One instant the blade was coming for his neck. The next he slams the assassin against the wall. He whispered for answers. Quiet now. Is this Nozomi's doing? The assassin choked out a yes. Ichijo threw him aside like trash. The assassin ran. Ichijo stood there in the empty alley and looked toward the special zone of level 8. He could enter now, before the apocalypse even started. That had its ups and downs. The most dangerous period for him was right now, before everything collapsed. Zone levels were climbing slowly. If he played it safe, he'd survive. But survival wasn't the goal. He had to close the gap between him and Nozomi. No matter how high the zone level, he'd challenge it. That was the fastest way. But what mattered most right now was grabbing underworld resources. Equal power, equal financial strength. Koyanaga's birthday celebration was in 2 days. That's where he'd seize control. He needed more crystal stones before then, more poison, and to suppress that thing, the one even he wasn't sure about, he'd need massive amounts of zombie virus. For now it seemed on his side, but he couldn't relax. All the organization members were moving at their posts. Their fates were shifting little by little. And Ichijo, the one holding the wheel, the one controlling that fate, looked at his own hands and thought, I need to become stronger. The moment the lab doors hissed open, Etsuko was already waiting. She'd finished her experiment, barely standing, dark circles under her eyes like she hadn't slept in days, and held up a test tube like it was her newborn child. A portion with sufficient purity, she announced to absolutely no one, since Mineta was passed out cold. Then she woke him up. Mineta blinked into consciousness, confused and grumpy, asking what the hell was wrong with her. She just said come here for a second, and that's when things got messy. A few minutes later the lift opened and Ichijo walked in. Mineta attacked him instantly. No warning, no hesitation, just pure speed. But Ichijo dodged like he'd seen it coming from 3 blocks away. He thought Mineta's fast, but fast wasn't enough. Within a blink, Mineta closed the gap again, and within the same breath, Ichijo flipped him onto the floor like a sack of rice. Mineta lay there pounding his fist and screaming, I give up like a toddler throwing a tantrum. Etsuko walked over, looked down and muttered one hit. She said the potion's effect should have been sufficient, but clearly it was useless if the user was too weak. Mineta whined that Big Brother is just too strong. She checked the data. Speed increased by 100%. Nothing else changed. So this portion only affected speed. Ichijo stood up and told them using potions while he was away was dangerously stupid. Mineta shrugged it off, said it was fine since she could catalog everything. Then Ichijo dropped the bomb. By the way, what's with that hairstyle? She froze. Mineta jumped in defending her, saying Big Brother wouldn't understand. Researchers must never forget to keep a fresh mindset every day. Ichijo just stared and told them to get to the main topic. The results were clear. The portion was almost complete, but 10% was the limit for numerical increases. Ichijo ran the math in his head. 100% was the limit value for beginner crystal stones. Zone levels had been rising, but even the highest was only level 10. Intermediate stones? Those required zones level 15 and above. His research speed had already caught up to his zone conquest. He needed to hurry. She said that wasn't his fault. He asked if she could make more potions. She said yes, she'd memorize the process and would have them ready by evening. Ichijo told Mineta to call Hatano now. Mineta instantly said got it. 2 hours later, Hatano arrived at the lab. While Ichijo talked business, Etsuka pulled Mineta aside and asked if he and Ichijo were classmates. She wanted to know, was he always this amazing? Mineta admitted he still didn't understand what was going on. The Ichijo he knew was a wimp getting bullied by him until just a few days ago. Then suddenly strong, calm, like a different person. In a few days he went from getting his ass kicked to becoming their big brother. Etsuka thought about the time leap. Ichijo hadn't told anyone else. That power came from his previous life, all that future knowledge packed into one person. She wondered what his purpose really was. Meanwhile, Ichijo was already locking in with Hatano. Tonight was Koyanaga's birthday celebration. Perfect chance. All the subordinates would be gathered. Hatano asked if he was really going through with it. Ichijo said yeah, he'd definitely take Koyanaga's forces, no matter what. Hatano warned him that Koyanaga was on a different level from everyone else. Maybe they should proceed step by step. Ichijo said there was no time. He was executing tonight with the potions. There was a chance of winning. That was enough. Hatano nodded. If Big Brother said so, he'd follow orders. Ichijo told him, Etsuka would make additional portions matching the number of members he brought. Choose guys who could actually fight. Tonight was the shutdown. He had business after this, so he'd rejoin them tonight. Cut to Koyanaga. Gardening, calm, deadly. He mentioned it had been quite noisy lately and asked his bodyguard if they'd investigated. The bodyguard confirmed a man named Hatano, low-ranking organization member, been absorbing other territories for the past few days, including the casino. Still intended to expand his power working. Koyanaga smiled at his flowers and said working hard to extend branches and get more sunlight wasn't wrong in itself, but some people set rules above. Extended branches get cut off when they go too far. Night fell. The party began. A luxury car pulled up. One of the guards bowed and told the passenger to please come in. The party would begin shortly. The man stepped out and snapped at the valet. If you scratch the car, you won't get off easy. Park it properly. From a nearby building, Hatano watched through binoculars. Hiraguri stood next to him, getting impatient. He asked what was going on. Ichijo still hadn't come. Don't tell him the kid ran away at the last minute. Hatano said, calm down. Wait a little longer. Hiraguri pressed. How long? More and more people kept arriving. They were losing their advantage. Why? Hatano's thoughts spiraled. What are you doing? You said today was important. Don't tell me you set me up. Then he caught himself. No, Ichijo wasn't that kind of person. If he wanted them dead, they'd already be dead. Another member walked up and said they could still turn back now. How were they supposed to go after Koyanaga with this few people? Hatano snapped. Just shut up. You think they could safely turn back now? Hiraguri pulled him aside. told him straight he was being too greedy. Was that Ichijo's influence? Hatano said he was perfectly calm. Hiragori admitted the kid was strong. Following him wasn't wrong. But this time was different. The opponent was Koyanaga. Their forces were concentrated tonight, and most importantly, that kid hadn't shown up yet. He thought they should apologize to Koyanaga. Hatano's face didn't move. Hiragori pulled out the potion Ichijo gave them, said if this liquid was as amazing as they claimed, giving it should get them forgiven. Then he asked, which side are you on? Of course, just a suggestion. You're the boss. Whichever you choose, I'll follow. Back at the party hotel, a guard announced all participants had gathered. Time to clean up and close the doors. Then he stopped. Noticed something. Ichijo stood on top of a nearby building, binoculars pressed to his eyes, watching everything. Inside, Hatano walked in. Koyanaga's bodyguard leaned over and whispered the news. Koyanaga didn't even look up at first. Then Hatano was right in front of him. Koyanaga smiled coldly, said, well, if it isn't the famous big brother. I don't think I sent an invitation. Hatano didn't flinch, said don't say that. They came to celebrate after all. Koyanaga's eyes sharpened, said he didn't look like he came to celebrate. Seriously, he might be old, but he hadn't weakened yet. Instantly, Koyanaga's men surrounded Hatano's team. Hatano raised a hand, told everyone to calm down. Let's talk first, shall we? The room went silent, knives under tables, hands on triggers. The room was thick with tension. Hatani didn't even flinch as his men tightened the circle around Hatano. Chairman's bodyguard lit his cigar. Chairman said it looked like Hatano came with proper preparations, taking over several of his territories in just a few days. He wanted to know what the purpose was. Tell him. Hatano waved the smoke away like it was nothing. Said he didn't have time, so he'd be brief. That little bit of territory wasn't nearly enough. His target was that chair, and with that shout, he threw a punch straight at Koyanaga's face. The bodyguard stopped it cold. Koyanaga admitted he knew Hatano came to interfere, but he didn't expect him to be this reckless. He'd clearly underestimated the kid. Then his expression shifted, because the very next moment, Hatano dropped his bodyguard to the floor. Hatano yelled, "You guys do it." Every single one of his gang members screamed, "Yeah," and launched at Koyanaga's men like starving wolves. Koyanaga watched it all and said, "Not bad, better than I imagined." Then he smiled, said if Hatano thought he could win with that level of force, he was dead wrong. The bodyguard's hand shot out and grabbed Hatano's face, slammed him into the ground like a hammer hitting concrete. But Hatano didn't stay down. He grabbed the bodyguard's wrist, wrapped his legs around the guy's arm and pinned him. The bodyguard felt that grip and actually started trembling. What power, he thought. Then he punched Hatano straight in the ribs. Both of them jumped back at the same time. Koyanaga gave the order coldly, "Finish them before the party starts." The bodyguard nodded and said they seemed somewhat skilled, but it was only a few people. He'd end it quickly. Koyanaga watched and thought, as expected of the strongest bodyguard. Even with potions, this was barely the level where Hatano could fight properly. These guys were on a different level from anyone he'd faced before, and the others were struggling too. Once the potion wore off, there was zero chance of winning. But Hatano didn't have time to think about that. This was a short, decisive battle. The bodyguard lunged. Hatano dodged at the last possible second and landed a punch right on the guy's face. It connected, but the bodyguard didn't go down. He just absorbed it and threw an elbow straight into Hatano's back. Then he grabbed Hatano and hurled him across the room. Hatano crashed into a table and couldn't believe it. Can't make a dent at all. He looked around at his men. They were getting slaughtered, completely at a disadvantage. The doubt crept in. Did I make the wrong choice? Should he have apologized and begged for forgiveness like Hiraguri said? Maybe they'd let him go if he handed over the potion. Koyanaga snapped, "Finish this quickly." The bodyguard said yes, then looked at Hatano and offered him a way out. If he had talent, if he admitted his mistake, he could put in a good word with the boss. Hatano's mind flashed back. Every single day since meeting that guy had been life or death. But the world had definitely changed. He thanked the bodyguard for his concern, then said he was sick of the life of mugging kids for pocket change. "You bow your head now," he said. "I'll make you my subordinate and look after you." The bodyguard shouted, "That's unfortunate," and said Hatano would have to die. Koyanaga sat there smugly and pulled out a potion. He thought about how just one portion had narrowed the ability gap this much. If he drank one more, maybe he could actually run. Glass shattered. Ichijo crashed through the window and blocked the bodyguard's punch like it was nothing. Just stood there, hand up, fist stopped midair. He said, "Sorry, big brother. I'm late." The bodyguard's eyes went wide. He stammered, "It's you. What is your power?" "It won't budge." Ichijo threw one punch, just one, and the bodyguard flew across the room. Ichijo turned to Hatano and told him if he drank that second potion, he wouldn't be able to withstand the side effects. He'd die. Hatano admitted he thought if he drank it, he might win. Then reality hit him like a truck. "Wait," Hatano thought. "How do you know I was about to drink the second one?" "Don't tell me." From the beginning, everything went according to plan. Hatano realized it all at once. He was being tested. From the start, he was nothing but a pawn, just randomly chosen. He remembered every conversation with Ichijo, every single one. The test was whether he'd betray Ichijo and hand over the potion to Koyanaga. For Hatano, it was a gamble of which side to choose, and if he had sided with Koyanaga, he would have died. No question. He looked at Ichijo and said he got the right answer again. Must be lucky. Then he promised, "Don't worry, I'll show through my actions that I'm a trustworthy comrade." Ichijo smirked and said he liked smart people. Then he told Hatano to give him orders. "Big brother." Koyanaga screamed at his bodyguard, "What are you doing? No matter how you look at it, he's just a kid." The bodyguard admitted he let his guard down because of Ichijo's appearance. Hatano stepped into his role as the big brother and shouted at Koyanaga to prepare himself. "You old geezer, I'll definitely kill you here." Koyanaga's face twisted with rage. He gave his final order to the bodyguard, "Kill every last one of them." The bald guy couldn't believe his eyes. He asked what was up with that kid. Was he one of Hatano's subordinates? His buddy replied that it looked like he just sent someone flying with one hand. One hand. Then he turned and asked Hiraguri if that guy was seriously a student. Before anyone could answer, Hiraguri's hands got caught, and the reply came cold. "It's too early to be surprised. The fun's just beginning." Then he twisted the man's wrist and sent him flying too. Kawazi looked at Ichijo and said he never thought the day would come when he'd have to fire up against a high school student. Ichijo didn't even blink, said it was also the day a high school student would fire back. Kawazi screamed, "You brat, don't underestimate me," and threw a full-force swinging punch. Ichijo ducked backwards instantly, landed an attack mid-motion. Kawazi tried to grab his head. Ichijo backflipped, landed a second hit, and touched down like nothing happened. Kawazi charged again, screaming, still throwing punches, still missing everything. Hatano watched from the side and realized Ichijo was toying with an opponent he himself couldn't beat even with the potion's power. Unfathomable strength. Behind them, people started whispering, just who was Hatano? Looking at this, the story about taking over Koyanaga's territory might actually be true. Another voice said Kawazi was struggling against a student. The disbelief was everywhere. Koyanaga snapped. He shouted at them to just watch quietly. The whole room went silent. He stepped forward and said after 40 years he'd finally reached this point to be bitten by upstarts. Rats. Ichijo kept going with his opponent like nothing else mattered. Koyanaga's thoughts turned dark. Even if he won now, his reputation would be completely ruined. The organization's strongest man couldn't even defeat a kid. He gave Kawazi one more minute. Finish it quickly. Kawazi was shocked. He attacked again, blocked again. He stared at Ichijo and realized the kid was a monster. After all this, Ichijo hadn't changed expression once. Not once. Kawazi was already at his limit. Forget finishing him in 1 minute. He couldn't even touch him. Ichijo raised his leg high. Both their legs went up. Ichijo caught Kawazi's kick cold. Kawazi thought he won't budge. Can I even win in a pure spell? Ichijo said, full of openings. Then he jumped into the air, twisted his body around and kicked straight into Kawazi's abdomen. Kawazi flew through the hallway, banged straight into a table, didn't move again. Koyanaga looked at Ichijo and asked what happened. Someone replied, "He's dead." Koyanaga said, "Impossible. Was he really a high school student? He killed the organization's strongest. In just one hit." Ichijo stood there calmly, didn't even breathe hard. Koyanaga lost it. He screamed at everyone not to just stand around attack. Kill that brat and he'd make them Kawazi's successor. All his men rushed Ichijo at once, shouting, "He's just one kid. Let's go." Ichijo didn't move an inch. He pushed a dagger into the first man's shoulder. The others kept coming. He got fired up. In a single go, he hit 6 men at their vital points, pulled them off to death. Koyanaga watched and thought, this physical ability isn't human. Then he held up a hand and said, "Stop. Let's talk this out." His men were all dead. He screamed, "I said stop," and reached for a pistol in his coat. A knife struck his hand before he could pull it out. From across the room, Ichijo's throw, Koyanaga spat blood. His eyes went glassy. He thought, no way, I'm being fucked up by a high school student. Then he died. A fat guy in the audience said seriously, "Koyanaga's dead?" Another man said, defeated by a few low-ranking guys. Hatano stood in shock. He really did it, all by himself. Koyanaga. Ichijo turned to him and said, "Big brother." Hatano snapped back. "Ah, yeah." Then he started shouting to the whole room. He had something to tell them all. As the announcement began, Hatano's thoughts ran wild. In less than a week, Ichijo had dragged down the old folks who'd held this land as their stronghold for decades. That guy shattered every bit of common sense Hatano had ever known. Hatano stood at the top and addressed the crowd. As they could see, Koyanaga was dead. He said they understood why he'd gone this far to eliminate him. Then he reintroduced himself. "I am Hatano Toshiki. Until recently, I was living by mugging kids." He thought about Ichijo. "You really kept your promise." Then he looked at the whole room and said, "But from today, I am your boss." The very next day, a construction worker screamed at his crew to hurry if they were late. Nozomi would finish them. Everyone started moving faster, sweat dripping, hammers swinging. But then their foreman noticed someone approaching and asked what the hell they wanted. A construction worker tried to stop the newcomers, demanding to know which group they were from. One of the thugs just said shut up and stay quiet like it was the most natural thing in the world. The gang leader stepped to the front and asked for a word. The construction foreman said anyone not involved needed to leave immediately. They absolutely could not delay the construction schedule. The gang leader laughed and said delaying the schedule was no big deal. Now pay up the territory fee. A call was made instantly to Nozomi. He said come in from inside his room. His bodyguard entered and reported trouble at the financial center construction site. Nozomi asked what happened, panic already creeping into his voice. The bodyguard explained that several people had barged in that morning demanding territory fees, beat up every single worker. They later found out it was Koyanaga's subordinates doing it. Nozomi exploded. He burst out shouting, "Damn it, had that old fool lost his mind? They were paying the money properly. Tell him to call Koyanaga immediately and demand to know what he was thinking." But the bodyguard said they'd been trying to contact him since morning and couldn't get through. Surprisingly for that old fossil. The bodyguard added that Koyanaga's people were asking for Nozomi specifically. It didn't seem to be about money. Nozomi stood up instantly and pushed past his bodyguard. He said, "Let's go see the site." The bodyguard warned him that the target was him. Shouldn't they ask the president for help? Nozomi shut that down hard. He said if they relied on others for this level of trouble, they would never surpass anyone. Later, Nozomi arrived with his convoy, bodyguards with umbrellas the whole show. He stepped out with his team as the gang leader stood right in front of him, smirking, thanking him for coming. Quite a large group, very cautious. Nozomi told him to shut up and asked what Koyanaga's demands were. The gang leader threw his cigarette on the ground and said, "Just so you know, Koyanaga isn't our boss anymore." One of Nozomi's men started to step forward. Nozomi stopped him cold. "Calm down." From behind him the boss walked out. Nozomi's eyes went wide. He recognized that guy. It was Hatano. Hatano smiled and said, "It's been a while, Nozomi." Nozomi's thoughts raced. Hatano, the man from the casino. This guy seized Koyanaga's position in just a few days, which meant that kid too. From behind Hatano, holding an umbrella for him, came Ichijo, staring right at Nozomi. Nozomi thought just as I thought, but the construction deadline was approaching. He didn't have time to deal with this guy. He asked Hatano if it wasn't about money, what did he come for? Hatano said he seemed pressed for time, so he'd be direct. "I am after the gold you have." Nozomi's shock grew wider. He asked, "So you were the one collecting all that gold?" Hatano said that was right, but it still wasn't enough. Nozomi asked what he was planning to do with all that gold. Hatano scratched his neck and said just a hobby. Then he pivoted. "More importantly, isn't the construction schedule more important to you?" He said Nozomi wanted to prove his abilities with this project, right? If it were him, he'd quickly pay up and prioritize construction. Nozomi said Hatano had done quite a bit of research. Hatano said of course this wasn't a game. Nozomi replied, "I see." Then asked if Hatano knew how much gold he had too, and the price. Hatano's face went dead serious. He said, "Hey, that's not it. Listen carefully. I'm telling you to hand over the gold." Silence. Nozomi broke it by calling him crazy. Even though they were making concessions, did Hatano really think fresh scum like him could interfere? Get lost. Hatano didn't flinch. He said Nozomi wasn't the only one who knew the future value of this land. True, they couldn't do anything to him directly, but delaying the construction schedule was easy for them. If this project didn't finish on time, there would be tremendous losses, right? Nozomi's blood ran cold. How do you know that? The regional development plan should only be known to a select few insiders. Just who was this guy? Hatano stepped closer and asked what was wrong. Hit the mark and lost for words? Nozomi called his method dirty, truly fitting for society's trash. Hatano's expression darkened. "What did you say?" Nozomi shouted that a savage who could only rely on violence was acting all high and mighty, playing negotiation games. "Kill them all," he ordered his men. Both sides clashed head-on. From Nozomi's team, his bodyguard lunged straight at Hatano. Ichijo blocked the punch with just one hand. With the other, he grabbed the bodyguard's neck and lifted him into the air. Gave him that stare, like nobody else in the room mattered. The bodyguard gasped and thought incredible strength. He stayed lifted the whole time. Hatano walked up to Nozomi and grabbed his tie. He said true, he was a savage, but he climbed this far risking his life. What about you? You were just born into a good family. A damn brat acting superior using daddy's authority. The bodyguard broke free from Ichijo's grip and grabbed his hand. Within an instant, Ichijo caught his next punch, then delivered a fist straight to his face. The bodyguard grabbed Ichijo from behind and lifted him up, trying to throw him. But something strange happened in that split second. Ichijo balanced himself mid-air and made the bodyguard fall face first into the ground. Someone shouted Managwa was defeated. Nozomi's best bodyguard, gone. After his bodyguard lay dead on the road, Nozomi screamed at him to wake up. "Hey, what's wrong, Managwa? Get it together." But Ichijo walked up and said it was useless to call him. He was completely unconscious. Nozomi couldn't believe it. Managwa, proficient in all martial arts, defeated just like that. "This useless fool," he burst out. But Ichijo just stared and said, "Your bodyguard's gone. So what will you do now?" Nozomi's mind raced. This was clearly disadvantageous for them. Ichijo grinned and said, "Shall I guess what you're thinking? You're planning to abandon your comrades and run, right?" Nozomi felt real fear for the first time. Just who are you to see through his thoughts like that? What an annoying guy. Nozomi folded instantly. He said, "Well, calm down. I'll give you whatever you want." Desperately, he added that Hatano wanted money, right? If they accepted his conditions, he'd prepare it. But he pointed at Ichijo and said that guy had been an eyesore since the casino incident. He told Hatano, "If you have any conditions, just say it. My family can handle anything." His plan was simple. First, make these two turn against each other. If it was just Hatano alone, he'd be easier to eliminate. There was no way anyone could resist such a sweet temptation. Ichijo stepped closer. He said just because Nozomi's family had some money, he thought he could manipulate people as he pleased. "Just hearing your voice makes me sick." Nozomi trembled as Ichijo approached, making desperate calls for someone to stop him. "What are you planning to do?" "Hey, I don't know. Stop him quickly. Later, Ichijo and Hatano left the place in a car. Hatano asked if it was okay to leave Nozomi back there. Ichijo said yeah, he wouldn't die. Nozomi lay unconscious at the construction site, heavily wounded, beaten up. Ichijo thought, I won't let him die so easily. At a red light, Hatano asked if he thought the Nozomi family would quietly hand over the money. Ichijo said of course, the project was more important to him. Hatano asked, you understand him well? Ichijo just said, well, yeah. How's that matter? Hatano switched topics. If it was about the warehouse, he'd found a big one in the countryside as instructed. He was sending the location for now. Then he handed Ichijo a card. Ichijo asked what it was. Hatano replied, the organization's funds. You should hold on to them. Ichijo asked how much was there. As the light turned green and the car moved forward, Hatano said the organization's total assets were about $40 million, but this card only had $10 million. The rest would take some effort to liquidate. Ichijo looked at the card and started planning. Time to start stockpiling supplies. He needed to expand his inventory, stuck at level 3 with the beginner crystal stones he'd collected so far. He could reach level 10. Beyond that, he'd need to pay money and intermediate crystal stones. A level 3 inventory was only the size of a carry bag. He couldn't even store the money he'd collected. Level 10 had an area of 7 cubic meters, about the size of a phone booth. He could store a decent amount of resources there. He told Hatano to stop the car. Hatano pulled over instantly and asked where he was going. Should he help? Ichijo said no, he was just wandering around a bit, so it was fine. Do as you like depending on the situation. Hatano asked about the organization's guys. Ichijo said recovering. Nozomi's gold was top priority. Make sure to get it in physical form and put it in that warehouse. Hatano asked if he should wait. Ichijo said he'd contact him if he needed anything. Then he stepped out. The car drove off. Ichijo noticed something, or rather someone. Right there beside him was Etsuka. He asked her what she was doing in a place like this. Then he looked in front of him and thought, is that Corazon? Corazon from forensics. Etsuka was constituted with Corazon. Looks like they had a meeting arranged. Ichijo thought about Etsuka. The next day, hospital. Nozomi woke up shouting, damn, this is the first time I felt such humiliation. Surrounded by his friends, the girl said so their plan was discovered by that Hatano from the casino, and he was using it to threaten them to hand over money? His bodyguard bandaged all over his head, said the troublesome one was that student. His movements weren't ordinary. Another strange thing was that guy knew his name too. He even called it out. Another girl said people in positions being known by name wasn't strange. You're overthinking it. Nozomi shook his head. He agreed with Manhwa. From the first time they met, that guy had been hostile towards him, and most importantly, he knew the inside details of their project. Those guys who took over Koyanaga's forces were definitely troublesome. To avoid delaying the construction schedule, they'd hand over the money. But he made it clear, don't protest. We're just handing it over temporarily. We'll definitely get it back eventually. I'll take back their lives along with the money. Every last bit. We now cut to a hotel room. Kurozano and Etsuka were having a meeting. She placed a file in front of him and said here were the materials he wanted. He thanked her for going through the trouble. Etsuka made it clear she wasn't doing it for free. Thanks to him being absent without notice for a week, her workload had doubled and it was hell. He apologized for the inconvenience. She said she was resigning, just use her salary to cover her research materials. That was enough for her. Kurozano leaned back and said he wasn't interested in such petty money. You're beautiful, so just stay by my side and do as I say. Then I'll return the materials. She asked what. He said it wasn't a bad deal, right? Her life as a forensic scientist would be secure too. Etsuka shot back that she couldn't agree to such methods. Please watch your words. I just want my materials returned. He said then give up. She stood up instantly, shouting that those were her materials. He didn't have the right to confiscate them. Kurozano smiled and said that was true, but how did she plan to prove it? Since he worked with professional and personal information, if he called this classified documents, she wouldn't be able to touch these materials anymore. You can't win against me, she screamed. Why are you harassing me like this? He said it would be troublesome if people knew he couldn't handle one intern. Did she really think he fell for her talent and wanted her as an assistant? Don't waste your mother's efforts. You should quietly do as you're told. Etsuka threw coffee in his face. She said, don't talk about my mother. Dead serious. Kurozano exploded. Even though he was making concessions, he raised his hand to slap her. Ichijo caught his wrist. She was shocked, asked why he was here. Ichijo said he understood the situation. Leave the rest to me. Kurozano thought. A high school student? What strength? He said he saw now. So this young man was the reason for her resignation. He told Ichijo not to say vulgar things. Ichijo cut him off. Enough smart talk. I'm taking her. How much do you want in exchange for those materials? Kurozano shook Ichijo's hand off, sat down, and smirked. A greenhorn playing hero. If you want to be embarrassed that badly, I'll let you. 10 million. Etsuka gasped. Others in the restaurant were shocked too. One of them said 10 million for a high school student. Another joked they'd break up with their girlfriend for 10 million too. There's no way a high school student could pay that. Ichijo stood there silent. Kurozano asked, how about it? If he couldn't pay, get lost. Don't butt in when you can't do anything. Ichigo asked for the WhatsApp account number for the transfer. Kurozano showed his phone, still smirking, still acting tough. Try it if you can. If you can really pay, I'll even bow down on my knees. Etsuka told Ichigo that was enough. Let's go. One of the boys watching said young people these days were so competitive. He felt a bit sorry for him, but it felt like he brought it on himself. His friend asked what he was planning to do. Kurozano's phone pinged. Deposited 11 million yen. Deposit completed. Kurozano's blood ran cold. This brat, just who is he? Ichigo said he transferred it. The extra 1 million was for cleaning up the coffee Etsuka spilled. He didn't need to bow down, just apologize to Etsuka properly, and that would be fine. The others watching were blown away. 1 million for cleaning. Could he be some rich kid? Kurozano thought, when did Etsuka get such backing? To think he'd demand an apology from him. Ichigo asked what he was waiting for. Hurry up and apologize. Etsuka stood there with her arms crossed. Ichigo added, he wasn't planning to break his promise in front of all these witnesses, was he? Kurozano bowed, trembling, thinking damn it, I've been had. He apologized to Etsuka, said he was sorry, and handed her back the file. She was surprised but took it. Later, outside, they walked in silence. Ichigo asked if she had something to say. She looked like she wanted to talk. She exploded. Ah, I can't stand it. Why didn't you beat him up? You even gave him all that money. These materials were mine to begin with. The more I think about it, the more infuriating it gets. Ichijo said, so that's why she was angry. Don't worry, I won't let him use that money. At that very moment, Hatano received a text from Ichijo. Etsuka apologized for going to see Kurozano without saying anything. She just wanted to recover her research results. Ichijo said, yeah, he happened to spot her earlier and followed. So it worked out well. From now on, take Manita and the others with her in case of emergencies. She said, got it. Then asked, why was he here? Ichijo said, he got caught in the rain during work earlier and came to buy a change of clothes. She said, I see, then I'll accompany you as an apology. They went to a luxurious store. Ichijo was trying on outfits. Ichuka helped him. From a little distance away, 2 girls watched. One said, hey Miki, isn't that Ichijo? Miki said, you're right. Why was he in such a high-end store? The person next to him was really pretty. Could it be sugar dating? Ichijo wore the outfit. Top notch. When they were leaving, Miki freaked out. It seemed different. Ichijo was paying for the clothes himself. They're all expensive, right? Let's follow them. Back to Kurozano. He'd left the restaurant and was walking through an alley, thinking, for him to be defeated by an intern and a high school student was a huge embarrassment, but being able to take the money was a blessing in disguise. That damn brat seemed rich. He'd squeeze him again. He was moving forward, cracking open a can when Hatano stepped right in front of him. You're Kurozano. Kurozano said, so what? I'm in a bad mood, so get lost. Hatano smiled at him with his men behind him. Don't say that. I came to teach you how to use that 11 million yen. Inside the mall, Ichijo and Etsuka kept shopping. He noticed she was eyeing the skincare section and said so she was interested in this kind of thing. She replied that she was a girl. She couldn't be indifferent to skincare and makeup. Then Ichijo's phone buzzed. He showed her the screen. A video played. Hatano had recovered the money. 20 million yen, including Kurozano's assets, and there was Kurozano himself in the frame, all fucked up and beaten senseless. Etsuka gave Ichijo a thumbs up. Good job. Suddenly, Miki and her friend appeared. Ichijo, what a coincidence meeting you in a place like this. Ichijo asked if they needed something. Miki played the hurt card. Why did he suddenly become so cold? She thought there might be a misunderstanding. If she made him feel bad, she'd apologize. Can't you treat me like before? I'm sad. Ichijo ignored her completely, turned to Etsuka and asked, do you want that? Miki freaked out. Ignoring me, her friend whispered that he seemed like a different person. Even when Miki acted cute, it had no effect at all. Miki said he was just acting tough. Watch this. She came closer, asked what he was buying, offered to help him choose. Then she grabbed his hand, pressed her boob against it. You can't ignore this. Ichijo pushed her away. Don't put on such a bad act. It's disgusting. Miki's face fell. Disgusting? She screamed that he should be happy just because she was giving him attention. You're being ignorant for someone from the bottom. What's with that attitude? Then she looked at Etsuka and warned her. He was super poor. He probably spent all his money at the clothing store earlier. You're beautiful, so I'm warning you. Break up with this guy quickly. Her plan was simple. It's your fault for making me angry. I'll expose all your embarrassing history. The store staff noticed the commotion. One female employee said they were arguing and bothering other customers. Someone should stop them. A new girl was told it was her first day and a chance to make an impression. She thought, what an impression. They're just pushing troublesome work on me. Then she muttered that the students probably didn't have money to buy their products anyway. How annoying. She walked over and apologized, but asked them to refrain from raising their voices as it disturbed other customers. Miki snapped, this wasn't a store where poor people could shop. Put the products back and leave quickly. Ichijo handed a product to Etsuka. The staff thought, I thought you'd buy at least one thing, but you're just browsing. Ichijo looked at the sales staff. Give me everything in the store. She blinked, said we look forward to your next visit, then freaked out. Ah, what did you say? Miki and her friend went pale. Ichijo continued. He'd buy everything in the back room too. Calculate it. He'd pay by card. The staff held the card and asked, really? Everything? Ichijo said that's right. She said she'd check with the manager and started running. Ichijo asked, even for provocation, that was too much. He said he wasn't provoking anyone. Money would become worthless soon anyway. I should convert it into supplies. Miki jumped back in. Wait, are you crazy? Just because your pride was hurt a little? This is too much. Ichijo said, "It's none of your business." Mickey's friend whispered that apparently it wasn't a joke. Maybe he really was some rich kid. They should apologize now. She might still be forgiven. Mickey refused. Buying all the store's product is obviously a lie. I'll see this through to the end. The manager calculated everything and freaked out. All the products in the store? Another employee confirmed. Yes, and he wanted what was in the back room too. The manager said those products were already sold and couldn't be sold to other customers. 20 minutes later, the staff returned to Ichijo. "Thank you for waiting. Including items in the back room, the total number of products is 3,020. The manager says he'll give a 20% discount, so the total comes to 20 million yen. Please confirm and sign." Mickey and her friend heard 20 million and lost their minds. Ichijo signed instantly. "Deliver to that address." The staff bowed. "Understood. We'll deliver within 3 days." Mickey's friend begged. Mickey just got a little worked up, so please forgive her. "Come on, Mickey, apologize." Mickey switched back to cute mode, said she was sorry for saying terrible things. She was interested in him, so she got carried away. Ichijo didn't even look at her. "I have zero interest in you. Etsuka, let's go." Mickey took another hard hit. Ichijo walked out with Etsuka. The staff bowed and said, "We look forward to your next visit." Outside, Etsuka commented on the flashy shopping spree. "Is this good? Should I buy other supplies in advance too?" Ichijo said, "Yeah. When the apocalypse comes, you could buy a person with a single loaf of bread." She said, "Then let's continue shopping." Something hit Ichijo. He stopped cold, told Etsuka to go home first. She asked what was wrong. In front of Ichijo, a special zone, level 15. He told her today's shopping ends here. Ichijo made Etsuka go back first, then stepped into the level 15 zone alone. He slashed through everything. Blood and guts spread all over the floor. Level 15 zones didn't give him much trouble anymore. He laid down rows of zombie corpses as he walked, stood right in front of the safety door, crossed it. Level 15 special zone cleared. His phone rang instantly. He picked up. Hatano's voice came through. Finally got through. Nozomi's gold had arrived. 1 ton in total. What should they do? Ichijo told him to put it in the warehouse for now. He'd send a shopping list, go buy everything he could. Then he said he was hanging up since he had business. Hatano shouted, "Wait," but the call was already dead. Ichijo disappeared from his spot. A security guard checked if anyone was left inside the mall. Swung his flashlight around and thought, "That's strange. I thought someone was there." Back at his place, Hatano stared at the shopping list Ichijo had sent. "This isn't just a shopping list. Are you planning to buy up this entire city?" Ichijo left them all thinking the money and supplies problem was settled. Now he needed precious stones. He looked ahead. A new zone. The frequency of zone appearances was increasing because the apocalypse was getting closer. "Let's go." 1 day remaining. Inside the lab, Etsuka asked if anyone had seen Ichijo recently. Mineta said, "Big brother?" No, hadn't seen him for about half a month. But then again, Big brother also went somewhere without telling them. Etsuka thought she hadn't seen him once since that shopping trip. Wondered if something happened. If what he said before was true, the apocalypse should arrive tonight. Where did he go at such an important time? Ichijo walked into the lab. It's been a while. She was surprised. Even Mineta jumped. Both of them said his name at the same time. Ichijo told them they were going out, so get ready. They were confused, but they followed. Hatano had been waiting. He asked what Ichigo had asked for. Ichigo arrived and Mineta asked, "Big bro, why are we here?" Hatano said, "You finally came." Everyone got out of the car. Hatano told Ichigo he'd gone around several cities and found everything together. "Please check it." The doors opened. Ichigo and Mineta were left in despair. They looked around and asked, "What the hell is this? A warehouse? Then a PC." Ichigo looked at the screen and said everything on the list was here. "It's all here." Hatano said no, this was half of it. The rest was in a similar warehouse next door. He'd practically emptied 4 large supermarkets. Water, food, gasoline generators, daily necessities, everything. Enough for several people to live their entire lives. Hatano asked how Ichigo was going to preserve all the supplies. Then, "Where's the gold?" Ichigo pointed. "At the very back." He told everyone to come with him. His thoughts ran. These past few days he'd been conquering zones day and night, cleared zones up to level 50, collected enough crystal stones to expand his inventory to level 40. Once he put all the supplies here into inventory, preparations for the apocalypse would be complete. He stood next to a box and said, "Watch." He dropped the box. All the gold spilled onto the floor. He took out a crystal in his hand, released its energy. The gold melted into the air and vanished. Mineta shouted, "Hey, the gold is disappearing." More crystals. More gold disappearing. The system confirmed it. Gold consumption, 1 ton. Inventory area, 350 cubic meters. Level 40. About the size of 2 basketball courts. Mineta was stunned. Hatano asked what was happening. Mineta whispered, "Is it magic?" Ichijo put a finger to his lips. "Watch quietly." He moved to another direction. "I'll answer your questions when this is over." He picked up a box, put it in his inventory. "Here we go." The box vanished mid-air. Mineta said the cardboard box disappeared. Ichijo turned to face them. "There's no time left. Whatever you believe about what I'm about to say is up to you. Tonight, At midnight, the apocalypse will arrive in this world. Zombie-filled special zones would appear. Zombies would attack humans. Order would collapse. Humanity would have no choice but to fight on their own. What they saw earlier was his personal supply storage, an inventory. When the apocalypse came, they would be able to have one too. Inventory size was determined by level and greatly affected whether you could survive. One of the materials needed for inventory expansion was gold. That's why I had you collect it. Half a day remained until the apocalypse arrived. Prepare yourselves by then. Mineta started to panic. This story is too crazy. But suddenly the apocalypse. Hatano put a hand on his shoulder and told him to calm down. Ichijo said that's why he said whether they believed it or not was up to them. I won't let those who help me suffer losses. I'll give you enough supplies to survive the early apocalypse. Take them. Hatano said, got it. Then he opened the door and loaded everything into a truck. Everything's loaded. Ichijo said, yeah, hurry home and prepare. Hatano was about to leave, then stopped. He said their relationship was short, but he believed Ichijo's story. He was grateful. If there was anything he could help with, call him anytime. Ichijo said, yeah, survive. He left. Ichijo and Atsuka watched him go. Ichijo said, let's go. There are still things to do. Then he looked at her. You look like you have something to say, she said about the inventory. He hid it from her. Why didn't he trust her? And also, Ichijo cut her off. You want to ask why I pushed away Mineta and the others who cooperated with us like that, right? She said with all these supplies, if the apocalypse really came, wouldn't it be safer if they were all together? Ichijo's voice went cold. In the apocalyptic world, humans can be more terrifying than zombies. I've seen it with my own eyes. When people experiencing the apocalypse for the first time got excessive resources, it backfired. He wanted her to understand this. People weren't born selfish. Try to imagine the world others had lived in. How would she endure the cruel events that would happen daily, many times worse than this? With that kind of thinking, if she didn't have resolve, this is as far as we go. She went silent for a moment. Ichijo asked, could you hesitate a little longer? She said, don't underestimate my resolve. Come on, let's go. We don't have time, right? She still had things she wanted to do too. Ichijo stood in front of the warehouse. She went inside and changed into an outfit. Ichijo asked, looks like you're prepared. She said, this is my kind of resolve. She looked damn hot. She said, you're still bothered by what I said earlier, aren't you? Ichijo said, 1 minute left. Say a proper goodbye to this world. This is the last time you'll breathe air that doesn't smell of blood. 10 seconds remaining. Mineta and Hatano at their houses were counting the time back too. 10, 5, 3, 2, 1. The apocalypse arrived, and the world started to turn red. The apocalypse hit like a freight train. A man raced through the streets screaming for someone to help him, zombies right on his tail. He tripped, fell hard, and looked behind him at the nightmare closing in. He begged them not to come near, asked what they wanted. Money? He'd give them as much as they wanted. He was still holding a birthday cake, a present for someone who'd never get it. He screamed, stop it. They didn't stop. He got bitten, torn apart, blood flowing everywhere. The cake smashed on the pavement. Then the news broke. May 25th, around midnight, mysterious pillars of light had appeared around the world, followed by a large number. According to investigations, these murderers have already ceased vital activities, moving corpses. In other words, zombies. Itsuka watched the news on her phone. The reporter continued. Incidentally, living beasts bitten by zombies also became zombies. Please refrain from going outside for safety. They were doing their utmost to investigate the cause. Please rest assured. Itsuka whispered. What Ichijo said was really true. She scrolled through the comments. Everyone was talking about something that appeared like a container in front of them. Small, fit only a cup of noodles, and it could be upgraded. Ichijo told her he'd explain later. She didn't need to look. He had other things to do now. She said, got it. He said, no. Open your inventory by concentrating in your mind. The inventory popped up. She said, this is my inventory. Ichijo said first, use these crystal stones to raise her level to level 10 for the inventory. He handed over a box of crystals. She used them instantly. The inventory upgraded to level 10. She said she raised it. What's next? Ichijo sat on a bike and told her to get on. She was confused but followed orders. Asked where they were going. He raced through the road and said special zones. The information they had, nobody else knew it. What was the point if they didn't get there first? The old common sense would crumble. Completely different rules would be born. From now on they'd build their position through their own power. Zone conquest was the shortest route to that. Ichijo thought in this life, I'll achieve the Grand Slam faster than anyone else. He said it's almost here. A red light passed. Right about there. We're going into that. She asked, we're charging straight? He said, hold on tight. They entered the zone. Ichijo said we've arrived. Itsuka opened her eyes and saw the environment. The town's atmosphere was completely different from before. Ichijo explained that was because they'd entered a special zone, an area covered by that red light they saw earlier. It looked like the same place as usual, but it was a different world from the outside. Someone shouted, what's going on? Ichijo said, let's go. It seemed like there were others here too. She'd understand bit by bit as they moved forward. They spotted a group of people. One of them said he'd been on the bus until now, but when the red light suddenly appeared, he got off. A bodybuilder said this is sci-fi. A girl looked back and said it looked like there were others too. The bodybuilder asked, students, you weren't passengers on the bus, right? The girl said that's right. A boy spotted Ichijo and said his name. Ichijo recognized them. Those guys are from our class. The boy shouted, hey, over here. The bodybuilder said that didn't matter. More importantly, could someone explain this situation? The boy asked if this could be what they were talking about on the news earlier. The girl asked, news? What? What was the content? After discussing for a bit, they concluded. So they entered that red light and for now they were trapped on this mountain. Is that it? Introductions went around. The bodybuilder said he was Kana, a student. He took last night's bus to paint on the mountain. The girl introduced herself as Joseph Kaba, a trainer. The boy from Ichijo's class was Akira. The other one was Goda. They were on the bus to evacuate, and that bus driver was a zombie. Ichijo introduced himself. Itsuka said her name and added she was a forensic scientist. The bodybuilder scoffed. Just old men and kids. Can't be helped. I'll take command. He told the old man to go check if the bus ran. Ichijo spotted something. Look, a zombie. The zombie rushed and attacked the bus driver. Everyone shouted, hey, something jumped out. The zombie pinned the bus driver to the floor. Right as it was about to kill him, the bodybuilder punched its back. Take this. The zombie dropped dead. The bodybuilder stepped back and asked, is it dead? That was self-defense, right? You saw it, didn't you? Akira said that was probably the zombie they were talking about on the news. It was already dead from the start. They were surprised. The zombie stood up again. Glowing red eyes. Broken neck now healed. The bodybuilder screamed, no way. Its broken neck healed. Damn it, that's disgusting. What the hell is it? He jumped on the zombie to attack. A knife struck straight into the zombie's head, killed it instantly. Everyone froze. Ichijo entered the frame. The bodybuilder looked at him and thought, that guy, he had a knife, took down a zombie in an instant. Ichijo said the weak point was the head. He pulled out his dagger and told them, if you don't want to die, hurry up and find weapons. The whole team piled inside the bus, searching for anything useful. The bodybuilder couldn't believe it. What was with this bus? There wasn't even a single weapon. The driver said there should be an emergency kit, but it was gone. Look more carefully. Then the bodybuilder turned to Ichijo and asked for a word. He noticed how everyone had gone all submissive the moment they found out the kid had a knife. The boy from Ichijo's class called out to the bodybuilder. When asked what, the boy explained, the reason Ichijo had a knife was probably to put on airs. He'd recently joined some delinquent group and gotten cocky, but used to be a bullied kid. The bodybuilder nodded. I see. So that's how it is. He asked if the bus looked like it would run. The driver said no, it was out of gas. Ichijo stood right beside the driver. The bodybuilder suggested a strategy meeting. Let's gather outside for now. The schoolboy's friend asked him what he told the bodybuilder about Ichijo. The boy smirked. Isn't it obvious? Kabe is the strongest one here right now. If we get on his good side, we can get revenge on Ichijo for what happened before. They gathered outside. The driver laid out the situation. 2 problems. Breakdown and out of gas. The breakdown could be fixed with repairs. The bodybuilder said so if they found gasoline, they could manage somehow. The driver confirmed there was a gas station in the nearby town. The bodybuilder decided to split into 2 groups. Bus repair support and gasoline search. The boy's hand shot up. He said they'd stay and help with the repairs, thinking there was no way they'd do something dangerous like going outside. The bodybuilder pointed at Ichijo and Itsuka. Then you two go look for gasoline. Itsuka protested, just us? Don't decide on your own. The bodybuilder said they were the only ones with weapons, so it was natural. If you don't like it, hand over the weapons. The trainer girl raised her hand. She said she'd go with them too. She ran regularly, so she knew the roads around here well. The bodybuilder agreed and thought to himself, this place seems safe, and if something happened, they could escape to the bus. Ichijo turned around. Let's go. The bodybuilder told them to be careful. The 3 of them started moving through the town. Itsuka thanked the trainer for coming with them. They could proceed smoothly. The trainer replied that at times like this, people needed to help each other. Ichijo stopped. They're coming. The trainer freaked out. Zombies? A lot of them? Ichijo and Itsuka stood there speechless as a horde of zombies came into view. Ichijo handed a knife to the trainer. Use this, she asked. You're giving it to me? Ichijo snapped. Don't just stand there. Hurry up and grab it and get ready. She took the knife and asked, but what about you? She thought. Where did he get that knife from just now? Ichijo had pulled it out of thin air. The inventory. He got ready to fight, instructed everyone. Eyes, temples, and neck. Those were their weak points. He told them to watch. A zombie attacked him. Ichijo explained, these guys' movements were relatively simple. Watch for the right moment, take an advantageous position for attack. He grabbed the zombie's head, stabbed the knife straight into its neck. Like this. The zombie died instantly. Early zombies can be defeated easily like this. Itsuka said, got it. The trainer thought, where is the easy part? Ichijo shouted, watch out. The zombies charged straight at the 2 girls. They got ready to fight. Itsuka got pinned to the ground instantly by a zombie. Terror in her eyes. Ichijo's voice cut through. If you get bitten, you'll get infected. You'll become a zombie. If you hesitate any longer, you'll be eaten. Itsuka looked at the zombie attacking her and forced her mind to calm down. These aren't human. Aim for the weak points. She sliced the zombie's eyes, then went for the next strike. The neck. Boom. The dagger sank into the zombie's neck. Blood poured out of its mouth onto Itsuka's face. The zombie dropped dead. She was shocked, frozen. Ichijo was slicing through zombies like they were nothing. Another one attacked him from behind, ready to bite, beheaded in the next moment. The trainer watched in disbelief. No way. He defeated them all by himself. Even a large number of zombies were like babies before him. He's like a war god. While Ichijo was busy turning zombies into a floor show, the 2 girls just stood there glued to his every move. The guy moved like water. No, like a damn chainsaw through butter. After he finished painting the street red, Ichijo muttered that he needed to drill more physical enhancement and zombie combat techniques into Itsuka. She begged him not to be too harsh. This was her first time after all. Ichijo shot back that zombies wouldn't accept excuses like that. Let's go. Itsuka lowered her voice and asked, in his previous life, status was determined by ability, right? Just how strong was he now? Ichijo didn't even blink. The strongest of humanity. She paused for a minute, then walked straight toward him without another word. Ichijo thought, if only that hadn't happened. Then he snapped out of it and told her not to dawdle. Let's go. The trainer girl muttered that maybe the bus would have been safer after all. Ichijo said there were no safe places in zones except for safe houses. He was right. Back at the bus, everything had gone to hell. The bodybuilder was struggling to fight, screaming at the zombies to stay back. The bus driver sat inside while a zombie constantly attacked the windshield. Everyone shouted, why were zombies suddenly increasing? Absolutely protect the bus. Don't let them inside. The student from Ichijo's class stood up and whined. How were they supposed to protect anything without weapons? Wasn't it supposed to be safe if they stuck with the bodybuilder? The bodybuilder told him to shut up and kept fighting with a blazer. The boy kept screaming, aren't you supposed to protect us? Hurry up and defeat the zombies. The bodybuilder snapped. He grabbed the boy by the collar. The kid asked what he was doing. Let go. The bodybuilder said he was being damn noisy. If he wanted to follow that brat with the weapon so badly, go ahead. The boy stammered that he didn't really mean it that seriously. Then the bodybuilder shoved him toward the zombies. The boy screamed, wait, hey Tsuyoshi, help me. His friend rushed to the bodybuilder and asked what he was doing. If he threw him outside in a place like this, he'd die. The bodybuilder told him to shut up. How about you go instead? The boy was frozen with terror. He begged, I'm joking. I apologize, so please stop. The bodybuilder's face went cold. He said, you're right. I have to protect these guys, so I'll use you to drive the zombies away. He threw the boy outside. Akira rolled across the ground. The zombies saw fresh meat and instantly turned. He sat there trembling, shouting for help that wasn't coming. Inside the bus, the bodybuilder watched as the zombies headed toward their new target. Perfect! Akira screamed, help me! The nightmare struck. Zombies bit into him, tore him apart piece by piece. Everyone inside watched in horror. He was eaten. The bodybuilder told them not to just stand there. He had no choice. It was to protect everyone. The zombies would come this way again soon. Hurry up and fix this bus. Let's get out of here. The driver stammered and agreed. The bodybuilder thought, useless fools. I won't be dragged down by people like this. Back to Ichijo's crew. The trainer girl held a dagger stained with blood. Itsuka had to call her name twice before she snapped out of it. She asked how much further to the gas station. Kana replied, right over there. Ichijo warned that there were probably lots of zombies at the gas station. Don't let your guard down. Itsuka nodded. Ichijo added, things must be getting tough on the bus side too. Kana scratched her head as they moved. Ichijo walked and noticed something strange. No special mission was appearing this time. Was it because there were other people here? Then he looked up. We've arrived. Zombies. A whole fucking lot of them. Standing there like a welcoming committee from hell. Ichijo got into his stance. Well, whatever. I'll think about it later. First, clear this place. There are still tons of things I need to do. He rushed straight at them. Back to the bus. The zombies had returned and were trying to tear the vehicle apart. The bodybuilder asked the driver, can you fix it? The driver said it would run if they had gasoline. Akira's friend pointed. The zombies are coming back. And there was Akira himself, now a zombie. What do we do? We're surrounded again. The bodybuilder looked at Akira's friend. The kid's face went pale. He started begging. Wait, I'm young and strong. Let's abandon the driver. I'll follow your orders. The driver shot back. Who's going to drive the bus if I'm gone? The bodybuilder said that was right. The driver was more useful. We have no choice but to sacrifice you for everyone. Of course, you can resist if you want. The boy backed away, screaming, stop it. The bodybuilder said not to waste energy here. The zombies might come back while they were running around. The boy called him a murderer. The bodybuilder released murderous energy. How can you worry about that in this situation? It's your fault for being weak. The boy got thrown out of the bus and became the main attraction for every zombie in the area. They all ran straight for him as he sprinted for his life, screaming for help that never came. The bodybuilder watched from the window and admitted the kid had been running for nearly 10 minutes now. He's got guts. The driver pointed out that the gasoline group still hadn't returned. That decoy wouldn't last much longer either. At this rate, we'll let 2 people die in vain. The bodybuilder grabbed the driver's collar and snarled, listen, they went on their own will. I'm doing this to protect you guys, so don't talk like it's my fault. The driver, terrified, said understood, but the bodybuilder's thoughts were darker. He's right though, that kid won't last much longer. If the gasoline group doesn't come back soon, I'll have to use the driver next. The boy was still running when his leg caught a stone. He fell hard. Zombies closed in, mouths wide open ready to bite. Hero entry. Ichijo appeared out of nowhere and sliced half a zombie's head off, saving the boy in one clean motion. The boy screamed, Ichijo, you finally came back. Then he grabbed at Ichijo, begging for help. Akira turned into a zombie. The bodybuilder stepped out and gave his version. Right after they left to look for gasoline, a huge number of zombies appeared. 2 great people went to pull the zombies away from the bus. Thanks to them buying time, the bus was fixed. Come on, put the gasoline in and let's get out of here quickly. The boy snapped. Terror turned into rage. He shouted that Akira died because the bodybuilder forcibly threw him out, and after that he tried to throw him out too. You never intended to protect us. Itsuka and the trainer were shocked. What? The boy screamed, this guy is a murderer. The bodybuilder's face twisted with anger. He said, don't mess with him. The boy was no different. He sold off that kid to get on his good side and was hoping he would die while looking for gasoline. How dare you say that? The boy stammered. Don't say random things. It's a misunderstanding. Akira said that, but I was against it. Ichijo, believe me. The bodybuilder said he did it for everyone. They had no weapons. If he hadn't done that, the bus would have been taken over by now. It's that kid's fault for not leaving his weapons behind. He pointed at Ichijo. Seeing that you don't have a single scratch, I guess you weren't in any danger over there. Etsuka fired back. You're just justifying your actions. Instead of protecting us, you fed us to zombies. The bodybuilder slapped one of the zombies aside and snapped. Is this the time to be saying that? There's nothing more important than surviving, getting out of here alive. The next moment, something hit him. He looked at the trainer girl. Kana had done something. The bodybuilder told her to shut up and bring the weapons and gasoline. She didn't move. He warned her, don't just stand there. Once I get weapons, they're all mine. Etsuka asked Kana, you came along knowing all this? Kana admitted the truth. Yeah, to steal their weapons and give them to the bodybuilder. That was the plan. Then she looked at Ichijo and thought, I'm sorry, I can't give them to you. The bodybuilder laughed. You think that kid will save you? Don't think stupid thoughts. Come here now. Kana stood her ground. Joseph Kabe, this is going too far. Apologize to everyone. I believe in Ichijo. I saw how he fights. He will save us. The bodybuilder exploded. Shut up, you useless fool. You want me to follow a high school student? I can't entrust my life to a brat who hasn't even grown hair yet. If you won't hand over the weapons, I'll take them by force. Killing one person, or killing two makes no difference. Anyone who opposes me dies. Kana and Etsuka froze. Ichijo stayed calm. A special mission triggered. Eliminate the one emitting killing intent. Ichijo released his furious aura. Let me teach you one more thing. Even if you kill someone in a zone, no one remains. His thoughts ran cold. A special mission appeared in the middle of conquest. The first mission after the apocalypse survival would be to kill a human. The bodybuilder asked what he was planning to do. The driver tried to mediate. Let's not do anything unnecessary, and just, the bodybuilder cut him off. Don't be stupid. The ones doing unnecessary things are those who won't hand over the gasoline and weapons. He looked at Chicho, surrounded by zombies standing there completely calm. Why does he seem so calm? Chicho thought. Now I know. Special missions target not just zombies, but humans too. He moved, sliced through the surrounding zombies in the blink of an eye. The bodybuilder watched in terror as a zombie's head fell right at his feet. Chicho walked forward, closing the distance. The bodybuilder stammered. What? Chicho said nothing really. Then, I came just to kill. The bodybuilder panicked. He dragged the bus driver in front of him as a human shield. You can't touch me. The driver screamed. Hey, that's cowardly. The bodybuilder shouted back. Shut up. You're the only one who can drive the bus. You better stay quiet, or else. Ichijo slammed the driver's head into the bodybuilder's. The impact loosened his grip. Chicho closed the distance in seconds. The bodybuilder fell down and started begging. I understand. I'll follow your orders, so please don't kill me. Ichijo's eyes went dark. Isn't that what Gata and the others said to you too? He paused. Unfortunately, it's too late now. The bodybuilder looked at Ichijo's face and realized, what is this guy? Is he really a high school student? These are eyes that are seriously trying to kill. This is bad. Quick, get help. He stood up and tried to run outside. Ichijo kicked him. One kick sent him flying to the back of the bus. The bodybuilder groveled. I'm sorry. I apologize. I had no choice. In that situation, that was the only thing I could do. Please forgive me. Ichijo looked down at him with red, hollow eyes. You had no choice? That's right. For humans like you, it's easier to kill humans than zombies. Self-preservation, betrayal. That's your standard method. The bus driver crawled out of the chaos. Ichijo said, if I let someone like you live, there will be more victims. The bodybuilder screamed, stop, don't come here. The dagger came down. The bodybuilder lay there, dead. The special mission, Eliminate Killing Intent, was complete. After Ichijo put down the bodybuilder, Kana got to work refueling the bus. A zombie crept up right behind her. She froze, but Ichijo handled it before she could even scream. Focus on refueling. She nodded and got back to it. From inside the bus, the student asked how the gasoline situation looked. Kana said she'd put it all in. The student immediately told the driver to try starting the engine. The driver agreed. Got it. Every pair of eyes locked onto that bus. The driver kept trying. The boy screamed, please hurry up and start. Then, like a miracle powered by pure desperation, the headlights flickered on. The engine roared to life. Everyone lost it. It started. We did it. The boys shouted for everyone to get on quickly. Itsuka was already inside, finally able to breathe. We can finally get out of here. The driver confirmed everyone was on board. We're departing, so hold on tight. The bus lurched forward, leaving a horde of zombies in the dust, but not fast enough. The boys screamed, go faster. They're catching up. The driver admitted the engine was damaged. He couldn't push it. Kana's heart sank. No way. All our hard work will go to waste. Ichijo spoke. Use the bodybuilder as bait. The boy's jaw dropped. Ichijo explained. It was effective use of resources. He was already dead anyway. Silence filled the bus. Then the boy broke it. Got it. This should help Akira rest in peace a little. They threw the bodybuilder out. Zombies swarmed the corpse. The boy cheered. All right, they're swarming it. The bus pulled away. Itsuka walked up to Ichijo and apologized. He asked for what? She said she shouldn't have criticized his attitude toward Hatano and the others. Coming here, she finally understood human nature. To survive, people would sell out their comrades without hesitation, even kill. Ichijo said she caught on pretty quickly. He'd like to praise her, but what she saw today was just the tip of the iceberg. The real hell starts now. Always be suspicious of others. Don't trust anyone carelessly in this apocalyptic world. Only you can save yourself. She looked at him. Ichijo, what kind of experiences have you been through? The bus driver shouted. Hey look, there's a glowing gate, the safe gate. Everyone piled out of the bus, staring at something none of them had ever seen before. The student asked what it was. The driver admitted he didn't know, but he had a bad feeling about it. Should we avoid it and keep going? Ichigo said, if they wanted to leave this world, they had to enter here. Kana asked, enter? Ichigo explained. When someone entered a safe house, a condition began, and the gate automatically closed after 5 minutes. If you didn't enter by then, you'd become a zombie and return to the real world. He stepped inside. That's all I can tell you. Make your own judgment after that. Etsuka followed without hesitation. Inside, she looked around. This is the safe house. Ichigo confirmed. He pointed to 7 boxes, the spoils of war. There were 7 people originally, but 2 died along the way, Akira and the bodybuilder. The extras would be distributed equally among the survivors. That's why some people try to kill others and monopolize the spoils. We call those people executors. He added that the world's rules could never be rewritten, but that was still a story for later. How many spoils they could receive now depended on the ones still outside. The driver, the student, and Kana stood waiting. The student asked what they should do. Those 2 went in, but what about them? The driver said he wasn't confident, but going back the original way felt safer. The student turned to Kana. What are you doing? Kana cut him off. They were able to come this far thanks to Ichijo. If they split up here and encountered zombies, they couldn't defeat them. So I believe in Ichijo. The driver and student looked at each other. Then they all entered. Itsuka smiled. Kana, you came. Kana replied that she believed in them. Ichijo said everyone made it inside. He told each of them to open a box with spoils. The items would automatically go to their inventory. These were the materials to level up their inventory space. After this, each of them would be transported back to where they originally were. His words finished. They were teleported back. Everyone shouted, "We really made it back. Thank goodness." Ichijo said they'd be safe for a while now. See you later. Kana called out, "Hey, won't you give me your contact info?" Ichijo looked at her with a questioning expression. His phone rang. Miki. Isuka finally crashed onto her lab chair and announced that she was completely done, like her whole body had just checked out. She pointed out that outside was basically a zombie buffet, but then noticed something weird. They had been stuck in that zone for ages, yet only 10 minutes had passed in real time. Ichijo explained that time bends differently between zones and reality, and even zones have their own screwy time rules. He told her to take a break because her first zone had kicked her ass, while he went hunting for the next one. Itsuka offered to join him, but he shut that down quick, saying it would be brutal for her to jump into another zone so soon. She just mumbled his name, and when he asked what, she said never mind, just to watch his back. He warned her not to go outside with all the danger, so she stared at her own hand and admitted she still wasn't strong enough, then decided to keep researching that portion stuff. Ichijo stepped out, stood there dead silent for a second, and then told himself that special mission targets might include humans, which meant he couldn't enter zones with its SOPA. From then on, he figured he should roll solo as much as possible. He remembered that she had been trying to say something earlier, but whatever, zone conquest came first. Then his phone rang and he glanced at the screen and groaned about this guy again, with over 20 missed calls already calling him annoying. He opened the door while in another room. Miki was still blowing up her friend's phone. Her friend asked what was happening, and Miki said the jerk had hung up. Her friend insisted they keep calling because in a world like this, they needed people to lean on, and since that guy was rich, he definitely had tons of supplies. Miki agreed to keep trying, thanking their luck that Mineta had given his phone to that dude. Then that automated voice came on saying the number was either turned off or out of service. So Miki screamed that he turned it off and called Ichijo an idiot, completely losing her cool. Meanwhile, Ichijo checked out the streets and noticed the zombie population was exploding, meaning everyone who first entered the zones probably got slaughtered. He announced that a level 2 zone was about to drop, and then he spotted something ahead and instantly leaped into a fight, deciding to head downtown for now. On the way, no matter how many zombies swarmed him, he just wrecked them in an instant without breaking a sweat. This bro was literally one punch man, and after annihilating those undead, he struck a heroic pose and then looked up shouting that here it comes. A flashy red light was streaking in one direction. Miki kept dialing over and over and the phone kept cutting off, which made her freak out because this was seriously annoying. Her friend pointed at something and asked what the hell that was. When they both looked ahead, A red aura was materializing, and all the residents of that building had also gathered together, muttering about what this was and why there were so many people. Finally, Miki said that this was the apartment entrance, right? She had just been in her room a second ago. But then, right in front of her, she saw people gathering. Her friend came running over shouting, while Miki hid behind her and asked what they were looking at. "You creepy weirdos." Her friend freaked out, calling those people rude for staring at them. Then a sophisticated man stepped in while others were still yelling at Miki, demanding she say that again. That man told everyone to calm down and first get the situation organized, explaining that he had been watching the news ever since those strange incidents started tonight. He was absolutely sure they were inside something called a zone. A cute girl squealed that Sakamoto was so cool, and Sakamoto suggested they all introduce themselves for now. He was Sakamoto from room 888, a manager in insurance sales. A baldy introduced himself as Yamada, the security guard for this apartment. Then another boy named Gendo, followed by Tsuchira, who was unemployed. That cute girl turned out to be Miyasi from room 606, and she was a streamer. Two more boys, Hosokawa and Futamura, said they were part-timers living together in room 201. Miki said she was Miki, and her friend introduced herself as Risa, both high school students sharing room 702. The baldy then looked back at Ichijo and pointed out there was one more person he'd never seen around, clearly not a resident of this apartment. Ichijo coolly introduced himself, and Risa looked at him and announced that this was Ichijo. Miki started asking why he was here, saying they saw him, and then everyone pointed at Ichijo demanding who he was in this apartment. Ichijo tried to answer, but someone else said explaining was a pain. Ichijo thought to himself that the guy must be plotting something, so they should catch him for now, but he couldn't say he came looking for a zone. Then he noticed that if Miki was a resident here, he could use that, so Ichijo claimed he came to see his classmate Riki. Sakamoto finally asked if they were really classmates, and both girls said yeah. Risa then added that he had been ignoring her calls on purpose, and then suddenly showed up as a surprise romantic gesture, risking his life after seeing the news about the city being dangerous. Then some man said he wouldn't forgive Ichijo easily for pulling that stunt, but it all depended on his attitude from now on, and in the end he would have no choice but to obey quietly. Then this boy Gendo stepped up and said he had a date with her, so he didn't have time to deal with these guys. The baldy told him to wait because it was dangerous outside, but Gendo didn't listen. He quickly opened the door, and within a second his eyes went wide at what he saw in front. Everyone inside was also struggling to stand, shouting about a strong wind, calling it a blizzard, and asking what was happening since it was summer. Then Sakamoto shouted from beside them to close it quickly or everyone would freeze to death, and instantly Gendo slammed the gate shut and collapsed on the spot. Looking at him, Miki asked if he was dead, and Sakamoto said let's check, while the baldy asked what was with this sudden bizarre insanity. The indoor temperature had dropped rapidly too. Ichijo looked at all of them and thought they were fools for opening the door before scouting for supplies, because that door was the signal that started the zone. The baldy went over to Gendo and asked if he was okay, and Gendo replied between coughs and shivers that he thought he was going to freeze to death. Ichijo peeked outside and concluded that from this situation, they couldn't go outside, and their activity range was limited to inside the apartment. In other words, this was a defensive-type zone, and securing supplies just became the top priority. Ichijo had just figured out that the Apocalypse special zones basically came in two stupid flavors. First up was the exploration adventure type where you had tons of space to roam but had to haul ass away from your safe house. And then the second was the defensive survival type where you barely had any room to breathe, but if you held your ground against the rotting hordes long enough, a safe house would magically appear. But of course, because the late apocalypse period loved to screw with people, advanced zones that mixed both types started showing up. This time it was a level 2 defense type zone, so no advanced nonsense yet, and all they had to do was survive until that safe house popped up, which made supplies basically the most precious thing on earth. Ichijo casually glanced at the others while Sakamoto clapped his hands like a camp counselor and announced it was time to gather up. Sakamoto said he thought he understood the situation but pointed out the obvious. They were trapped, so could they please confirm there were really only those 10 people inside the building? Baldy looked around and said there probably hadn't been that many people here to begin with, and most of them had already evacuated after that day's terrifying news. Then a boy whined about their phones having no signal so they couldn't even call the cops, and his friend added that it wasn't just no signal, there was no electricity either, so they needed to figure out some way to contact the outside world. Another boy cut in to say food was the #1 priority, because this whole bizarre nightmare had started out of nowhere and nobody knew when it would end. At that rate, the kid warned, they would all starve to death, which is just the kind of cheerful thought you want when zombies might be gnawing on the door. Then Miki spoke up saying that what she was saying made sense. In this freezing temperature, they should get warm first, and her friend immediately agreed. So the whole group started yelling over each other about food, a way to call for help, and warm clothes, like a bunch of panicked toddlers who'd lost their mom at the mall. Sakamoto quietly adjusted his glasses, you know the type, and told everyone quite firmly that this was not the time to fight among themselves. He admitted that all those concerns were important, but unity was even more crucial, and at a time like this they absolutely had to stay calm. He suggested that since they couldn't contact the outside, they should focus on protecting themselves first. Everyone needed to go back to their rooms, grab anything useful, and then they'd pick a leader and divide the supplies equally. And if they trusted him, he'd temporarily take that leader role. The streamer instantly kissed up and said Sakamoto would be perfect, and another boy chimed in with a yeah because of course they did. Ichijo just looked at them and thought, wow, this pattern again. People without any confidence immediately hand their fate over to someone else the second a crisis hits. And that salesman guy had taken control of the whole situation with just a few smooth words. Then Sakamoto walked over to Ichijo and said, you know Ichijo, you're not a resident of this apartment building so you don't have anything to collect, so just wait here while the rest of them go. Ichijo flat out said no. And Sakamoto was so surprised he asked what. Ichijo looked at the group and said exactly what Sakamoto had pointed out. He wasn't a resident, so he wouldn't join the group and would act alone. His thinking was brutally simple. Without supplies, his position would naturally be lower than everyone else's, and the moment something went wrong, he'd be the first one they'd abandon, and that guy with the glasses was pretty damn calculating. Sakamoto then said he understood, and since Ichijo had limited manpower on his own, they wouldn't be able to help him if something happened. Ichijo replied no problem, and told them to just treat him like he didn't exist, which is the kind of badass energy you want when the world is ending. Right then, Gendo mentioned there was one walkie-talkie, and Sakamoto did the math, 11 of them. He grabbed it and said everyone should take one for themselves, then told the group to set their room numbers as channels, with channel 1 being the public one, which would make communication way easier once they set it up. So hurry back to your rooms, grab supplies, and meet back here in 10 minutes. Then he offered a walkie-talkie to Ichijo, saying even though they were acting separately, he'd give him one anyway, and to let him know if he changed his mind. Ichijo took it, looked it over closely, and simply said got it, because he's clearly not a man of many words. Baldy asked Sakamoto why he was being so kind to that kid, saying if he wouldn't follow orders they should just leave him alone. Sakamoto replied there were extras anyway, and they were all trapped together, so if Ichijo could cooperate that would be good, and Baldy thought to himself how helpful it was to have such a generous leader. Then Miki stepped up and said to Ichijo that he had a lot of supplies with him but didn't want to share with everyone. She remembered her friend telling her to get information out of Ichijo, but she'd whined about not wanting to talk to him dressed the way she was. And her friend shot back that at a time like this you can't worry about your outfit. Plus he'd come to danger to reach her, and refused Sakamoto's proposal, which meant Ichijo actually wanted to give her supplies. Ichijo looked at Miki and said that wasn't it at all. He just happened to be there, and since the temperature was dropping rapidly, she should go back quickly and change her clothes. Sakamoto thought the guy was acting cool even at a time like this and decided fine, let him feel good for a little bit. She then asked him, as thanks for protecting her earlier, could he walk her to her room, and Ichijo replied there was no time so let's go. She thought to herself that men were all the same and she could see right through what he was thinking, which is ironic because she's the one who asked him to escort her. Ichijo coolly walked right in front of her while both of her friends were trembling behind. Miki asked what those bloodstains were because it felt kind of damp in there, and then she complained about the blackout happening at a time like this, making them walk to the 7th floor which was needlessly tiring, and it was freezing cold too, so wouldn't running warm up your body a bit? Ichijo replied that intense exercise in this temperature would actually cause hypothermia, which is just science, buddy. They finally arrived right in front of a man's room and she told him not to enter yet because his channel was 0 and she'd contact him later. Right then, a voice crackled over the walkie-talkie saying they'd reached their room but something was wrong. There was no furniture at all. Another voice said same here. All the cup noodles were gone, and another asked what the hell was going on. Ichiji thought it seemed like the kind of zone where supplies were limited and he looked in front of him to see an empty room. He wondered why no zombies had appeared yet and noticed the door was unlocked, so he opened it and assumed as he walked in, then got hit by the smell of blood, and right in front of him was a zombie that straight up attacked him. But Ichijo handled the attack very swiftly, and his brain clicked into gear, realizing the zombies were hiding inside rooms. Wait a second, he then thought about Miki. Were there no zombies in her room? Meanwhile, Miki stared at this giant zombie inside her room that was absolutely covered in blood, and she asked out loud what that monster was from the noise she just heard. Then she started screaming about a monster, and what were they supposed to do? Ichiji was outside and she had no idea if he was alive or dead. Over the walkie-talkie, Gendo asked what that noise had just been, and Sakamoto said it came from the floor below him while wondering if something had happened. Meanwhile, inside a room, Miki's friend announced over the same device that this was room 702 and the noise had come from the next room over. Miki added that some bloody monster had appeared out of nowhere and attacked poor Ichijo, which made Sakamoto instantly say it was probably that zombie mentioned on the news. Someone noted that Ichijo was that guy's classmate and snickered that this was what he got for going off solo, but Sakamoto cut in with a far more important concern about whether the room supplies had disappeared. Miki and her friend looked in front of them and confirmed that yeah, only 2 pieces of clothing were left in the closet while everything else was gone, and others replied that it was the same for everyone. They agreed to grab everything they had and meet on the first floor, then asked Sakamoto if he could come pick them up on the 7th because they were scared there might be more monsters. Sakamoto replied that he got it, and for safety, everyone on the lower floors should wait until he came down, to which the man's friend said thanks and that he would be waiting. Sakamoto instantly loosened his tie, his eyes glowing red like some over-the-top anime villain, while Amain and her friend put on those ridiculous winter jackets as a man's friend commented that he couldn't believe Ichijo had died so easily. Miki replied that it was Ichijo's own fault, but honestly, the same pattern kept happening, because whenever that guy was involved, things never went well, and even all his designer coats were gone, leaving just this cheap-down jacket. Suddenly, a knock came at the door, and from outside, a person said they were there to pick up Miki, so she said she was coming right away. As the 3 of them went in front of what was apparently Sakamoto's room, he asked if there had been a zombie here, and Miki confirmed yeah, while asking if he had seen it on the way, because there were suspicious blood marks everywhere. Sakamoto said he had been checking his surroundings but didn't notice anything unusual, not even Ichijo's corpse, while Miki and her friend shivering stood right behind him like scared little kittens. Miki asked if that blood could be Ichijo's, and Sakamoto followed the blood trail like a detective who had no idea what he was walking into, announcing that it led all the way to room 701. He wondered if the zombie had come from there and if Ichijo might be dead inside, and when Miki instantly asked if they should go look, Sakamoto replied absolutely not, because it was way too dangerous and they should just meet on the first floor instead. Sakamoto said the 6th floor was ready, and he would be down soon, but inside that room the whole situation had completely flipped, because the zombie had actually been crushed out by Ichijo, and that blood belonged to the monster, not the victim. Over the walkie-talkie, everyone agreed with the plan, but listening to all of this from the 9th floor, Ichijo said with a smirk that they all thought he was dead, and hey, whatever made it easier for him to move around. He explained that after defeating that zombie with just a single freaking kick, a special mission had appeared to find a hidden treasure chest. So he looked around the floor saying this apartment had 9 floors and he would search from top to bottom. From the radio it seemed no one else had run into zombies, and he figured that if he was right, the undead were hiding in rooms with no residents. Down on the first floor at the entrance, all the other residents gathered around with those supplies in front of them, and they said this was everything they had. Water bottles, axes, some cup noodles, that's it. Sakamoto said it was clearly not enough, because even with rationing it might last 2 days, then started summarizing the current issues like a reluctant team leader in a horror movie. First, there was no telling how long the wizard would last. Second, zombies had appeared in the building with casualties already, and by the way, they had no clue where those zombies were right now. So for safety, he suggested keeping activity limited to the first floor. He also told everyone to learn how to use their inventory to store items, then opened his own inventory and announced that now everyone had a mission. While all that was happening, Ichijo was on the 8th floor killing zombies who were hiding inside rooms, thinking about how he had searched the 9th floor but found no treasure chest. He looked around saying that as expected, zombies lurked in rooms with no residents, but he did find a few survival supplies and grabbed a medical kit. Then he opened his inventory, taking out a jacket and explaining that he had understood the basic mechanics of this zone, and to get more items you had to explore and fight. Large defense-type zones lasted at least 5 days, so hunger and fear would soon take over the others, meaning they would probably stay on the first floor for a while, which gave him the perfect chance to move, though there was still a chance they might spot the special mission's treasure chest too. Ichijo was now in front of room 808, Sakamoto's place, and he opened the door saying, "Let's check it out." But as he entered, the smell inside was like blood, and by how this worked, there shouldn't have been any zombies here. Back on the first floor, Sakamoto was dividing the group like a gym teacher assigning dodgeball teams, putting Yamada, Futamura, and Hosokawa in one group, while Gendo, Satsura, and himself formed another. These 2 groups would patrol and keep watch, mainly circling the first floor, while the 3 women would try to contact the outside and provide backup, and Sakamoto said food was limited so he would distribute it to everyone, telling them not to worry because if they all cooperated they could get through this. Hosokawa admitted she was starting to feel hopeful, and if Sakamoto was in charge they would be okay, while Futamura added that raising everyone's morale in this situation made him really dependable. Gendo replied that the newcomers might not know, but Sakamoto had helped a lot of people here, and he was honest and good at his job, plus he had a beautiful girlfriend named Aya, with long, gorgeous hair, and that was it, a girlfriend. before shifting back to Sakamoto's room where Aya's lips had been tied using sewing threads. Futamura kept yapping about how Aya's face was perfect, she was great at conversation, and they were always together, the ideal couple, while someone else mentioned they hadn't seen Aya lately. While Ishijo looked at Aya's body lying there on the bed, and while the others kept saying she probably hadn't come back yet and was still outside, Ishijo stared at her and realized this was done by a human, not a zombie, and wondered if it was him. Right then on the first floor, a boy announced he was out, and when Sakamoto asked why, the kid replied that he didn't like being ordered around, nor waiting for Sakamoto to hand out food like some kind of cafeteria lady. The boy said he would take his share up front and handle things his own way, to which Sakamoto pointed out that the last guy who went solo just got killed, so he should think carefully. But the boy turned around and said killing a person or two didn't mean anything to him, because he trusted himself more than these people. Someone tried to defend Sakamoto, but Sakamoto stopped him and said let the idiot go if he wanted. They would just have to reorganize the groups. Meanwhile, somewhere else, hordes of zombies were attacking humans, and the teens there were shooting at them relentlessly until finally all those rotting freaks dropped dead on the floor. Everyone shouted ceasefire and that the area was secured. Then the captain took off his mask and said there was no end to them, one after another, just wondering out loud what the hell had become of this world. Ichijo, on the other hand, poked around Sakamoto's room and announced that there was no treasure chest hidden there, because of course there wasn't. Then as he was leaving, he glanced over at Sakamoto's girlfriend who was clearly tortured and looking rough, but this absolute legend just quietly slipped away like a total coward. Gindo and the Baldy were huddled with Sakamoto, freezing their actual butts off in this ridiculous cold. Gindo whined about how freezing it was and asked how long this freak weather would last, and Fatty basically told him to shut up because he had no clue either. Gendo then pointed out that was exactly the problem since their supplies were running low, and he added that the weather showed zero signs of stopping anytime soon. Sakamoto had to admit that being cold and hungry was seriously tough, which is the understatement of the century. Baldy noticed the supplies in the room weren't much either, so he started wondering out loud if there might be some in the empty rooms. As he reached for a door, Gendo called him an idiot and reminded him that everyone had said zombies were in there. Baldy came back with that classic high-risk, high-return logic, asking if they should risk it for possible supplies, and Gendo stupidly agreed. But just as Baldy was about to open the door, Sakamoto appeared right behind them with a look that could kill, and demanded to know what the hell they were doing. Gendo stammered his name like a kid caught stealing cookies, and Sakamoto laid into them about the rules. He reminded them that he'd told everyone not to open empty room doors on their own, because even though this was their own building, the situation was clearly insane. He pointed out that zombies had been confirmed on the 7th floor after someone opened an empty room there, and while they couldn't be totally sure about the connection, the possibility was pretty damn high. Sakamoto said he understood their anxiety, and that they were trying to be heroes for everyone's sake, but each person actually mattered. He asked them to prepare properly first, and made them promise not to act on their own from then on. And after that little pep talk, Gendo quietly agreed. Sakamoto calmly said good and told them to continue patrolling, but then his walkie-talkie suddenly buzzed with someone begging him to come back quickly. He turned to Gendo and Baldy, saying he was heading to the entrance and leaving things to them, and told them to contact him if anything happened and to be very careful. Gendo replied yeah, and then admitted it was a good thing Sakamoto showed up before they opened that door, so they'd better obey quietly. Baldy agreed, and Sakamoto headed to the first floor with a cold grin on his face because that guy loved being in control. When he got there, he asked what the commotion was about, and the streamer pointed at Miki, accusing her of trying to eat more than her fair share. Miki defended herself like a true diva, saying she hadn't eaten anything all day, and one cup noodle wasn't nearly enough, plus she'd never touch cup noodles made with gross water unless she was starving. The streamer instantly fired back that she shouldn't eat it then, and to stop being so selfish in a situation like this. Fatty jumped in saying they were dividing everything equally and asking for understanding, but then out of nowhere Fatty's friend stepped up and offered to give Miki his own noodles. Miki just stared at that cup of disappointment while Fatty's friend explained that he didn't eat much anyway, so if she was hungry she should go ahead and eat it. Fatty pulled his friend aside and hissed at him for being a complete idiot, asking what the hell he was doing, but the friend replied that she was a girl and helping each other was important. Meanwhile, Miki's friend muttered that there were guys who tried to flirt even in an apocalypse, as Miki held the cup noodles and sniffed that normally she wouldn't even look at something so pathetic. Over the walkie-talkie, Sakamoto asked what all the noise was about, and then said no problem, just come back when the petrol was done and they'd eat. A person on the walkie-talkie acknowledged and said they'd be right back, because walkie-talkie etiquette never dies. Meanwhile, on the 7th floor, Ichijo was casually eating meat and preparing dishes like he was at a 5-star restaurant, and he smugly noted that the conflict had started earlier than he expected. Ichijo remarked that the biggest weakness of a makeshift team was the breakdown of trust, which is both obvious and hilarious coming from a guy hiding upstairs with zombie meat. In In his room, he had already killed 3 zombies and decided to call it a day and sleep after eating, because being able to eat such delicious food in a zone that was unthinkable in his previous life was apparently a huge deal. He thought that in extremely cold environments, physical exhaustion was even more severe than usual. But then at least— oh wait, never mind. Suddenly on the first floor, Sakamoto heard Yamada's voice, and Miki wondered what the hell was happening now. From an alleyway inside the hotel, Baldi, Gendo, and Yamada came running and shouting about a zombie, and guess what? The zombie lunged right at Yamada. Sakamoto freaked out, asking why there was a zombie on the first floor and whether it had come down from the 7th floor. But a man said no, this wasn't the zombie they had seen before. Baldi shouted that some idiot had ignored orders and opened a door, pointing at Yamada, while Yamada kept screaming for help as the zombie lunged again. Yamada begged someone to stop it and help him, but before he could even finish his whining, the zombie had already pierced its arm straight into him, and Gendo was absolutely terrified watching it happen. Miki completely lost it, screaming that he got eaten and that she didn't want to die, and she ran off in the opposite direction like a headless chicken. Sakamoto saw her and shouted for her to wait and asked where she was going, telling someone to stop her. Miki's friend grabbed her and tried to calm her down as she freaked out, yelling to let her go because she didn't want to die. Miki's friend told her to calm down, saying that panicking would only make things worse and that they were fighting back. Sakamoto pulled an axe out of his inventory, and the 2 boys in his team were shocked but ready for some action. Fatty asked if they were really going to fight the zombie, and Sakamoto replied that they had no choice but to fight to protect their supplies, because if they let this thing get away further, it was over and they absolutely had to finish it here. Both of them agreed and took out fire extinguishers from their inventories, swearing in frustration but understanding the mission. But then Gendo looked ahead and said something was weird, and when Sakamoto turned around in surprise, Gendo announced that Yamada had turned into a zombie. Now there were 2 zombies they had to face right then, because of course the universe hates them. Those 2 zombies came lunging toward the group, letting out nasty, angry growls like dying lawnmowers. Fatty and his friend instantly grabbed a fire extinguisher and blasted it, yelling at the zombies to stop it already. The thick white gas completely covered both monsters while Sakamoto pulled out his axe and charged forward for what he thought would be a clean strike on one named Yamada. But his eyes went wide as dinner plates when he saw the pathetic result. The axe only hit Yamada's arm, and the zombie just flinched a little like a minor itch. Sakamoto freaked out and screamed that the thing was still alive. Then Yamada grabbed his hand instantly and opened its disgusting wide-ass mouth, ready to chow down. Thank the horror movie gods, Gendo stepped in just in time to save Sakamoto, sending Yamada crashing into a wall while Sakamoto's axe clattered to the floor. What the whole group completely forgot in that panic was there still lurked another zombie nearby. While Gendo asked if everyone was okay, that second zombie stood right behind him like a creepy ex at a party. Someone screamed out a warning that the zombie was right behind Gendo, so Gendo dodged the attack and shouted something about letting the disgusting thing go. He added that if you get bitten, you turn into one of those rotting monsters. Another person yelled something else, while Sakamoto instantly grabbed his axe again. He then sliced the zombie clean apart right from the top of its head down to its middle section. Gendo stared in total shock at that brutal move, and just like that, the second zombie dropped dead on the spot. Now only Yamada remained with his broken neck still shambling toward them like a nightmare that won't quit. Someone asked the obvious question of why this thing could still move even with a neck snapped like a twig. Sakamoto shouted that the head was the weak point, and everyone should aim for the head, then ordered the group to stop Yamada's movement immediately. So Fatty used his extinguisher again to cover Yamada in that gas, but absolutely nothing happened to the zombie. The thing just kept moving forward, reaching out for them like a drunk relative at a wedding. Fatty yelled that it wasn't working and the zombie was charging straight at them. His friend completely lost it and screamed that everyone should run because getting caught meant game over. But Fatty shouted no they couldn't run, while the streamer was already sprinting away completely freaking out about how fast the zombie was. Then Fatty joined the running party too, because self-preservation is a hell of a drug. Just then a hand came out of nowhere and shoved the streamer aside, someone telling her to get out of the way, and she tumbled right in front of Yamada. She screamed not to leave her behind, but guess what? Everyone was already gone, vanished like farts in the wind. From behind her came the growl of that zombie, and she begged for someone to stop it and help her, while desperately trying to save herself. Right behind the zombie stood Sakamoto, and she pleaded with him for help while he stood there trembling like a chihuahua in a thunderstorm. She begged please help her because she didn't want to die yet, and Sakamoto came closer with shaky legs, telling her to be quiet. The streamer kept calling his name, but he was so terrified that he said if she could hold off the zombie he might survive, because he didn't want to die either. The streamer fell to the floor under the zombie's pressure, still struggling to stop it from biting her, and she kept asking Sakamoto to help her. But Sakamoto, frozen in fear, started shaking and said it wasn't his fault. It was the fault of those guys who abandoned her. He then told her that since she was already bitten, she couldn't be saved anymore, so she should just die because if he left her like this, she would turn into one of them. She instantly raised her hand in desperate hope, saying sorry, but Sakamoto lifted his axe and told her to die in his place. Then he straight up chopped through both the zombie and the girl at the same time in one horrific swing. Meanwhile, behind a gate, Fatty was holding it shut and noticed it had gotten quiet, wondering if the zombie went somewhere else. Gendo asked where Sakamoto was since he hadn't come back yet. Fatty replied that they didn't have time to worry about other people. But Gendo moved closer and called him out for saying such selfish things. Miki also chimed in that Fatty was the worst for pushing the streamer earlier. Fatty instantly exploded and told them to shut up with their fake good person act, because they all ran away trying to save themselves first too. He then pointed at one guy and said that guy had no choice but to escape, and even Miki, when she first tried to open the room door, didn't think about the rest of them. Fatty freaked out even more and claimed that if he hadn't been there would have been even more casualties, and in the end, everyone just cares about themselves, so nobody should lecture him. Right then, a bloody hand slapped onto the door, and it was Sakamoto. Sakamoto announced that he had defeated all the zombies, that the streamer got infected and died, and that he was going to check the room that Tsuchira had opened. He told everyone to decide for themselves whether to follow or not. Inside the hotel somewhere else, one person remained completely unscratched. Ichijo. He was running through the zombies, killing them and tearing them apart like they were made of wet paper. Those zombies were just like chicken to him. Seriously, he was just farming them and slicing off their heads with nothing but a regular kitchen knife like it was no big deal. Then he pulled a soda can from his inventory and muttered that the 6th floor wasn't the right one either. Finally, Sakamoto and the team entered a room and Miki asked if this was a security room. They came to a conclusion that Tsuchira had noticed there was electricity there and opened the door, but then as they looked ahead said, "Hey, wasn't that high school student supposed to be dead?" Another person noticed it was indeed Ichijo and asked why he was still alive. She also added that every single room on each floor had been opened and all the zombies had been defeated too, so he must have had a ton of supplies. Sakamoto flinched in anger, thinking that their own supplies had been ransacked as well. Then he saw that room 808 was open, which meant that Ichijo had seen whatever was in there, so Sakamoto realized they had no choice but to kill him. Ichijo somehow survived and straight up stole every single supply from floors 6 through 9, meaning the guy is basically sitting on a hoarder's paradise of food and gear. And of course, instead of thinking clearly, someone points out there's definitely a zombie behind some door, because why not add more chaos to the mix? 2 of their own companions got killed by just one zombie that Tsuchira let loose, which is already a special kind of stupid. Fighting zombies for more supplies right now would be suicide given how wrecked they are. So the genius plan becomes, let's fight Ichijo instead. That stolen stash is literally their lifeline. So the group decides to kill him and take everything back. The blonde-haired guy tried to suggest maybe talking things out like reasonable humans, but Sakamoto shot that down hard by calling him naive. Sakamoto pointed out that Ichijo has a walkie-talkie and knows every single detail of their situation, yet he still snuck off with all the supplies without giving a single crap about them. Then Sakamoto started ranting about protecting his own position and how he can't let Ichijo expose some murder. Yeah, a murder, because this story just leveled up. He went on saying Ichijo never cared about them from the beginning, and that the 2 deaths were also Ichijo's fault since the guy hid information. Miki tried to speak up, but Risa shut her down with a quick don't, so Miki just stayed silent like a scared puppy. Hosokawa immediately jumped in screaming that Sakamoto was right and that everything was that guy's fault, demanding Ichijo take responsibility, and Fatamura happily agreed like a loyal henchman. Sakamoto thought to himself how these 2 idiots had sacrificed their companions' lives for personal gain, but by dumping all the blame on Ichijo, they were now all working together to kill him. He called it human nature, then admitted it was his own fault for knowing who was really responsible the whole time while still pretending to be righteous. With an evil face, he basically told Ichijo that being good at killing zombies meant nothing against a human opponent, and since Sakamoto was covered in blood while Ichijo was still a greenhorn, he promised to take care of him until he stopped breathing, all while watching Ichijo on a screen. 2 people headed into a room and suddenly a blackout happened. Sakamoto demanded to know the cause, and Yamada explained they'd been running on backup power but it finally ran out like a phone on 1%. Sakamoto cursed the terrible timing, and Hosokawa asked what they could even do since they couldn't practice movements or win like this. Sakamoto stayed calm and said first they should analyze the security camera footage, noting that he was on the 8th floor and never ran into Ichijo when picking picking everyone up, meaning Ichijo was on the 9th floor at that time. He figured Ichijo was going down floor by floor searching for supplies, with the last camera sighting on the 6th floor. Since the cameras were now useless, they had to act on that reliable info. All the men would ambush on the 4th floor and finish Ichijo instantly, and everyone gave a crisp "Roger" like they were in a bad action movie. He told the two girls to go back to the entrance and bring supplies over, and they agreed while also deciding to change the radio channel to move in secret. After splitting up, Miki asked her friend why she stopped her earlier, and Risa called her a fool for even asking. Risa wondered if Miki really thought Ichijo could beat Sakamoto and the others, and Miki admitted it was hard to say since Ichijo had killed many zombies but was still just a student. Sakamoto's group had numbers and information on their side, plus they knew Ichijo's movements, so if they ambushed him the outcome was anyone's guess. Risa agreed the situation was unclear and said it was better not to make bold claims, calling Ichijo their last hope with a doubtful tone. She pointed out that only the two of them knew Ichijo's radio channel, which was an advantage, so their best move was to wait. If Sakamoto won, they survived safely, but if Ichijo gained the upper hand, they could side with him. She added that if Miki had betrayed Ichijo earlier, their escape route would have been cut off, and Miki called her really smart as expected. Risa just shrugged and said life was the most important thing of all. Over on the 5th floor, Ichijo was talking to himself like a lunatic, complaining that the treasure chest didn't seem to be there either, and wondering if it was on the 1st floor. He worried about running into those guys, calling it troublesome, right as he tried to open a door where Sakamoto's whole group was waiting to ruin his day. The moment Ichijo opened the door, Hosokawa swung an axe at him while Fatamura shouted for him to die carrying an extinguisher, but Ichijo flipped and kicked the extinguisher, which somehow smacked Hosokawa instead, and everyone freaked out asking how Ichijo dodged. Ichijo calmly said it was natural to stay alert in this situation, then asked how they figured out his movements. Fatamura screamed that it was Ichijo's fault for stealing all their supplies. Hosokawa shouted that 2 people died because of Ichijo and called him the root of all evil before charging in to attack. Ichijo just kicked him with his leg and asked again if they didn't want to answer his question. Hosokawa told him not to get cocky and yelled for the others to help, insisting there was no way 4 people could lose against one guy just because he was hoarding supplies they could barely eat. Ichijo called them pathetic fools and beat them with their own heads, saying if they had fought zombies with that spirit none of this would have happened, and if they didn't want to answer they could stay quiet forever. Yamada shouted the names Hosokawa and Fatamura, called Ichijo a bastard, and tried to beat him too. The blonde guy even said even Yamada-san, before realizing this was hopeless and screaming for a retreat. Ichijo caught him, beat his face straight into the ground, and the guy started begging for forgiveness, saying they saw him on the security camera, and finally understood everything. Sakamoto started screaming into his walkie-talkie, demanding that Yamada, Hosokawa, and Fatamura report what the hell was happening upstairs, then immediately lost his cool and cursed about how impossible it was that 4 people lying in wait couldn't take out one single kid. The two of them stepped out of the room, then out of the control room, to have a quiet panic talk where Miki pointed out that Sakamoto was acting super weird, and Risa suggested they hit up Ichijo for help, so they buzzed him on the walkie. Miki jumped on the channel and asked if Ichijo could hear her, admitting they'd been wrong and begging for forgiveness while also offering to trade food for intel about the 1st floor, which was such a chaotic mix of apology and bribe that it was almost impressive. Nobody replied, and they started freaking out about whether the channel was busted or if something terrible had happened. But then Ichijo came back asking about the security room's situation, and they got stupidly happy like he'd just sent them a birthday card. Miki gushed that she was so glad he replied, then explained the security room had been powerless for a while, and Sakamoto only knew Ichijo was on the 6th floor, which was apparently their big advantage. Ichijo dropped the bombshell that they should run away from Sakamoto right now if they wanted to live, and when they sputtered out a why, he revealed that the guy was a murderer even before the blizzard started, having killed his own girlfriend and stashed her body in his room, and that he'd spotted Ichijo on the security cameras sneaking in there, so now he was trying to shut him up for good. Sakamoto muttered that the kid was tougher than expected since 4 people couldn't even finish him, then switched gears and announced he was holding their classmate's life in his hands, so if they didn't want her dead, they'd follow his orders while he demanded to know what happened to the 4 and what floor Ichijo was on. Ichijo casually replied that the fact he was chatting with them so calmly should be answer enough, stating he was on the 3rd floor now, and when Ichijo asked if he was coming to kill him, Sakamoto just said not to play games and to bring supplies within 10 minutes or he'd kill both hostages, which was a pretty tight deadline for a snack run. Miki started crying into the walkie for Ichijo to help her, and he just said 10 minutes, got it, wait there, while Sakamoto smugly laughed that the kid was just a dumb high schooler who fell for it way too easily. Miki asked what he was planning, and he coldly said his goal never changed from the start, which was Ichijo's life. So Miki called him a scumbag who acted all serious to earn everyone's trust while murdering his own girlfriend behind the scenes. And Sakamoto fired back that they were the ones who decided he was that kind of character, adding that he was sick of it too and hated when others made a fuss, threatening to sew her mouth shut if she said one more word. He ordered them to get up and follow him to the landing, so Sakamoto and the girls started moving, and Miki nervously asked if Ichijo was really coming to help, but the other girl just shrugged that she didn't care, which was honestly a weird vibe for a life-or-death situation. Miki suggested they should apologize to Sakamoto and beg for forgiveness, but Risa pointed out that was stupid because he was a murderer, then added that Ichijo had also killed people, 4 of them, which made Miki argue the situation was totally different since Sakamoto killed before the world went crazy, as if that made it somehow less insane. Sakamoto told them to wait right there because in 2 minutes, their life or death would be decided. Risa straight begged to the Sakamoto, saying she'll do anything, but then Sakamoto shouted that the other girl had just betrayed everyone, claiming she said she wasn't even Ichijo's classmate, didn't care if he died, and would do anything Sakamoto said if he just didn't kill her, which was such a desperate and selfish move that it made everyone's jaw drop. Sakamoto asked if she really thought he'd believe that, and she argued that since nobody knew how long the blizzard would last and everyone else had stayed, having 2 extra people was better than 1, right? And he just told her to come here while she whispered sorry to Miki, but she didn't want to die, and he snapped at her not to move. Miki couldn't believe she was getting betrayed too, and Sakamoto announced he heard footsteps, declaring that today was Ichijo's death day, while arrogantly thinking the kid had cleared out all the zombies on the upper floors, making this place his now. Suddenly there was sound behind the door, and it turned out to be a whole horde of zombies rushing toward them, and Sakamoto freaked out about the insane number, realizing the kid must have opened every single room door, and asking if he was completely insane because he was planning to take everyone down with him, so they needed to hurry back to the security room. A zombie roared right at Miki, and she screamed that she didn't want to die and begged for someone to help, and then out of nowhere Ichijo sliced through the zombie's neck, making her yell his name in pure shock. Ichijo asked if she was okay, then effortlessly killed another zombie that was sneaking up behind him while she thought to herself that it was amazing, and wondered if this was really that same Ichijo she knew. He handed her an axe and told her to take it if she didn't want to die, ordering her to hurry back to the entrance and hide, and when she asked what about him, he just said not to worry and to stay inside quietly. Miki made him promise to come back alive, saying she'd be waiting, but over where Sakamoto and the traitor girl were, she was screaming that the number of zombies kept increasing and at this rate they'd be eaten alive. Sakamoto asked if she'd really meant she would do anything, and when she looked doubtful, he told her to die in his place and shoved her right into the horde while she screamed no, and help me, and he thought to himself that there were too many and he couldn't hold them off alone. He started yelling damn and go away as the zombies crept closer, begging them not to come near him because he didn't want to die yet and screaming for someone to help him, but all that was left after his pathetic pleas was the sound of his own terrified screaming echoing through the hallway. Ichijo was running around opening every single room like a maniac, trying to find the special mission treasure chest. He keeps saying to himself that it's not here, not here, not here either, and he's getting seriously annoyed because he's almost checked every room but still found nothing. A zombie shambles toward him, and he just casually grabs its head, slits its throat like it's nothing, and then spots the last room in the corner. He mutters to himself that only that room is left and wonders if he's really that unlucky. Down on the first floor, Miki is nervously thinking about whether Ichijo is okay because she's been hearing tons of zombie voices outside. She just hopes he's safe. Then the lights suddenly flicker back on, and Miki is surprised by how bright it got, wondering if the power finally came back. Meanwhile, Ichijo storms into that final room, finds nothing again, and curses under his breath about why the treasure isn't there. He starts panicking internally, asking himself if he missed something somewhere. But that can't be because he literally opened and checked every single door. He's so frustrated he could scream. Miki gets on the walkie-talkie and asks if Ichijo can hear her, then tells him that the power is back on at the entrance. Ichijo asks back if the power is really back, and she confirms it and adds that a big door has appeared. Ichijo realizes that big door is the safety house, so opening all the room doors must have been the key all along. He tells her to go inside first and promises they can get out of there soon. But then he gets this nagging feeling that something's even stranger now, because if he opened everything, why didn't the special mission complete? Miki sounds confused and asks if she's really supposed to go in alone, and he tells her no, there are 4 others who should join her shortly. He calls the whole thing pointless and wonders if there's an error with the special mission, because something just feels off. A huge horde of zombies starts closing in on him. Ichijo begins slaughtering them one by one, thinking to himself that there's never been an error with special missions in any zone before. So what is he missing? Now that the safety house is active, there's only a tiny bit of of time left. He considers checking each floor again, but then realizes that if anything goes wrong, he might not make it to the safety house in time. Miki radios back saying she's joined up with Yamada and the others, and he's the only one left outside. Ichijo tells her he'll be right there, but inside he's already decided to give up on investigating because the risk is just too high. Then he hears an elevator sound and spots it nearby. He recognizes that sound and thinks, wait, the elevator, and it hits him. When all the doors were opened, the power came back and the elevator started working. He calmly tells Miki not to worry about him and to go inside first. He figures out there's only one possibility. The reward isn't in any room at all. It's in the elevator, and the condition was opening every single door. So the safety house appears, power is restored, the elevator starts working, and at the very end you get your reward. He thinks that's such a twisted way to do things. Then he opens the reward chest and finds a map? Seriously, after all that, an alarm immediately starts blaring. Nick's wondering why an alarm would go off all of a sudden, and then he hears it. Every single zombie in the area is converging on his location. He runs faster than he ever has in his life and slams the elevator door shut. He thinks to himself that he should have already defeated all the zombies. So where the hell did these come from? And what's with this ridiculous number of them? He realizes he doesn't have time to kill this many anymore, so he just closes the elevator door and starts going down. Then it hits him, could this also be part of the special mission? So the moment you grab the reward, a massive wave of zombies spawns just to block your escape. Then the roof of the elevator starts rumbling, and he looks up to see zombies dropping down from above too. He screams internally that even the ceiling zombies are coming for him. Are you serious? They start pouring down from the top, and he thinks, damn, no time left. He has to haul ass to the safety house as the lift begins descending. Back at the safety house, Hosokawa asks what's taking so long and whether something happened, suggesting they should go look. Beanie calls him an idiot and asks if he knows how many zombies are out there. One of the guys asks Miki if Ichijo did something to them, and she says no, he told them to hide in a room and only come out when it's safe. Then she asks if they already know about Sakamoto-san. The guy says he heard about that bastard from Ichijo and that he never should have trusted him. Miki says that right now all they can do is pray that Ichijo makes it back safely. Then she notices a countdown ticking down and realizes there's almost no time left. She thinks desperately about Ichijo as the numbers keep dropping, and just when it seems hopeless, Ichijo comes bursting through the door of the safety house. He made it in time, the absolute madman. So right after this whole group finally made it outside the safety zone, that one guy immediately announced that they were out, and hey, look at that, the crazy blizzard had actually stopped too. Then he casually dropped that he needed to go see his girlfriend and head back to his parents' house, because apparently a zombie apocalypse is the perfect time for a romantic family visit. While Ichijo told everyone to move way more quietly, reminding them that this wasn't the cheerful world they used to know anymore, with zombies potentially popping out at any second. He flatly said that if anyone didn't want to end up as a corpse, they should turn around, go back to the apartment, lock everything up tight, and just sit there waiting for help like good little survivors. The other guy asked Ichijo what he was going to do if he'd stay with them, like a scared puppy begging for a leader. Ichijo just said nope, he had some personal business to handle, and he was leaving them right then and there. Miki was completely shocked by this, her jaw practically hitting the floor. The guy told Ichijo to be careful, then suggested they all go back and check their supplies like reasonable people. But Miki suddenly blurted out a desperate request, asking if Ichijo could take her along because Risa had already died, and she was now the only person left in that lonely apartment with absolutely nobody around. She said the only human being she could trust in this entire messed up world was Ichijo, which is both sad and a huge amount of pressure to put on one guy. Ichijo refused without any hesitation, saying no way in hell because if she came with him, she'd just be a total burden getting in his way. He coldly told her to survive on her own, as if that's something you can just do while zombies are having a buffet. Miki started crying and begged that she would definitely die if left alone. Please, 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 she didn't want to die. And hey, weren't they classmates after all? So don't abandon her like a used tissue. Classic emotional blackmail. But honestly, in a zombie apocalypse, you pull every card you've got. Ichijo finally gave in a tiny bit, adding that he would take her only as far as the shelter. Just the shelter, nothing more. Miki asked what shelter, clearly having no clue what he was talking about. Ichijo explained that after the apocalypse went down, the government had thrown together some temporary shelters to keep people alive, and if that was good enough for her, he'd drag her there. He thought to himself that in his previous life, he had spent the absolute worst part of the early apocalypse rotting in that very shelter, where conditions were utterly terrible, but at least you wouldn't die immediately. So yeah, take the win. Ichijo then laid down the law, saying that on the way there, she had to promise to follow every single one of his orders without question. Miki quickly agreed, saying okay, if he would take her, she would literally do whatever he said, which is either sweet or terrifying depending on how you look at it. Ichijo then told her they needed to move fast, like right now. Miki asked if she could at least pack her things and change her clothes first, because priorities. Ichijo shot that down hard, saying that was a complete waste of time and if she needed clothes he would just give her some later. Nothing says friendship like being denied a fresh pair of pants during the end of the world. Miki looked around at the damaged roads completely wrecked with broken cars and zombies just wandering around like they owned the place, and she asked what the hell this was, because this was the road she walked every single day. She said it looked like actual hell on earth, absolutely stuffed with the corpses of people she used to know, which is a real mood killer. Ichijo just said follow me, because what else is there to say at that point? They moved along in total silence, carefully dodging the zombies left and right. Miki asked why they were avoiding them instead of just fighting, like did he not have the skills to take them down or what? Ichijo explained that in reality there were way more zombies than in the safe zones, and if they caused even a little commotion, there was no telling how many more would come running to join the party. So yeah, sneak mode it is. Miki started panting heavily and asked if this was going to take much longer. Ichijo said just few more kilometers, which in apocalypse terms might as well be a marathon through hell. She whined that it was so far and couldn't they please just rest for a bit because she was exhausted. Ichijo responded with the brutal honesty of saying then rest by yourself, leaving her completely alone with the zombies. Miki immediately apologized and said sorry she would walk, she would follow his instructions properly, so please don't be angry. Ichijo suddenly spotted zombies creeping up right behind Miki, so he grabbed her and yanked her over to his side. Miki freaked out and screamed why were there suddenly zombies, with about 7 question marks worth of panic. Ichijo told her to be quiet immediately because if she kept making loud noises, even more zombies would show up for the buffet. Nothing shuts you up faster than the threat of attracting 100 hungry corpses. He pushed her over to the side and told her to stay right there, and then he personally took care of every single zombie, stabbing each one with a knife and making sure not a single sound escaped. Total silent badass mode engaged. Miki thought to herself that this was absolutely amazing, watching him eliminate threats without making any noise to attract more, avoiding disaster in an instant. Even though the whole world had suddenly gone to crap, he moved around like this was just another Tuesday for him. Ichijo said let's move, as if he hadn't just done something incredibly impressive. Miki just said yeah, still probably shaking from what she just witnessed. He warned that beyond this point was the main street, so don't get separated no matter what. She said okay, trying to sound brave and probably failing. Miki then thought about how Ichijo had suddenly become like a completely different person, because up until now he had been that weak bullied kid everyone ignored. Now he was strong and reliable, which is one hell of a character development arc. She felt so incredibly reassured having him around. And then Ichijo said they were going through the alley and to be careful, because of course there's always an alley. Miki was full of doubt as she looked at the situation around her, seeing the whole town burn down, people dead everywhere, with only a few tiny safe zones left in the area. She asked if all of these were actually corpses, like every single one. Ichijo said this was totally normal scenery in the apocalyptic world, which is the most depressing thing anyone could ever call normal. Looking at the mess, he figured a rescue team must have come through, so let's go and maybe if they could meet up with them, they wouldn't have to walk all the way to the shelter. Miki still spotted something and shouted, hey, there is someone on that rooftop. Are they about to jump? A person then fell down, and Ichijo grabbed Miki and ran like hell, yelling at her to run because that sound would definitely attack the zombies. She asked him how in the world he could stay so calm in this nightmare situation, seeing corpses of zombies and not having his expression change one bit. That level of chill is either superhuman or deeply concerning. Ichijo said it was because he had seen scenes like this countless times in the apocalypse, where how you live and how you die is completely up to each individual person. He said he would rather die as a human than turn into an ugly zombie, which is fair honestly. He figured those people who jumped probably thought the same thing, seeing the person who chose to end it and then looking at the ones who chose to keep living. Those who live will witness even more tragedies, carrying countless hardships and bearing even more responsibility, which is a heavy freaking price. Even if you survive until today, what about tomorrow, or the day after, with those voices of despair constantly running through your mind? Maybe choosing suicide from the beginning is actually the right answer, because nobody can tell you how long you need to endure this suffering before you're finally freed. He called this whole situation a marathon, where nobody knows where the finish line is. But here's the one thing he can say for sure. If you just keep running, the distance to that goal keeps getting closer, which is either deeply inspiring or horrifically depressing depending on your caffeine level. Then there were gunshots sounding off in the distance. He thought to himself, gunshots, could that possibly be a rescue team finally showing up? Nearby, there was a whole group of people fighting off zombies as they tried to hold off the massive horde. Just a bunch of strangers screaming at each other while the undead pressed in from all sides. Some soldier, while trying not to get his face eaten by a zombie horde, blurts out that there are just way too many of the undead freaks and that their captain Ryuzaki is about to run dry on bullets real soon, begging for some kind of plan. Captain Ryuzaki shouts back that reinforcements are only 5 minutes away and that everyone just has to hold the line no matter what, because protecting the survivors is the only thing that matters right now. Then some entitled jerk from the mob of survivors pipes up, whining that 5 minutes might as well be forever when you're about to die, and then he drops the classic spoiled rich kid line about his dad being a super important big shot in the city. He actually threatens that if anything happens to his precious self, everyone else is completely finished, and then suggests that if there are too many people making movement difficult, they should just ditch the useless ones because they're worthless anyway. Ryuzaki, mid-swing against a zombie skull, tells the guy to shut his mouth if he doesn't want to die right there, which honestly feels like pretty solid advice in that situation. The rich jerk can't believe anyone would talk to him like that, and Ichijo recognized Ryosaki Ota instantly, the Special Forces Battalion captain. He was some super upright hero who helped Ichijo get out of bullying situations back at the shelter in previous life. So Ichijo notices the captain is in serious trouble, sees that all the constant gunfire is just ringing the dinner bell for more zombies, and decides they need some help over there. He tells Miki to wait right where she is and not move from that spot, and then he takes off toward the fight, leaving her totally confused. The zombies just keep multiplying every time someone shoots, and of course that's exactly when Ryuzaki runs completely out of ammo, shouting a warning for the captain to watch out. Right as everyone flinches expecting the worst, Ichijo comes out of nowhere, kicks straight to the zombie's head, and the whole group is just standing there stunned, asking who the heck this guy even is. Ryuzaki yells at the kid, pointing out that he's clearly still a student and that this place is way too dangerous, so he needs to hurry up and run away already. But Ichijo calmly explains that the gunfire is only attracting more monsters, and if they actually want to get out of this mess, they need to switch to melee weapons instead. Then he instantly rushes to the zombies, slices a zombie's neck clean off, and proceeds to beat down every single rotting corpse in the area. He takes his sweet time killing each and every one of those zombies. Ryuzaki's mind is absolutely blown watching this kid face a huge crowd of zombies while staying totally chill and hitting every weak spot perfectly, and he notices the zombie numbers are actually going down fast. So the captain orders everyone to stop using guns and switch to hand-to-hand combat. But some other soldier whines about listening to a random kid because melee fighting is just too dangerous. Ryuzaki loses his cool and screams at the guy, asking if he doesn't get that the gunfire is literally dragging every zombie in the area straight toward them, since even a child understands this basic fact. Finally, everyone switches to melee, aiming for the heads and trying not to make loud noises, and they start chopping up zombies left and right until the fight is actually over. Everyone is beyond exhausted, and Miki asks Ichijo if he's okay, while Ryuzaki admits the guy really saved their skins and introduces himself properly. Ichijo brushes off the thanks, says his name, and immediately asks for a favor, which the captain agrees to without hesitation because after that display, why wouldn't you? The favor turns out to be taking Miki safely to the shelter, and Ryuzaki says that's literally a soldier's basic duty, so he would have done it anyway, but then asks why Ichijo isn't coming along. Ichijo says he has other stuff to do, so Ryuzaki makes a proposal based on what he just saw, asking the kid to join their unit because they desperately need someone with those skills, and he has a million questions to ask. Ichijo shuts that down fast, saying he hates being tied down and much prefers working alone, because of course the mysterious badass has to be a lone wolf. Some other soldier announces that reinforcements have finally arrived, a car pulls up, and people start slowly climbing aboard, while Miki asks again if Ichijo is really not coming with them. He tells her she'll be safe at the shelter as long as she just follows military instructions, and she tells him to be careful before heading toward the vehicle. Then some jerk from the back yells at everyone to hurry up and get on or get out of the way, adding a lovely comment about how bottom feeders never understand the value of time. Ichijo just glares at the guy, who immediately pulls the entitled father card again, asking if this kid doesn't know who his dad is, and claiming Ichijo won't get away with touching him. So of course Ichijo beats the crap out of the guy right there, who starts whining about how much he hates looking like this and telling everyone not to laugh at him. Ryuzaki tells Ichijo he'll be at the shelter and to contact him anytime if he changes his mind, and Ichijo just gives a short acknowledgement before the driver says they need to head back to headquarters because some Arabs want to meet with the captain. The captain understands and says goodbye, then Ichijo opens his inventory, pulls out a map he wanted to check earlier, and finally gets a good look at it. And that's when he gets absolutely shocked, because this map shows information on every single nearby zone, including exact appearance times and danger levels, and then he spots a gray zone that makes him freeze up completely. Ichijo strolled into the lab and spotted Atsuoka already grinding like a maniac from day one, so he told the guy he was going to burn himself out, and then all that suffering would be for nothing. He reminded Atsuoka that they only made it into the safety house thanks to that crazy haste potion Atsuoka had brewed for him, and since dawn was still a ways off, he begged for a tiny break. While scrubbing himself in the shower, Ichijo realized there would be plenty of low-danger zones popping up all over this wrecked city, But the thing that really freaked him out was that weird gray area on the map. He remembered that the official win condition was to conquer every single zone on the map, but in his past life he had never seen this mysterious spot before, so now he was dying to know what the hell was waiting there. He figured sitting around wondering wouldn't solve squat, so he just had to go check it out himself. And thanks to the map, the route was totally clear, meaning if he searched zones with Atsuoka they'd save a ton of time and never have to drag their butts back here. Back at the shelter, a knock on the door made someone ask who it was, and the guy on the other side announced himself as Ryuzaki, with a report about delivering survivors from the West District to a temporary shelter. Then Ryuzaki added that on his way he ran into something else, but before he could finish, the chief ordered him to put all survivor searches on hold because there was a much more important mission. Ryuzaki was totally baffled and asked if anything could be more important than saving actual people. But the chief told him not to worry since shelter locations were public knowledge, and survivors could technically get there on their own, even though it was obviously impossible for just them to rescue everyone. The chief needed a favor from their most experienced member, specifically to escort someone to the city, and when Ryuzaki repeated the word escort like it was a bad joke, the chief introduced Ijuin Nozomi, the young master of the Ijuin group. Nozomi then had the nerve to say that protecting rich folks like him was way more valuable than protecting random commoners, which made Ryuzaki snap at the chief for not understanding how horrific the outside situation really was when unarmed civilians could barely reach shelter by themselves. Ryuzaki argued there was zero reason to play bodyguard for some spoiled brat who already had all the manpower and money in the world, but Nozomi smugly pointed out that they were unarmed too. That little comment made Ryuzaki lose it, so he told Nozomi not to nitpick and grabbed the guy's shirt, but the chief screamed at them to stop because the whole city owed the Ijuin group a massive debt and protecting them was only natural. The chief barked that this was a direct order to escort them to the city immediately, so Ryuzaki gritted out a yes while Nozomi just glared and asked if he could please let go of his hand now. Then he declared, "I'm coming for you, Ichijo. Don't you dare die before I kill you myself." Over at the lab again, Ichijo found Atsuoka awake and told him to wash his face, eat something, and then they'd hit the road, which made Atsuoka look around the empty lab in total shock and ask what the hell happened to all the equipment. Ichijo casually said it was all in his inventory, then brushed it off like no big deal because it was time to leave and they could talk details while eating. Atsuoka finally connected the dots and asked if Ichijo wanted him to search zones together, and Ichijo confirmed that was exactly the plan since it was a long haul from here and coming back every time would be a huge waste. He promised Atsuoka could find a safe spot over there and set up a brand new lab, because honestly if you needed a lab you could just rebuild it anywhere safe. Atsuoka agreed, so Ichijo said they'd clean up after eating and then depart, mentioning he had an important job for Atsuoka along the way. While outside the zombies were slowly creeping closer like they had all the time in the world. Atsuoka started methodically killing each zombie one by one, but kept muttering that it still wasn't good enough, and then asked if they were really going to keep going even though he was hitting his limit and they were already here anyway. Ichijo reminded him that in this apocalyptic hellscape you could only trust yourself, never put your life in someone else's hands, and always stay alert without ever letting your guard down, which was the kind of dark advice that made Atsuoka just sigh and say fine. Ichijo announced it was about time they entered the zone, and when Atsuoka asked where exactly, Ichijo pointed down and said here, right as the real zone emerged from above them like some kind of nightmare elevator, leaving Atsuoka completely flabbergasted. Ichijo got separated from Atsuoka, who then called out asking where the hell he was, and just like that a special mission dialogue popped up telling them to gather 4 companions and enter the safety house, with the remaining people count showing 8 out of 8. Ichijo realized they had all gotten split up, meaning there were 8 people including them inside this zone, but starting from different locations, so it was clearly one of those zones that tested each individual's skills in the worst way possible. He noticed the mission counter had already dropped from 8 to 7, meaning some poor bastard had died within minutes, so he knew he had to hustle and find the other survivors fast, especially because if anything happened to Atsuoka it would be absolutely catastrophic. As he stepped down from wherever he was, a massive horde of zombies swarmed into view, but he sliced through them like butter and thought to himself that this zone was huge, packed with buildings everywhere, making survival a total nightmare. He knew he had to find the others quickly, and then he heard a desperate voice screaming for help, someone yelling that they were scared and begging anyone nearby to save them. Ichijo realized the sound was coming from over there, so he started moving toward that point, and as he got closer the voice got louder and more panicked, just repeating over and over that they were scared and needed help right now. So Ichijo went marching towards some stranger's voice like a golden retriever chasing a new best friend, only for a zombie to pop out of thin air with a nasty surprise. That's when he figured out this wasn't just any zombie, but a so-called Sparta, a sick freak that uses fake human voices to lure dumbasses into a trap before eating them alive. The thing moved like a cheetah on meth, and he knew deep down that if he blinked for even 1 second, he'd be dead meat with 0-second chances. For anyone brand new to this horror show, that creature was basically a nightmare wrapped in rotting flesh, and he whispered that sad little prayer to himself like it would actually help. Ichijo dodged the zombie like it was no big deal, all cool and effortless, and then casually murdered the thing without even breaking a sweat. But then his brain went into full panic mode, realizing that if these Sparta freaks were hiding near other humans too, the whole mission's success rate was about to crash and burn hard. He could only beg the universe that Etsuoka wouldn't die, while the rest of the team was probably stuck in some other building, and he just needed to get the hell out first. As he kept moving closer, she slowly slaughtered every single zombie in her path like an absolute badass. But then he noticed some creep watching him from the top of a building. He wondered out loud where the heck he should even start looking, and right then he spotted some paper floating down to the ground. He picked it up and saw a little girl with glasses and blue eyes, like some anime survivor reject, and it turned out the paper was a hand-drawn map. He thought to himself why this person knew the area so perfectly, and then it clicked that maybe she actually lived here, which could seriously help him save Etsuoka. He gave her some kind of signal that she should come to him, and she agreed without any hesitation whatsoever. Then they both headed into the building, and surprise, surprise, several zombies were waiting for them like the ugliest welcome committee in history. He figured there was no time to mess around, so he asked himself whether he should just charge through head-on, and he remembered the target was probably on the 6th floor. Then we see the girl, and she heard someone on the door. She asked that is he already there, meaning that guy from before, and then another voice said that was right, and to open up, but joke was on them because it was actually a zombie. That Sparta bastard opened the door just to try and eat her and bite her flesh, but our boy came on time and sliced the zombie's neck, then told her if she is fine, then we should move fast. She asked where. He replied in search of my friend. Meanwhile, on the other side of this disaster, Etsuoka thought to herself that she'd gotten separated from Ichijo, and he was probably hunting for her right now, so the least she could do was stand somewhere visible. She looked around and realized this place seemed like an abandoned hospital, which was just perfect for even more zombies to show up. She spotted one of those rotting bastards and told herself it was fine. She'd just sneak up slowly from behind and stab the vital spot. And when she finally drove the strike into its neck, she celebrated inside like she just won the lottery, thinking she actually defeated a zombie all by herself. But then, because the universe absolutely hated her, way more zombies were waiting right behind her. Then scenes sifted to Ichijo. He got notification that one more person died. He checked the mission log and couldn't believe how another poor soul had just vanished in the blink of an eye, like they were nothing but a cheap firework. Then he told that kid they had to hustle because there were still tons of places to check, and the kid nervously mumbled about knowing a secret path to the next building. Over at Etsuoka's spot, things went completely sideways because he realized he'd attracted even more zombies just by existing, and he internally freaked out about what the hell he was supposed to do now. Suddenly someone grabbed him from behind and asked if he was okay, and when he turned around, holy crap, it was Mineta. Mineta explained that just like Big Brother had predicted, the apocalypse really did hit, and thank goodness his family gave him a heads up so he managed to not die. He said he went to the shelter with his family, then headed to the lab to find these two idiots, but the place was empty, and he never expected to bump into them in such a nightmare of a location. Then Mineta asked if his brother was somewhere nearby too, and Etsuoka confirmed that yeah, they had entered the danger zone together but got separated like a couple of lost puppies. Mineta told everyone to shut up and freeze because the monsters were coming. When the zombies shuffled up from behind, that guy used some weapon to kill a bunch but then got it painfully stuck in a wall. Another zombie lunged at them, so Etsuoka chucked a knife straight into its forehead like a total badass, and he thanked Mineta for the save, but then Mineta spotted a whole freaking horde and announced that this was seriously bad because more were on the way. So both of them bolted, but everywhere they turned there were zombies. Mineta shouted that they should go the other way and get inside quickly, and as he closed the door he tried to shove a cupboard against it for support, but he had to move aside for 1 second before finally slamming the door shut with the cupboard. Mineta then assured everyone that Big Brother was probably searching for them right now, so they just needed to buy some time, and until then he promised to protect them properly, like the loyal lunatic he was. Etsuoka asked the smart but terrifying question of whether making loud noises would just call even more zombies to their location, which made everyone want to cry. Meanwhile, Ichijo was out there slaughtering every zombie in sight while asking that kid for directions, specifically which way to go from here, and the kid simply said straight ahead. He noticed a slight pain in the kid's leg and asked what was wrong, but the kid insisted he was fine and could still walk, which was obviously a lie, but whatever. Ichijo apologized and said they were in a huge hurry so the kid needed to just bear with the pain for a bit and keep guiding the way, and as he scooped up the kid, the little dude agreed. The kid then said that if they turned left up ahead, that would lead to a passage into the next building. He hadn't even asked the kid's name yet, which was kind of ridiculous given everything they'd been through. The kid said to call her Aya, and Ichijo noticed she was covered in wounds and asked if she had been fighting until he showed up, but she admitted no. She had just been hiding the whole time, and those injuries were from way back. Ichijo asked what the hell, from long ago, and wasn't her family with her, and she sadly said her parents were gone. Just like that. She added that she had been living with her older brother, but he went somewhere and disappeared, and Ichijo tried to be optimistic by saying being apart was only temporary and she'd meet him soon, right? Which was met with total silence from the kid. Ichijo then told her to hold on tight because the battle was starting, and with a kid in one arm he fought using only his legs and murdered zombie after zombie like a crazy acrobat. The kid was absolutely amazed and shouted that he was incredible for defeating them all in an instant while carrying her, which honestly was pretty badass. The kid then said that if they went from here to the other side, they could save time, and Ichijo asked why the hell she knew a place like this in the middle of a zombie hellscape. The kid asked back if he was sad, then explained she was always rushing to deliver things to her brother so she knew the roads well, and now they should hurry the hell up. Ichijo thought desperately to himself to wait for him, Etsuoka. While over there with Mineta and Etsuoka, even more zombies kept showing up like uninvited party guests from hell. Mineta internally panicked about what they should do, and then a girl asked if they should just surround it, but they were already completely surrounded by a massive horde of zombies with no way out. So there they were, completely surrounded by a moaning horde of the undead. Etsuoka had to state the obvious like it was breaking news. Mineta, trying to be the big hero, told him to run the second he got a chance because he'd totally protect him. Etsuoka just stared in disbelief when he saw Mineta pull out a gun, asking what the hell he planned to do with that thing and where he even got it. Mineta casually explained that Big Brother Hitano gave him the gun as if it was a birthday present. Then Etsuoka chimed in with the super helpful reminder that a gun wouldn't do squat against that many zombies. Mineta knew that but said this was all he had right now, calling Etsuoka an important person to Big Brother and swearing he'd protect him, pointing out that the zombies were focused on the red things so they could escape through that gap. Etsuoka refused to leave him. Mineta argued that staying meant both of them dying, claimed he didn't plan to die either, and said he could escape using the potion Etsuoka had made, begging him to just trust him. Mineta hesitated for a second, but then he fired the gun and like moths to a flame, every single zombie got fired up by the noise and rushed straight toward them. Etsuoka finally agreed that if he could escape, then Mineta could too, and Mineta just said yeah with a straight face. But in his head, Mineta was already apologizing for the lie, knowing the fire would make the zombies chase him instead because he absolutely could not let them get to Etsuoka. Then, right on cue, a zombie came from the side and bit him mid-shot. He blasted the thing, but the damage was done. The momentum kept building as he shoved the gun into the zombie's mouth and pulled the trigger, feeling the infection spreading across his face while his vision started blurring, wondering if this was really the end. He fired off a few desperate shots, hit some more zombies, thinking mission complete and that it was about damn time. Even though he'd bullied Big Brother non-stop, the guy never took revenge, gave him supplies, warned him about the apocalypse, and helped his family survive. So Mineta figured he couldn't do much, but when it came to loyalty, he wouldn't lose. He held the gun to his own throat and yelled out that he'd protected Etsuoka, saying he didn't want to turn into a zombie just to be killed by Big Brother. Then he remembered Ichijo's words about not making up his own story and not wasting bullets on himself because bullets were for killing zombies. Mineta screamed for Big Brother to run away because he was already infected. Ichijo immediately told Etsuoka to suppress the virus for him. Aya offered to help. Ichijo said he'd handle the zombies. Etsuoka grabbed a piece of paper, shoved it in Mineta's mouth to bite on, and yelled for Aya-chan to help, which she did. He said if Mineta could just hold out until they reached the safety house, he'd be fine, while Ichijo casually killed approaching zombies like it was nothing. Ichijo thought thanks to Mineta Etsuka survived, and he promised to save him for sure, realizing that with this, 4 of them had gathered and they'd be safe if they made it to the safety house, even though Ichijo was hurrying. Time was running out. As Etsuoka injected the vial, Mineta groaned in agony, and Hatsuka told him to endure it like a tough guy. Aya-chan reached for the tweezers. A zombie lunged to bite her, but Ichijo threw a knife and killed it easily, then told everyone to concentrate on the treatment. Etsuoka confirms she got it, saying each person could focus on their own job because they trusted each other, which was honestly sweet for a zombie apocalypse. After 10 minutes of pure chaos, Hatsuka announced that he had stopped the virus from spreading for now, but it would only last about 20 minutes. Ichijo asked Mineta if he could move now, and Mineta said yeah, no problem, so the 4 of them decided to go find that safety house. Then someone said well, they didn't expect to find survivors, and as they both looked up in shock, the 2 groups came face to face, completely losing it over how absurd this whole setup was. Corazano immediately pointed out that the girls over there was none other than Etsuoka and their so-called deadbeat, and what were the cosmic freaking odds of running into them in a dump like this? Itsuka just groaned about his terrible luck, complaining that of all the people in the world, it had to be the absolute last person he ever wanted to see. Then Minata mentioned that the blonde dude looked familiar, and after a quick brain scratch, he remembered exactly who he was. Onodera Isami, a scumbag drug dealer whose main customers were clueless students. That same thug started screaming at Aya to hurry the hell over, while Ichijo asked if that screaming mess was her big brother. Aya sadly admitted yes and said she'd go right now, which made Ichijo offer to step in if anything went wrong, promising to lend a hand anytime. Aya, looking completely wrecked, apologized in advance because if Ichijo had to fight for her, it would delay Mr. Mineta's treatment, and that guilt was eating her alive. The brother kept howling at her to quit dawdling and move it already, so all she could do was mutter another shaky sorry. Ichijo then announced they should leave, and Etsuo asked in disbelief if he was seriously just gonna walk away. Ichijo explained that this was a sibling mess, not their circus, and they needed to hustle to find a safe house instead. In his head, he knew they'd need way more manpower for that special mission, but training Class 4's injuries had to come first, so screw the mission. Still, that other guy was waiting, and wasn't this whole thing about some old debt anyway? Onodera then asked if the others knew those two punks, because that woman was his co-worker who had punished him and taken his money. He demanded they rough up the pair for him, promising to sell them potions in return, but warned that the brats actually had some decent skills. Onodera, being the overconfident idiot he was, figured even if one kid was strong, he was still just a high schooler, same as the first survivors they'd already met, so he'd beat him half to death and use him as zombie bait. Ayu begged him to wait, insisting the guy was a good person who had helped, and please just let him go. But the brother just shoved Ayu around like a rag doll, screaming not to dare order him around while hanging out with a jobless punk like that, promising she'd regret it later. He decided to go all in on the guy, leaving the girl for his buddy, who laughed and said he got it, no problem at all. Ichijo quickly asked how much time was left, and Etsuka said 10 minutes, which meant this was gonna get ugly fast. Ichijo announced he'd take down the main thug while Etsuka handled Minato, splitting the chaos like a bad action movie. Ayu then grabbed her big brother's legs, holding on for dear life while he yelled at her to run and demanded what the hell she was doing. When she refused to let go, he decided right then and there with the others, as Kurozano impatiently yelled at them to just do it already. The brother screamed about being made a fool and shouted drop dead while swinging a wrench straight at Ayu's head, but Ichijo blurred in fast and saved her dumb ass just in time. Ichijo then said Ayu had saved his class, but the brother was the one who left her injured and sent her down dangerous alleys to run drugs like some sick mule. Onodera shot back that he could do whatever he wanted with his own sister, calling it his damn business, and told Ichijo not to butt in while asking if he was giving up on testing his strength. As Ichijo pulled Ayu to safety and moved out, Onodera sneered that he even had the leeway to rescue her, to which Ichijo just said to wait there before calling him an annoying bastard and telling him to die. Ichijo bit down hard on the guy's grip and started throwing down, screaming that anyone who makes a little kid help with their crimes is one hell of a trash human being. The brother snarled back that he was the one who fed Ayu, so he'd do whatever the damn please with her, and if Ichijo wanted to take her away, he better get serious, and Ichijo shoved the wrench into his skull. Then the little punk tried to kill Ichijo, but Ichijo just beat his head with a pipe instead, and the other thug realized this brat really wasn't normal. He figured it'd take a little more time to bring him down, so fine, he'd just handle Etsuoka himself. The guy suddenly pulled out a gun, yelling for everyone to put their hands up and not try anything stupid, then ordered Etsuoka to go into that building while the rest stayed put. Mineta freaked out, asking what the hell he was planning, and swore that as long as he was there, he wouldn't let a single finger touch Miss Etsuoka. But Etsuoka screamed at him not to move because the virus would spread through his whole body. And the guy's face twisted as he asked what? He is infected? The thug couldn't believe they were keeping a ticking time bomb that close, calling them completely out of their minds, because if he turned into a zombie, he'd be a huge problem. He announced he'd start by putting him down right now, and Mineta warned him if he'd do anything stupid, his boss will kill him. The guy just laughed his ass off, asking how ridiculous that was, and did that brat really think he could beat Onodera? He tried to pull of a cool gunshot, but Ichijo had already snapped his hand like a dry twig and kicked him into next week. Ichijo casually asked if everyone was holding up okay, and Mineta gave that shaky yeah we're fine reply that nobody actually believed. Then Kurosawa freaked out and wanted to know if Onodera had just gotten himself taken out like a total chump, while Maya panicked about where her classes even were anymore. Ichijo tried to calm things down by saying the glasses were right there, so nobody needed to worry. But nope, because Onodera grabbed his own sister and started threatening everyone with her life, screaming that nobody better move or he'd kill her right then and there. She tried to say something, and Onodera just spat back that this was all her fault for bringing those people here in the first place. He told her to shut her damn mouth, and Etsuoka called him out for being absolute human trash for using his own family as a shield. Ichijo then dropped the cold truth that this guy clearly never had any right to live, even before the whole world went to hell. But then that knocked out moron from earlier, Kurozano, woke up and said well done, because now the situation had somehow flipped in their favor. Onodera started barking orders for everyone to stay completely still, while telling Kurozano to tie them all up, like he was some big-shot warlord. The guy then lunged at Ichijo with a steel pipe, announcing that he was about to snap Ichijo's arm, but Ichijo just owned him with one hand and explained that he don't want to get beaten from some stranger he'd met 5 minutes ago. He also pointed out that because these idiots had made such a huge ruckus, every zombie nearby was now closing in on them, and Onodera had no idea when that even happened. Ichijo broke it down nice and simple. You can't move freely while holding a hostage, and if you actually kill Aya, you'll just become the zombie's #1 target. Forget that, you'll be the one who has to draw all the zombies away, so you're the one at a total disadvantage. So what's it gonna be, genius? Onodera spotted the zombie horde behind him and started sweating bullets, thinking, damn it, what do I do? And then he had this brilliant idea. What if he threw her into the crowd? Wouldn't that give him an escape? Right as he was cooking up that evil plan, a zombie got way too close for comfort, and Kurozano yelled out a warning about Onodera needing to look out. That guy saw Ichijo jump impossibly high and had zero time to react, only managing to think so fast before everything went sideways, and then Onodera started screaming for help and begging not to be abandoned. Ichijo just told everyone to hold on tight, because things were about to get wild. Aya asked what about her brother, and Ichijo said it was way too late because he'd already turned into a zombie. Itsuka pointed out that they needed to go too, and Mineta agreed with a very unconvincing yeah. But then Kurosana literally got on his knees and begged not to be left behind, crying about how he'd helped Itsuka and worked as a co-worker, so please don't abandon him, he was begging. And hey, your research report was absolutely fantastic and fascinating, and if we combine our knowledge we can definitely make it happen. And oh by the way, your mother too? Itsuka shut that down real fast by saying not to dare say her mother's name with that filthy mouth, and that scum like him should just hurry up and die already. Mineta noticed Etsuka's face looking pale and asked if he was okay, but Etsuka just said yeah, and that they needed to go quickly, and that they were gathering more and more information and technology, so she was sure they could pull this off. Ichijo found out that the safe house was up on the lower pass, but it had collapsed, so how the hell did he get up there anyway? He'd just pull up a rope, climbed up, then dropped down a ladder, and ordered everyone to go one at a time and hurry up. Itsuka also told Aya to go up first, because apparently nobody wanted to wait another second. Then Mineta suddenly felt a sharp pain, flinched hard and fell down, clutching his chest and saying his heart hurt and he couldn't breathe. Atsuka asked what was wrong with Mineta, and the horrible truth came out that the zombie virus had already started spreading to his heart. So Ichizo screamed that zombies were coming and told Itsuka to hurry the hell up. After that zombie virus did something absolutely disgusting and spread straight into Mineta's heart, the poor guy started groaning like he'd just eaten the world's spiciest taco. Atsuka told him to pull himself together, which is the most useless advice anyone can give when your heart is literally turning into rotten meat. Mineta screamed at everyone not to come near him. Itsuka tried to be the optimistic cheerleader, shouting that they were almost at the safe house and begging him to hang in there. But Mineta kept yelling for everyone to stay away because he couldn't keep it together anymore, and right on cue he stopped being a whiny guy and became a full-blown hungry-for-brains zombie. He lunged forward to bite Atsuka's face off. That's when Ichijo came out of nowhere and smacked Mineta right in the neck. Ichijo then yelled at Itsuka to stop spacing out and hurry up because the place was absolutely packed with the walking dead, which is generally a good reason to move your butt. Itsuka started running while dragging Mineta's unconscious body, which looked as ridiculous as it sounds, and Ichijo barked orders to get Mineta into the safe house immediately before things got even worse. Itsuka said she got it instantly. Ichijo announced that she would handle everything and help pull Mineta up. Then he pulled out this weird beginner's haste potion that was isolated and gave a 10% boost for 10 minutes. Ichijo started moving through the zombies like a blender on wheels, cutting down every single rotting idiot that got in her way. When Mineta slowly woke up, he found Atsuka sitting there watching him like a concerned mother hen, and she asked if he was okay in that tone that really means you better be okay after all that trouble. Mineta touched his head and asked if he was supposed to have turned into a zombie, because waking up not dead is apparently confusing when you've been a monster for 5 minutes. Ichijo explained that they made it to the safe room just in time and that he got lucky. Then Mineta started thanking everyone. Etsuka got all confused and asked what he was talking about, since he was the one who got bitten while trying to save her in the first place. Itsuka told him not to move because the virus was gone, but his body was still weaker than a wet paper towel, which is medical advice you don't argue with when you just almost turned into a zombie. Mineta insisted he was fine now and asked what the plan was from here. Ichijo said he was going to keep searching for his territory, and Mineta immediately begged him to take him along, because he promised he'd be useful. He shot him down with a quick no need, but Mineta argued back with an equally stubborn no way. Ichijo laid down the harsh truth that the battles ahead would make today look like a picnic in the park, and he was nowhere near ready to keep up with him yet. He told him he didn't need to risk his pathetic life for him, and should go back to his family to protect the people who actually needed him, which finally made Mineta shut up and agree with a sad little okay. Then he asked if he could drive, and Mineta admitted he didn't have a license, but his brother had taught him in some place called Harano, which is exactly the kind of confidence you want behind the wheel during the end of the world. That turned out to be perfect, because they found a car with a zombie sitting inside like a creepy passenger, so Ichijo pushed the monster out and sliced its neck open before tossing it aside like trash. Then he told Mineta he was counting on him to get Aya to the shelter safely, and Mineta swore to leave it to him because he clearly had no idea what he was signing up for. Ichijo added that the gas tank was full, so he should be fine, but he needed to drive quietly so the zombies wouldn't hear, and to stay inside the car as much as humanly possible because car doors are famously zombie-proof. Mineta promised that no matter what happened, he would get Aya there, which is either heroic or delusional, depending on how many zombies were on the road, and Ichijo just told him to be careful like that would make any difference. As they slides through different zones, some secret special condition area activation thingy hit 4 out of 10, and then slowly moved up to 5 out of 10. After 2 days, Ichijo looked to the map and announced that they had finally met the condition activation requirements, which were apparently a little far from their current location. Ichijo pulled a bike out of some storage place like a magical garage delivery service, and they drove past everything so fast that the zombies probably didn't even have time to groan. When they arrived at the special condition place, Etsuka asked if there's seriously nothing there. Ichijo argued back, asking what the other guy was talking about, insisting there had to be a domain right there, because denial isn't just a river in Egypt. Etsuka said there was no way, and told him to look for himself. Ichigo thought to himself that something was wrong, then shouted, "Let's go," before realizing the other person couldn't see what he was seeing. Ichijo announced that he had taken care of all the zombies around that spot, then told Etsuka to stay still. She said she would be waiting, and that Ichijo had better come back. Ichijo told her to relax, then said see you later with all the casual energy of someone going to the grocery store. And with that, he went speeding fast into the special area. He finally walked through that special gate, only to learn that the only way out was to wipe out every single zombie in the secret nightmare zone. He had just mentioned that killing every last one of them was the clear condition, which basically turned this whole place into a pure combat death trap. The ship had already set sail, meaning he was stuck on that vessel with no escape and no room to breathe. He started wondering if this area was any different from the others, and figured he should probably get ready before going any further. Then a message popped up telling him that inventory switch was prohibited, and he nearly lost it. What do you mean he couldn't use his inventory? All he had on him was one crappy axe and some fishing line. Like that was supposed to be enough. No special missions showed up on his screen. He figured there was no way to know except to keep pushing forward, so he swallowed his doubt and kept moving. Then out of nowhere, a massive mutated zombie appeared. The thing roared like a broken garbage truck, and your boy thought that fighting this beast in such a narrow space was going to be a giant pain in the ass. He planned to dodge carefully and change positions, but before he could even try, the zombie punched him. He managed to block at the very last second, and immediately realized that this monster's power was way stronger than anything he had fought before. It was faster, meaner, and hit like a freight train on meth. While he was beating the zombie down, he thought to himself that this was completely different from the mutated zombies he had faced earlier, like the strength and durability were on a whole other planet. The zombie slammed its face against the side of the boat, while Ichijo caught the hand that had grabbed his face, and he started chopping at its neck with the axe while gasping for air. He was panting hard, wondering why an enhanced mutated zombie had shown up so early. Not being able to use his inventory was an absolute nightmare, because he couldn't even do basic healing. For a second he thought his wounds had closed up on their own, which meant self-healing still worked, but then he remembered he couldn't replenish the zombie virus inside him. The more he self-healed, the more dangerous things would get, so he was basically screwed either way. After taking some damage, he got super cautious, and that's when a zombie dropped down from above trying to attack him. He moved at the very last possible second, and it turned out to be another mutated zombie called a ghoul. That ghoul sliced his chest open with incredible speed, its claws coated in zombie virus like some kind of biological warfare bullshit. This one specialized in long-range attacks, which meant he had to close the gap and finish it instantly, because it wasn't going to stop attacking until he was dead meat. As the fight continued, he tried to dodge away from the zombie, but it still managed to tear his chest again just as fast as the last one. It was way too strong, and he had to duck quickly before the zombie tried to grab him. He thought that if every single zombie in this area was enhanced like that, then clearing out all of them was going to be one hell of a challenge. He cut its hand and threw the axe straight to its face, and his self-healing started to work, and a wave of pain shot through his whole body. He cursed under his breath, wondering if his zombie virus was already running low. It was only the start of this nightmare, and things already looked incredibly grim, with only a few uses of self-healing left. Who knew what would happen if he used them all up? But he told himself that thinking about it now wouldn't help, so he just had to keep moving. With a completely confused look on his face, he saw so many of them everywhere, and he asked himself just how many mutated zombies were hiding in this place. He figured he should take another route, but while he was scanning the whole crowd of zombies, a perfect zombie baddie appeared. "Yeah, be ready, gooners," and he muttered the name Hadusa under his breath. Turns out Hadusa was a mutated zombie with enhanced senses. It let out blood-calling screams to draw every other zombie in the area straight toward him. Because nothing says fun like a screaming dress monster inviting the whole undead party to your location. Hadusa let out this horrific scream, bragging that it had just attacked every single zombie in the place. And that's when the guy realized her voice was driving the whole undead crowd completely nuts, like they'd all chugged 10 energy drinks at once. The zombies went absolutely berserk. He knew he had to take her out fast, because otherwise they'd just keep multiplying as he moved toward that Hadusa, since her attack power was that ridiculously high. He chopped at the Hadusa's neck, but of course the axe got stuck right in the ship's door, and that door was seconds from busting open. The door wouldn't hold much longer, and it was already starting to crack like a bad joke. He yanked on the axe like a maniac, but it was impossible to pull out, so he just ditched it and bolted toward the exit like a coward with good instincts. He had a string with him, and as he pulled it, the thing sliced right through zombies' heads like butter. After that, he somehow made it through, all proud of himself for 2 seconds. But then a giant freaking clock came spinning around and pierced his chest again. Because why would anything go right? He realized there was more. This thing was a kite, refined, with exposed bones and solid rock. A special grade mountain zombie that was supposed to be in the advanced run. He was freaking out, asking why it was here when in his last life he'd barely survived against it even with a full inventory. And now he didn't even have a weapon. There was no way he could win, and the kite jumped at him trying to pierce him again. He thought, what the hell? This was all a trap they made for him. The map, just to kill him here. He was going to die like this. He whined that he thought reincarnation meant a second chance, but this was even worse than his last life. This wasn't where he belonged. And someone said, "It definitely isn't where you belongs. It's my domain." And she was the zombie gatekeeper baddie who killed Ichijo in his previous life, and she instantly killed the kite. Ichijo blanked out like his soul left his body, and he is in afterlife. He asked in which state he is in. She said, "I thought you'd burn through the virus faster, and I'd need to step in sooner, but you held on better than expected, but now it's my turn." Ichijo asked, "Why the fuck did you say that it's your domain?" She replied, "Because it is, and here I recovered my original power." Yeah, you know what she meant. The current strength was only a third of what she had in her last life, and she want her full power. Ichijo asked, "Then you don't care about mutated zombies?" She asked why she'd kill her own kind, then pointed out that humans kill their own kind all the time, didn't they? But she said zombies were actually simpler than humans. They just ate by instinct to survive. The biggest difference between them and her was that she had a mind and the ability to think. She asked what his purpose was, and what had brought him here, and Ichijo replied that he is only doing what he had to do to survive. She said enough talk because the big fish was coming. Ichijo got shocked. Even Titan is here. She told him that every types of zombies are at this place, with this one being huge and having a temper so nasty it could curdle milk. He basically screamed at her to watch her back. Then the Titan came charging fast as hell, trying to grab her, but our zombie baddie jumped on its hand and sliced it off. The zombie lunged at her, but she got blown straight through her sides. The Titan got even more pissed and rushed in again. Ichijo roared, "Look out," but she just dodged it swiftly. She couldn't believe she was getting attacked by a meat dumpling. Yes, that's what she called that massive beast. Next thing, she sliced the Titan's head off, got the job done, and announced that without her, Ichijo would already be dead. She ordered Ichijo to burn this into his brain. Her power was now his power too. Ichijo thought she had just wiped out a monster-level threat to humanity in literally 1 second right there in front of him. And now her powers are back. Ichijo's all odds of getting revenge just shot up. She started moving toward the ship, and Ichijo asked where the hell she was going. She explains that she is going to the control room, because the ship was too big, so it was easier to bring all those rotting idiots to them. Ichijo then asked if she intended to use sound to draw the zombies in, and she just said yes. He called that insane, pointing out they didn't even know how many were inside, but she had already turned on the sirens. From inside, Ichijo shouted that this was completely reckless, since the ship was crawling with special mutant zombies. She argued that if their mission was to eliminate every last zombie, then it was better to deal with them all in one go. She then told him they didn't have time to mess around and ordered him to just shut up and learn, right as she started slicing and cutting the necks of every single zombie in sight. Then a mutated one rushed towards her, and she simply kicked one like it was a soccer ball made of rotten meat. Ichijo warned that ghouls were coming from above, and she grabbed a big zombie's hand to use as a disgusting shield, then killed both the big one and the ghoul in one go. Within a second, there were a whole horde of mutated shit, but she didn't even flinch. Ichijo freaked out, saying charging against a full horde at once is too dangerous. She taunted if Ichijo couldn't even handle enemies at this level, he won't last long. So this was his chance to see what real power looked like. Then sometime later, we see Etsuka waiting for Ichijo. Then Ichijo came out. She asked if he is hurt. Ichijo being Ichijo saying he is fine and we should head to the new special zone. Like it was just warm-up, but this time he has access of the gatekeeper zombie baddie's real powers.